Morale was soaring. One of the armored catapults was destroyed beyond repair, and the remaining two were frantically retreating, unable to stop the advance of Askickers United's forces. After another 30 seconds passed, the goblin magic cannon fired once more. The round shell landed just a meter away from one of the armored catapults, burying 30 players in the dirt, among whom 6 were top-ranking elites from Alliance of Mages and Divine Protectors. Even if they were elites, no matter how high their defense was, none of them could withstand the might of the goblin magic cannon. Even a great fighter hunkering down with a great shield would still be blasted into smithereens. As the forces of Bloodlust Blades were in full retreat, the 2 armored catapults had finally left the range of the goblin magic cannon. First and Second Division, stop them. Mad Blade anxiously commanded. He never thought they would be overrun so quickly. At this moment, more than 1,000 elites from Askickers United led by Nie Yan charged down from the foothills behind Bloodlust Blade's forces. The warriors rushed down the slopes like a tidal wave. Brothers, victory belongs to Askickers United. Bloodlust Blades, Divine Protectors, Alliance of Mages, or Angel Corps, we'll send all those bastards straight to hell. From this day forth we stand as one. Bound are our paths, so too our souls. Till our presence is in all. For our glory is our life. Nie Yan's fighting spirit was also ignited. The Askickers United elites rushed forward eagerly, hot on the heels of the retreating forces of Bloodlust Blades. After noticing they were being pincered, Soaring Angel still remained calm and gave out orders. More than 1,000 elites from Bloodlust Blades, Divine Protectors, Alliance of Mages, and Angel Corps charged forward to meet Nie Yan's group of elites head-on. Mad Blade also mobilized over 10,000 players into a solid battle formation, repelling the forces coming from the crypt stronghold. The 2 armored catapults in the distance turned around, firing a volley of flaming projectiles that slaughtered more than 1,000 of Askickers United's weaker members. After moving out of the goblin magic cannon's range, the armored catapults were still frightening existences on the battlefield. Disregarding their lives, the players from Askickers United kept charging towards the armored catapults. Even though they were beaten back time and time again, they would still horrifically press forward, unafraid of death, with unrelenting tenacity. Like this, the battle once more entered a stalemate. Nie Yan summoned Lil Gold, who charged into the fray along with the group of 1,000 elites from Askickers United. He barreled through the enemy forces, sending players flying left and right, and decimated them en masse with his dragon breath. Spells whizzed about through the sky, resembling a dazzling display of fireworks. Smoke Stub took the lead and rushed into the crowd. Swinging his sword with reckless abandon, he slaughtered players like reaping wheat. The ranks of Bloodlust Blades fell into mass panic. Boss, reinforcements from Sapphire Shrine and Holy Empire have arrived, Paladin of the Elegy reported. Also, all level 40+ players from the 5 branch guilds are here too. How many? Nie Yan asked. In this sort of large-scale guild war, numbers also played a critical role. Even an expert could die to a random lucky shot from an ordinary player. 50,000 from Sapphire Shrine, 70,000 from Holy Empire, and 50,000 from our 5 branch guilds. The War God Tribe and Battle-Crazed Alliance also sent over 5,000 elites. Any movement from our enemies? Nie Yan asked. He figured Alliance of Mages and Divine Protectors wouldn't be willing to allow their elites to die here for nothing. Victorious Return is finally growing restless. They're going for broke this time. All 70,000 high-level players still remaining in their guild are being mobilized, and they're frantically trying to rally Radiant Sacred Flame to their side. Alliance of Mages and Divine Protectors also deployed more reinforcements. We don't know the exact number, but given the size of both guilds, we expect around 60,000 to 70,000. They've teleported to Famen Plains from Roland Town, Paladin of the Elegy replied. The scope of this war was getting larger and larger, with more and more guilds getting swept up in it. Nie Yan analyzed the present situation. With how Askickers United had been suppressing Victorious Return all this time, to the extent they were on the verge of being expelled from Kalor, Heavenbreaker was definitely fuming with rage and resentment. So, when a rare opportunity like this came by, he naturally wouldn't pass it up. What he didn't know was that Nie Yan had already acquired Radiant Sacred Flame. At Guo-Wise orders, they were currently feigning cooperation, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. Alliance of Mages and Divine Protectors weren't all too enthused about sending their forces over to aid Bloodlust Blades, which was why they previously hadn't taken any action. The outcome of the war with Askickers United didn't have much of an impact on them. In fact, if Bloodlust Blades went defunct, their members would be absorbed into alliances of Mages and Divine Protectors. It was only because of the pressure they were receiving from Cao Shu that they had no choice but to step into the conflict, first with sending some of their elites over and now with dispatching more reinforcements. With so many guilds taking part, this war would soon become a lot more chaotic. While Nie Yan was lost in thought, the 1,000 elites on the sides of Bloodlust Blades charged forward and collided with the 1,000 elites from Askickers United. The enemy side was quite powerful and didn't lack great mages, great warriors, or any other class advanced players in their ranks. The two sides were evenly matched. As soon as they were locked into battle, a bloodbath occurred. Nie Yan looked around and saw a level 60 great warrior wearing the dark gold grade black blood set slaughtering a path forward. With a single swing of his sword, he killed 6 elites from Askickers United that had yet to class advance. That's Tyrant's sword. Paladin of the Elegy cried out. He's a famous and skilled player from Divine Protectors. He's only slightly weaker than Mad Blade. Seeing his fellow guildmates getting killed left and right, Paladin of the Elegy couldn't help but feel anxious. He rushed forward with indomitable will. Nie Yan ordered Lil Gold to blast Tyrant's sword with dragon breath. Seeing the scorching flames coming in his direction, Tyrant's sword protected himself with a golden barrier. Bang! It shuddered slightly under the impact but remained fully intact. After being besieged by the joint attack of several Askickers United players, Tyrant's sword was forced to retreat. Several players from Alliance of Mages immediately rushed over to cover him. At this moment, Paladin of the Elegy arrived on the scene. Divine Judgment. As the two players clashed, Tyrant's sword swung his blade at Paladin of the Elegy's waist with a tendon break. His attack was fierce and decisive. Paladin of the Elegy cast Holy Protection in the nick of time. Even though he still took damage, he didn't suffer any status effects. Tyrant's sword smashed down with a seismic slam while Paladin of the Elegy hurriedly retreated. Neither side could gain any advantage. Just as Lil Gold was about to unleash another dragon breath, a great warrior charged over and locked him down with intercept. 3 great warriors from Alliance of Mages surrounded Lil Gold. They struck him with shield bashes in tandem, continuously interrupting him whenever he tried to cast magic. However, Lil Gold's explosive counter took a great toll on them. If it weren't for the priests in the back healing them, they would have long since dropped dead on the ground. Some nearby players from Askickers United wanted to rescue Lil Gold, but their hands were currently tied dealing with the enemies in front of them. Alliance of Mages, Divine Protectors, Bloodlust Blades, and Angel Corps currently had 3 to 4 times as many class advanced players. So, Asskickers United was on the back foot. Nie Yan snuck behind a Great Priest from Alliance of Mages and immobilized him with Intimidate before stabbing towards the back of his head with Zenard's sword. The Great Priest was focused on healing a Great Warrior up ahead when an alarm suddenly went off in his head. He immediately let out an ear-piercing shriek. Howl of terror. This was the go-to life-saving skill of priests. At this critical juncture, Nie Yan activated Mind Immune from the metal of the 10 Holy Paladins. As the sound entered his ears, aside from a little annoyance, nothing else happened. Nie Yan struck the Great Priest with Smothering Strike before following up with Backstab. Minus 1,536. Nie Yan dealt an astonishingly high amount of damage, only to discover the Great Priest didn't die. They had more than 2,300 health. Even priests gained significant boosts to health and defense after class advancing. A nearby Great Mage finally took notice of the commotion. He waved his staff and targeted Nie Yan with an ice rupture. Nie Yan would be frozen into a human popsicle if he was hit. A sphere of pulsating frost whizzed toward him. Seeing how he failed to instantly kill his opponent, Nie Yan followed up with Eviscerate. Since Smothering Strike stun was still in effect, the Great Priest could do nothing to defend. Gale Step. Nie Yan vanished from sight just before he was hit. Bang! The ice rupture exploded in the middle of the air. It's the Mad Rogue. The Great Mage cried out. He was shocked by how quickly Nie Yan cut down a Great Priest. Nie Yan was a bit exhausted after his encounter with these class advanced players. Because top-ranking players like these were quite cohesive in groups, it was difficult to find openings to exploit. However, he could still take out 1 or 2 of them. Sun was a ghostly specter on the battlefield just like Nie Yan. Every time he showed himself, he would reap a life. Sun retreated behind a dense patch of thickets and observed the battlefield. Asskickers United had already suffered heavy losses. The enemy simply had too many adept class players. It was too difficult for players that had yet to class advance to overcome this gap, especially when the other side was evenly skilled. In a battle between top experts, mages rarely had the opportunity to get off any advanced magic because their cast times were 20 seconds or longer, while a silence from a paladin was instant and only had a cooldown of 20 seconds. This was why players would almost always get interrupted when casting any super impactful spells. Looking in the distance, Sun noticed Tyrant Sword overwhelming Paladin of the Elegy. It was only natural that a Paladin was a step below a warrior in melee combat. Not good. He's in danger. Sun immediately sensed something off after seeing a subtle change in Tyrant Sword's movements. Sun was about to rush over to help Paladin of the Elegy, when a cold glint flashed before his eyes. A dagger headed straight for his forehead. Sun avoided the attack with Gale Step. The enemy thief hurriedly activated his ice skill, but Sun had already vanished without a trace. 100 meters away, Paladin of the Elegy barely warded off a Quake Smash from Tyrant Sword with a parry. Die. Tyrant Sword suddenly thrusted his great sword forward into Paladin of the Elegy's stomach. Minus 813. A damage value floated up above Paladin of the Elegy's head. He was also stunned. Tyrant Sword was just about follow up with another attack when the glint of a dagger appeared behind him. His eyes widened in alarm. Activating Crusader's shield on instinct, he turned around and slashed at the silhouette behind him. Just a thief. Tyrant Sword sneered. The class he was least afraid of on the battlefield was a thief. Even if he allowed several thieves to wail on him non-stop for 10 full seconds, they could only leave a scratch on him. The defense of great warriors was too high for most thieves to pierce through. On the other hand, if they were hit by a tendon break, they were toast. The only thing thieves were good for was dealing with squishy casters. Got you. Tyrant Sword chopped down with his great sword. However, the disdainful look on his face froze when he discovered he had only struck an illusion. A sharp dagger stabbed toward Tyrant Sword's forehead. Seismic slam. Tyrant Sword slammed his great sword into the ground, creating a shockwave that struck everything within a 2-meter radius of him, including Paladin of the Elegy who was just about to come out of the initial stun. Believing he had succeeded in landing a hit this time, Tyrant Sword was shocked when the thief was nowhere to be found. Slippery bastard. Tyrant Sword cursed. He gave up on trying to deal with the thief. With a sinister expression on his face, he turned around with his great sword raised and pounced toward the defenseless Paladin of the Elegy. I'll finish you off first. Tyrant Sword was about to chop down on Paladin of the Elegy's head with great cleave, when a dagger emerged out of nowhere from behind and pierced his heart. Blood sprayed out into the air. The attack was too quick, leaving Tyrant Sword with next to no time to react. Tyrant Sword had an incredulous expression on his face. He would normally instantly notice a thief trying to ambush him and counter appropriately. He never expected one could get within 2 meters of him undetected. With such a short distance between them, he was caught off guard and consequently struck by the dagger. Tyrant Sword lost all strength in his arms, his great sword slumping to the ground with a thud while his eyes glazed over. He was stunned. The silhouette of a thief slowly materialized behind Tyrant Sword. Sun cracked a faint smile. It appeared his ambush was quite effective. When Tyrant Sword used Seismic Slam just a moment ago, he hadn't actually retreated. Instead, he blocked it with Shroud, which granted 2 seconds of invincibility upon activation. He continued stalking Tyrant Sword, maintaining a distance of 2 meters from him while biding his time. The most opportune moment to strike came quickly after, when Tyrant Sword switched his focus back to Paladin of the Elegy. While Tyrant Sword was still under the 2-second stun duration of Heart Piercer, Sun followed up with a backstab and Eviscerate. Sun only dealt 300 to 400 damage per hit. It was nowhere close to threatening the life of Tyrant Sword who had over 3,800 health. Tyrant Sword was simply too tanky. It was a difficult task for a thief's dagger to penetrate the thick plate armor of a warrior. Even though Sun wasn't dealing a lot of damage, he didn't fret. As the stun was about to wear off, Sun struck Tyrant Sword in the back of the head with Smothering Strike, stunning him again. Sun circled to the front and attacked Tyrant Sword with Sever followed by Assassinate, which prematurely broke the stun from Smothering Strike. However, Sun didn't give Tyrant Sword the chance to react. Striking him in the forehead with Concussive Blow, he stunned him again for another 3 seconds. The stuns were layered on flawlessly, leaving Tyrant Sword no opportunity to retaliate. At this moment, the stun from Seismic Slam wore off on Paladin of the Elegy. Elegy, let's kill him together, Sun said as he circled back behind Tyrant Sword. Paladin of the Elegy rushed forward and struck Tyrant Sword in the head with Divine Strike. His damage was much higher compared to Sun's. When the surrounding Asskickers United players noticed Tyrant Sword getting tied down, they intercepted the Alliance of Mages players rushing to his rescue. Several Paladins from Asskickers United even threw caution to the wind, continuously silencing the opposing priests and preventing them from healing Tyrant Sword. Mortal blow. With 2 combo points built up, Sun activated a finisher skill for massive damage. Minus 1309. Seeing Sun go all out, Paladin of the Elegy followed suit. He sent Tyrant Sword flying with a level 6 Holy Slash. Tyrant Sword collapsed to the ground as his health bar bottomed out. Paladin of the Elegy breathed out a sigh of relief. Elegy, we make a good team. Yes, we do, Paladin of the Elegy chuckled. Sun went back into stealth, disappearing from sight. While everyone was focused on the chaotic battle just now, an elven great thief from Angel Corps snuck around to the back of Asskickers United's forces, where the casters were located. Egotistical had only recently joined Angel Corps. Because he was skilled enough to advance to a great thief at an early level, he received decent treatment in the guild. But since he was a new recruit and hadn't participated in many battles yet, he was eager to prove his worth. Relying on his high cloaking stat, he managed to infiltrate the enemy's backline. He spotted several priests in the vicinity working hard to support their frontline. Thieves in Angel Corps could earn guild contribution for killing priority targets. Mages and priests netted 200 and 500 merit points respectively, while great mages and great priests were worth 10 times as much. A great priest was as valuable as 6 great warriors in a guild war. Because they could instantly bring a low-health great warrior back from the brink of death. How many priests a thief could take down in an enemy's backline was a determiner of their ability. Some thieves could escape without so much as a scratch after killing multiple priests. Others would end up dying before they could even kill one. Nie Yan, Sun, and One Strike Vow were perfect examples. Nie Yan had already killed 5 priests, one of whom was a great priest. One Strike Vow had killed 3 priests, and Sun too. Asskickers United's priests hadn't suffered many losses so far. Egotistical eyed the 8 priests scattered up ahead. The 3 great priests among them caught his attention in particular. Young 7, Painted Muslin, and Black Heaven stood in different areas, roughly 30 meters apart. Egotistical quickly picked out Painted Muslin among the 3. From experience, almost all female priests lacked skill. Most of their equipment was given to them by other players. The prettier they were, the more people that were eager to hand them gear. Seeing Painted Muslin, a hint of disdain surfaced in Egotistical's heart. Since all 3 were worth the same amount of merit points, he would naturally choose the pushover. Female priests usually made for easy targets. He didn't care he was bullying a girl. Egotistical slowly approached Painted Muslin from behind. Painted Muslin was diligently healing the players in the front line. She had already lost count of how many she saved. Right after casting a heal, she suddenly sensed something off. She wasn't like other priests who panic-activated Howl of Terror at the slightest sign of danger. After all, most of the time, this was the only skill at a priest's disposal that posed a real threat. If it was used rashly and avoided by the thief, the chances of survival would plummet. As long as the threat of Howl of Terror was there, a nearby thief wouldn't rashly take action. Painted Muslin calmly pulled back and tossed an illuminate in the air. As the ball of light floated up in the sky, a brilliant radiance flooded the surroundings. Within the light, a shadowy silhouette pounced toward her. The thief was quickly closing in on Painted Muslin. She calmly protected herself with a level 6 holy barrier. At higher skill levels, besides increased damage absorption, it also had a chance of negating crowd control effects like stuns. Ordinary players rarely had the opportunity to obtain powerful skills. Most of them came from sub-legendary grade equipment, which was simply too hard to come by. Even obtaining just a few was already extremely lucky. In Asskickers United, with Nie Yan and Yao Yao being the only exceptions, the other top-ranking players had to make do with 1 or 2 pieces. Players like Painted Muslin and the rest would instead focus their attention on leveling up their basic skills, which could also become extremely powerful if leveled up properly. In the instant Illuminate revealed Egotistical, Painted Muslin targeted him with Ache. Ache was equivalent to a curse, causing the opponent to continuously lose health in addition to marking them. This sort of instant cast skill was extremely difficult to avoid. The thief was immediately struck. Egotistical's heart tightened. This priest was much more difficult to deal with than he initially predicted. Nevertheless, he rushed up to Painted Muslin and stabbed his dagger toward her forehead. Concussive blow. However, with a flash of light, Painted Muslin dodged the attack by teleporting 2 meters away. She had used a short distance blink skill. Painted Muslin struck back with a holy blast. A ball of light whizzed toward Egotistical. Egotistical was forced to halt his pursuit. Seeing the ball of light shooting towards him, he avoided the attack with Gale Step. Taking advantage of the speed boost from Gale Step, he pounced toward Painted Muslin once again. When Egotistical arrived in front of Painted Muslin, he stabbed his dagger toward her throat. This was the best he could do given the circumstances. As the blade of the dagger was about to slash her throat, a cheeky smirk surfaced on Painted Muslin's lips. Seeing the change in Painted Muslin's expression, Egotistical's mind trembled. He wanted to activate a skill, but Painted Muslin had already targeted him with a silence. Looking down at his skill bar, all his skills were grayed out. He couldn't use any of them. Shit, I'm screwed. Painted Muslin finally activated Howl of Terror. A piercing shriek rang out and stabbed into Egotistical's ears. He instantly lost control of his body as it fled in the opposite direction. He was under the influence of the fear status effect. Seeing Egotistical getting feared, the nearby players naturally all ganged up on him. Several mages blasted him with flame bursts and holy judgments, sending him flying. Egotistical collapsed dead to the ground. The surrounding players gazed at Painted Muslin with expressions of reverence. After being closed in on by a great thief, a great priest like her managed to calmly respond and even turn the tables on him. This kind of skill was definitely worthy of praise. They previously only knew Painted Muslin for her beautiful and graceful appearance. None of them expected this female priest to possess such skill. Young 7 glanced over at Painted Muslin and cracked a faint smile. Asskickers United's beauties weren't so easy to bully. Whether it was Painted Muslin, Yao Yao, One Strike Vow, Moonchild, or even the slightly weaker Yulan, all of these roses had sharp thorns. Nie Yan assessed the situation on the battlefield. Asskickers United had lost more than 300 players, while Bloodlust Blade's side had lost over 200. Although at a glance, Asskickers United had suffered more casualties, if one were to only look at class advanced players, Asskickers United came out on top. They had only lost 2 players while Bloodlust Blade's side had lost 5. Looking at it this way, the losses on both sides were pretty even. Nie Yan was relatively satisfied with this result, especially given he had yet to reveal his trump card. The Asskickers United player wreaking the most havoc on the battlefield was Smoke Stub, who had single-handedly slaughtered a path forward into the enemy's backline. With his unrivaled gear and powerful skills, he killed more than 30 players. At this moment, 8 mages in the vicinity targeted him with their spells. Smoke Stub quickly activated Divine Bulwark. Spells ruthlessly bombarded the golden membrane of light around him. However, he took no damage because no magic could pass through this barrier. Taking full advantage of divine bulwark, Smokestub started killing the mages with every swing of his great sword. 3 great warriors from Angel Corps charged forward to intercept him. These 3 players were all orcs. With large towering bodies, green skin, and ferocious expressions, they innately possessed great strength. Smokestub didn't bother tangling with these 3 great warriors. Seeing 2 of them trying to pincer him, he charged out through the gap between them. He kept using fleeing, charging, and ramming skills to evade their pursuit while cutting down any mage unlucky enough to be in his path. He was making them look like fools. The 3 great warriors tried desperately to lock Smokestub down, but he would evade them every time as their attacks struck nothing but air, leaving them feeling endlessly vexed. Smokestub charged toward a nearby elven great mage. Since he was immune to all magic while divine bulwark was active, the great mage was helpless to retaliate. Mages loathe these types of skills the most, since all they could do was keep their distance until the skill wore off. Just as Smokestub was about to catch up, the elven mage cast Anywhere door and reappeared more than 10 meters away. 4 mages stood between him and Smokestub, giving him a sense of security. Assault. Smokestub suddenly rammed through the 4 mages with inhuman speed, sending them flying back, and instantly closed the gap. The elven great mage had no time to react before he was struck in the back of the legs with a tendon break. Seeing the elven great mage getting attacked, the 8 priests in the back hurriedly healed him. It didn't matter how powerful Smokestub's attacks were. The elven great mage would never die as long as Smokestub couldn't one-shot him. Barbarian strength. Smokestub roared as his muscles swelled with overwhelming power. He had previously spent 6 days straight getting it to level 3, greatly enhancing its effects. He then activated rage, increasing his attack power even further. Die. Smokestub chopped down on the elven great mage with a flame slash. Among the ordinary warrior skills, flame slash and great cleave dealt the highest damage. Smokestub preferred the former. After buffing himself to such an extent and given that he was 6 whole levels higher than his opponent, he was guaranteed to deal fatal damage. Smokestub's great sword landed squarely on the great mage's chest and sent him flying. His cloth armor offered virtually no protection. Minus 3,206. It was an instant kill. The priests were caught off guard. Like this, it didn't matter how much they healed. Several rays of light fell over the elven great mage, but their healing couldn't bring back the dead. Bloodlust Blade's backline was in chaos thanks to Smokestub's rampage. Their mages were having a hard time dealing effective damage. The Asskickers United Guild chat exploded with cheer. Smokestub is too awesome. What a god. Out of all the warriors, Smokestub was the only one who dared to charge into the enemy's backline without any support. This showed he had absolute confidence in his strength. Smokestub's actions lit a flame in the hearts of the players from Asskickers United. Especially the warriors, they fought even more ferociously. At this moment, Smokestub's divine bulwark wore off. The golden barrier protecting him gradually faded away. In the distance, a player in dark gold armor appeared from the enemy's ranks. Sporting multiple pieces of sub-legendary grade equipment, the quality of his gear was equal if not superior to that of Smokestub. Seeing the appearance of this player, Nie Yan's mind trembled. It was Bloodlust Mad Blade. That fellow had actually personally come over here. Smokestub, fall back, Nie Yan ordered in an anxious tone. Although Smokestub had achieved quite a lot by charging so deeply into the enemy's forces, the risk of dying also increased greatly. After all, he was surrounded by the top mages of 4 large guilds. Without the protection of divine bulwark, he was basically a sitting duck. It was still possible for someone of his skill to get out alive. But that was only if he didn't encounter a player of equal caliber like Mad Blade. When divine bulwark was close to wearing off, Smokestub had already started preparing his retreat. He had achieved his goal. There was no point in dying needlessly. Just as Smokestub was about to retreat, Mad Blade charged toward him from his blind spot. By the time he took notice, it was too late. Want to run? Not on my watch. You're dying here today, Mad Blade shouted as he cut off Smokestub's path of retreat with intercept. Shit. Smokestub deflected a blow with parry. Activating charge, he tried to knock Mad Blade aside. Mad Blade suddenly took up a defensive stance. Clang. The 2 heavily armored great berserkers collided with each other. Smokestub's charge failed. Surrounded by hundreds of enemy players without any way of escaping for the next 10 seconds, his death was practically assured. Nie Yan and the others desperately tried rushing over to save Smokestub. But it was already too late. Given how many kills I've racked up, I have no regrets. Smokestub chuckled. I leave the rest to you guys, Nirvana, promise you'll slaughter a couple more of those bastards in my place. Don't let the crypt stronghold fall. All right, Nie Yan resolutely replied, his throat a bit hoarse. Smokestub suddenly turned away from Mad Blade and dashed off. Mad Blade had only blocked off Smokestub's path of retreat. He never expected Smokestub would go to where even more enemies gathered. Whirlwind slash. Taking advantage of barbarian strength and rage still being active, Smokestub cut down 5 nearby mages. In the blink of an eye, Bloodlust Blade's side had suffered another 5 casualties. Mad Blade gnashed his teeth and charged after Smokestub from behind. Just as Smokestub was about to cut down another mage, Mad Blade collided into him. Smokestub staggered several steps back, his head slightly spinning. Charge had a dizzy effect. Before he could recover, Mad Blade struck him with a tendon break, crippling his movements. Several fireballs flew over and bombarded Smokestub. Great cleave. Mad Blade roared. Smokestub was sent flying before crashing into the ground, never to get back up again. Players didn't get penalized for killing the enemy during a guild war. Smokestub only dropped a single piece of equipment in 1 level. However, he couldn't revive until after the war was over. Mad Blade collected the item Smokestub dropped on the ground. Not bad, sub-legendary grade, he said with an arrogant smirk. Tossing the piece of sub-legendary grade equipment into his bag, Mad Blade led the elites he brought with him toward the forces of Asskickers United. You worthless ants. If any of you have the guts, I'm standing right here. Mad Blade arrogantly mocked, giving vent to his pent-up anger. Given how Bloodlust Blades had been forced to the brink of collapse, his hatred for Asskickers United was overflowing. No. Smokestub. Why? Damn that bastard, Mad Blade. Many players on Asskickers United's side were filled with grief, especially Wood Grace, Cold Peak, and the others who followed Smokestub from Withered Leaf. Seeing Mad Blade cutting down Smokestub, and then his taunting words after, they were unable to hold back their anger. Smokestub's prestige in Asskickers United was preceded only by Nie Yan and Blade Light. He was friendly and approachable, lacking any air of arrogance, and even occasionally brought the weaker players with him on dungeon runs. He would also frequently give out advice for leveling or PvP. Many players received his tutelage, for which he received their utmost respect. Since he was relatively older than most other players, having already passed the age of 30, he was even affectionately called uncle by some of the young ladies in the guild. Witnessing the death of Smoke Stub, many players lost their cool and started madly attacking the enemy without any regard for their lives. Nie Yan entered stealth, silently vanishing without a trace while everyone was distracted. Son, you and I, we're going to kill Mad Blade. Nie Yan declared in a solemn, unwavering tone. All right, big brother, I'll follow your lead. Sun nodded with his fists clenched. No one noticed Nie Yan and Sun were sneaking towards Mad Blade. This was the first time Nie Yan and Sun were partnering up. Picking out Mad Blade from the distant crowd, Nie Yan's gaze was as sharp as a blade. With his and Sun's strength combined, it'd be impossible for Mad Blade to leave here alive today. Nie Yan slowly crept forward, paying careful attention not to get detected. Mad Blade probably never imagined Nie Yan would try to ambush him. After all, thieves almost exclusively targeted casters like priests or mages. No thief in their right mind would sneak right into the heart of the enemy's forces to assassinate a warrior. Either that player was a frightening existence capable of disregarding everything, or a hot-headed fool seeking death. Son, what's your location? Nie Yan asked. 389.676.865, Sun replied after glancing at his minimap. After checking his own coordinates, Nie Yan looked to his left. Sun was only 6 meters away. Though they were standing almost shoulder to shoulder, he couldn't see Sun who was in stealth. Mad Blade was about 10 or so meters away from them. With so many enemies nearby, they couldn't act rashly. Boss, Holy Empire and Sapphire Shrine's forces are only 10 minutes away from arriving here, a Bloodlust Blades player reported to Mad Blade. Ignore those pests. It won't make a difference no matter how many they send. We'll deal with Asskickers United first. They've been an eyesore for long enough, Mad Blade said in a disdainful tone. Eavesdropping on their conversation, Nie Yan sneered. Declaring your victory already. Let's just see who really comes out on top in the end. Although Nie Yan is the guild leader of Asskickers United would occasionally give out orders on the battlefield, he left most of the burden to others. Thieves really weren't suited for commanding, a role generally taken up by warriors or priests. In this instance, Young Seven was the one overseeing the battlefield, while Nie Yan simply provided suggestions. This was why he was free to do as he pleased. Taking down Mad Blade would be a huge win, but even if Nie Yan by chance failed, he was confident he could escape without any mishap. Mad Blade was wholly unaware of Nie Yan and Sun's presence only 10 or so meters away. He busily gave out orders to the players around him. Bloodlust Blades had mobilized another 1,000 elites, and were starting to overwhelm Asskickers United. Mad Blade surveyed the battlefield and finally noticed Nie Yan's absence. Seeing Lil Gold still fighting fiercely 500 meters away, he assumed Nie Yan was probably lurking around there. He took several steps forward, then shouted in the voice chat, don't let them catch their breath. Thieves, go around and slaughter their priests. After Mad Blade gave out the order, more than 30 level 50+ thieves under the command of 2 great thieves entered stealth and set out for the backliners of Asskickers United. Mad Blade was unwittingly walking closer towards Sun and Nie Yan, with only 5 meters separating them. Sun and Nie Yan remained motionless, waiting for the opportunity to strike. Stationary thieves were much harder to detect since they received a significant boost to their stealthing capability. With Nie Yan and Sun's already high cloaking stats, if they remained motionless, ordinary players wouldn't notice them until they were less than 2 meters away. Bloodlust Blades players were advancing forward bit by bit. With twice as many elites as Asskickers United, they almost immediately occupied the advantage. As their commander, Mad Blade was also moving at pace with his troops. Seeing Mad Blade walking closer and closer, Nie Yan's eyes flashed with a cold light. His dagger was like a deadly viper, ready to strike at a moment's notice. Nie Yan was fairly calm. After all, this wasn't his first rodeo. Sun on the other hand was starting to get restless. This was his first time carrying out such a high-risk operation, infiltrating the enemy's ranks to assassinate their leader. Just thinking about it made his heart race with excitement. He forcefully calmed himself down. For better or worse, after following Nie Yan for so long, a bit of his brazen nature also rubbed off on him. Sun's mind flashed with scenes of past events. Nie Yan cutting down Black Amazing in Kiln Fire Woods, as well as his performances in Twilight Wood and Sinful Gorge, were something that Sun had always strived for. It was Nie Yan who had built up Asskickers United's glory from the ground up. Sun dreamed of the day when his achievements would be just as glorious. The 2 thieves were like cheetahs hiding in ambush, ready to pounce on their prey at any time. How long can you last under a barrage of magic? Nie Yan asked. 6 seconds. If I include Gale Step, 9 seconds, Sun replied. Nie Yan pondered for a moment. 6 seconds was enough. We have 5 seconds to build up 2 to 3 combo points. Then, on my single, we're going to use finisher skills to insta-kill Mad Blade. It's crucial we land the final hit at the same time. The previous attacks won't matter since Mad Blade has a dedicated healer, and most great priests can respond with a heal in under 2 seconds. If a heal slips in between our attacks, Mad Blade won't die. Killing Mad Blade was a tall order. This was pushing the limits of Nie Yan and Sun, requiring 2 thieves to work together with flawless coordination. There couldn't be the slightest lapse in judgment, or they'd fail. Sun was startled. I don't think it's possible, even if we both use finisher skills at the same time. He has really high defense, the armor type advantage, and more than 4,200 health. He's way too tanky. How are we going to burst down someone like that? It's fine, just follow my lead, Nie Yan assured. As long as he and Sun were on the same page, dealing 4,200 burst damage would be no issue. However, his part was a lot trickier since he would have to activate Apocalyptic Extinction in the instant before he and Sun used their finisher skills. This was the only way to bypass Mad Blade's defense and make sure the priests couldn't remove it in time with Dispel. On top of this, he had to do all of this while being perfectly in sync with Sun, lest all their efforts go to waste. Nie Yan didn't have the time to explain in further detail. Alright, I understand. Though Sun had his doubts, he had faith in Nie Yan. So, he would try his best to carry out the plan. In case we fail, immediately use an unknown transfer scroll, Nie Yan said. For such a high difficulty assassination attempt to fail was fairly normal. There was no need to throw their lives away as well. Mad Blade slowly entered their attack range. 2 meters, this was a thief's domain. A few mages were passing through close to Nie Yan and Sun. One of them happened to brush against Nie Yan's foot, a faint trace of danger suddenly surfacing in his heart. A thief. Before the mage could cry out, Nie Yan and Sun burst into action. They pounced toward Mad Blade. No matter how good his senses were, there was no way he could react in such a short time, especially against 2 apex thieves. Nie Yan and Sun's speed was unrivaled. Extreme Intimidate. Before Mad Blade could make any movements, Nie Yan targeted him with Extreme Intimidate which prevented him from running away. Seeing Nie Yan dashing over, Mad Blade raised his great sword to block, only for the glint of a dagger to emerge behind him. Smothering strike. Sun's dagger pierced into the back of Mad Blade's skull. Nie Yan followed up almost instantly with concussive blow, striking Mad Blade in the forehead with his dagger. The teamwork of Nie Yan and Sun was impeccable. Sun hadn't ranked up his smothering strike yet, so the stun was prematurely broken after the next attack. But Nie Yan's concussive blow had a 2-second stun effect. Reverse grip backstab. With a slight pivot of his foot, Nie Yan twirled around and plunged his dagger into Mad Blade's back. This was his first time successfully pulling off reverse grip backstab. But thanks to his previous encounter with that thief in the underworld, his execution was extremely smooth, achieving a completion rate of 63%, which rewarded him with 2 combo points. Sun also unloaded several attack skills to build up his combo points. -588. -532. -519. In only 2 seconds, Mad Blade's health fell below 60%. At this moment, a ray of light fell over Mad Blade, restoring his health back to full. While the priests worried about Mad Blade's health, the nearby mages targeted Nie Yan and Sun with their spells. Nie Yan and Sun activated God's blessing and glorious protection respectively as a shower of spells rained down on them. They braved through the bombardment unimpeded as they continued unleashing attack after attack on Mad Blade. The moment Mad Blade was about to recover, Sun struck him in the forehead with concussive blow, stunning him again. Normally, Nie Yan and Sun could individually keep a target stun locked for 7 seconds or longer, to say nothing of the two of them working together. Were there no others around, even the tankiest of warriors would die long before they came out of Nie Yan and Sun's stun chain. How many combo points? 3. Nie Yan checked his own combo counter. He had already built up 3 points as well. Alright, on my signal. Ready, set, now. Just before Nie Yan shouted now, he targeted Mad Blade with apocalyptic extinction. Mad Blade's defense immediately plummeted. His body also entered an exhausted state. The current him was undoubtedly at his weakest. The more than 10 priests in the back kept casting heal on Mad Blade, keeping him permanently topped off. They believed like this he was in no danger of dying. However, Mad Blade was suddenly inflicted with several frightening curses. Before any of the priests could react, Nie Yan slashed out with phantom assassination. As Zenard's sword drew a crimson arc across Mad Blade's throat, Sun's mortal blow pierced through Mad Blade's back. Bang! The 2 attacks landed on Mad Blade in the exact same instant. -3,532. -2,287. Nie Yan and Sun's simultaneous attacks dealt more than 5,800 total damage while Mad Blade only had a little over 4,200 health. Of course he was insta-killed. Nie Yan collected the loot Mad Blade dropped on the ground, then dashed past the Bloodlust Blade's players with Gale Step before disappearing from sight. Sun was even more direct, crushing an unknown transfer scroll to immediately escape the battlefield. The sudden death of Mad Blade left the players from Bloodlust Blades in a state of shock. None of them expected Nie Yan and Sun to succeed in insta-killing him. One had to understand that Mad Blade was a great warrior with more than 4,200 health. On top of that, he had more than 10 priests constantly healing him from the rear. For him to be killed even under these circumstances beggared disbelief. Normally a warrior as powerful as Mad Blade could allow a thief to wail on him non-stop for half a minute and still have health to spare. Following the death of Mad Blade, Bloodlust Blade's forces were like a flock of headless chickens. Even though Soaring Angel was commanding everything the whole time, Mad Blade was the intermediary that passed down his orders. With him dying, there was momentarily no leader. The chain of command in Bloodlust Blades fell into chaos. Witnessing Nie Yan and Sun successfully assassinating Mad Blade, Ass-Kickers United erupted out in cheer. Yeah, the boss avenged Smoke Stub. Don't forget Sun, he was amazing too. Even though Ass-Kickers United's forces were steadily being pushed back due to the enemy's superiority in numbers, Nie Yan and Sun's accomplishment reinvigorated their fighting spirits and allowed them to hold firm. The 1,000 players led by Nie Yan had suffered heavy losses in the battle so far, but they had also killed more than 800 enemy elites. Back on the main battlefield outside of the crypt stronghold, after withstanding the first wave of attacks, Bloodlust Blades solidified their battle line and relied on their remaining 2 armored catapults to beat Ass-Kickers United's forces into a rather sorry state. In this sort of open warfare, the armored catapults displayed their full might, launching round after round of shells towards the forces of Ass-Kickers United and sweeping up their players en masse. With corpses scattered everywhere and more than 6,000 of their players having been wiped out by the bombardment of the armored catapults, the situation was looking grim for the forces of Ass-Kickers United. Even so, they didn't appear discouraged in the slightest, still charging towards the enemy with unrivaled ferocity, killing quite a few Bloodlust Blades players in return. Seeing the Ass-Kickers United players stretching as far as the eye could see, continuously surging forward like an endless tide no matter how many of them were killed, the forces of Bloodlust Blades couldn't help but recoil in fear. Shit, these bastards are crazy. Bloodlust Blades' battle line was gradually forced on the back foot. But under the formidable might of the armored catapults, Ass-Kickers United had to pay a heavy price for every inch of ground gained. As the fighting between both sides raged on, a thundering noise shook the battlefield as an army of players from Sapphire Shrine and Holy Empire emerged from the surrounding hilltops. Nie Yan suddenly received a voice call. He answered to the boisterous laughter of Sleepy Fox. Sorry for the delay. I'd say this counts as being fashionably late, right? Fall Lan is here too. Sapphire Shrine and Holy Empire's forces charged down the hillsides and clashed with the players from Bloodlust Blades. There was fighting taking place everywhere as the battlefield instantly became a lot more chaotic. It was hard to tell who was who. Ass-Kickers United, Sapphire Shrine, Holy Empire, and the 5 branch guilds had at least 3 times the forces of Bloodlust Blades, allowing them to instantly seize the advantage. The scales of victory were starting to tip in the favor of Ass-Kickers United. The players from Ass-Kickers United were ecstatic over the arrival of reinforcements and started fighting with even more fervor. Everyone, our brothers from Sapphire Shrine and Holy Empire have arrived. Let's slaughter Bloodlust Blades together. Wipe out every last one of those bastards. A one-sided massacre occurred as Bloodlust Blades was routed. Don't be so quick to celebrate, everyone. Remember, Alliance of Mages and Divine Protectors forces will be arriving soon, Fall Lan warned. The more, the merrier. I was starting to worry we'd run out of people to kill. Nie Yan laughed. Looking at the time, the ritual for summoning the Crypt Lord was probably drawing close to an end. Fall Lan was taken aback by Nie Yan's confidence. After all, Bloodlust Blades, Alliance of Mages, Divine Protectors, and Angel Corps had gathered a frightening number of elites. On top of this, they had almost 160,000 ordinary players and 2 armored catapults remaining. Truthfully, the enemy's strength far exceeded their own. Sleep Fox broke out into a wide grin. Since you're still in the mood to crack jokes, I can put my heart at ease. You have some sort of trick up your sleeve, don't you? Sleepy Fox knew Nie Yan would never do something without being sure of his success. Hearing Sleepy Fox's words, Fall Lan didn't say any more. While they were chatting, another large army of players appeared in the distant plains, stretching as far as the eye could see. Alliance of mages and divine protectors had also arrived. They had sent roughly 70,000 players, most of whom were fairly high level. Furthermore, the average quality of their equipment was better than that of any other guilds. With so many players entering the fray, the scope of the war became even grander. The main battle was being fought by Asskickers United and Bloodlust Blades in the large plain outside the crypt stronghold. Meanwhile, Sapphire Shrine, Holy Empire, and the 5 branch guilds were dealing with alliance of mages and divine protectors on the outer skirts. Victorious Return had also dispatched around 70,000 players, all of whom were their long-standing members. As for Radiant Sacred Flame, they hadn't taken any action yet. Their troops were still on standby outside the battlefield. This was all Nie Yan's plan. There were players fighting everywhere outside the crypt stronghold, from the plains to the surrounding hills, stretching far out into the horizon. At this moment, in the mountain forest behind the crypt stronghold, the ritual for summoning the crypt lord was reaching the final and most crucial point. 20 great mages were positioned in a peculiar way, with Tang Yao standing at the center. He had the largest mana pool out of all of them at over 6,000 points in addition to the support of the arcane fairy, making him the ideal candidate for becoming the crypt lord's main source of mana. Yao Yao, Lustboy, and Sunny South stood in a triangle with their right palm facing upwards as magic energy spiraled above their heads. Floating within the eye of the whirlpool were the 3 occult items, Empress Fina's Fang, Empress Fina's Eye, and Empress Fina's Venom Sac. The 16 remaining great mages stood in a circle roughly a meter apart from each other at the perimeter of the array. With their staffs raised, they recited a long series of cryptic chants. Drawn below their feet was a giant hexagram. An immense amount of magic energy was swirling in the sky above the array. The hexagram array lit up with a dazzling radiance, resembling a sacrificial ceremony from the ancient past. Space warped and twisted. A dormant existence located inside another world awoke from a long slumber. It was an ancient and foreign existence possessing unrivaled might. The power of the hexagram array tunneled through the void and slowly drew it over. After the 20 great mages chanted for more than an hour, Tang Yao finally recited the last syllable. Due to alliance of mages and divine protectors' strength, which was allowed to flourish unimpeded in their respective cities, Holy Empire and Sapphire Shrine showed signs of faltering. We can't hold on much longer. Fall Lan cried out anxiously. Nie Yan appeared completely unperturbed while he was at his wits' end. At this rate, Holy Empire and Sapphire Shrine were going to suffer a crushing defeat. It would be extremely difficult to recover from such a scenario. Wait a little longer. Nie Yan checked the time again. His lips cracked into a faint smile. It was time for the crypt lord to come out. At this moment, a huge earthquake shook the battlefield. Everyone could feel a peculiar change as the scent of death permeated the air. This scent originated from a different dimension and brimmed with death and corrosion. Everyone's faces paled at the powerful miasma. Many players were alarmed and frightened. They gazed at the earth being rent asunder in the distant mountain forest. The leaking miasma left them feeling uneasy as a sense of foreboding washed over them. The stats of every player on the battlefield suddenly dropped significantly. What's going on? I don't know. A dark ray of light descended from the sky and struck the mountain forest, causing a giant sinkhole to emerge. A 10-meter-sized giant beetle slowly crawled out until its towering figure was in full view. A dark golden carapace dotted in white with a metallic sheen, its body was covered in sharp barbs, including its 8 legs. It had a single horn protruding far out from out of its head, resembling a giant beast from antiquity. It's finally here. Nie Yan coldly smirked. He wanted to see just how Bloodlust Blades, Alliance of Mages, and Divine Protectors were going to deal with a level 100 lord. Crypt Lord, a level 100 lord with 2 million health. Everyone trembled in fear at the emergence of the Crypt Lord. Fall Lan turned to Nie Yan with a mix of shock and horror in his eyes. This is your trump card. He never expected Nie Yan to summon such a powerful creature. From the start of the war, the armored catapults had played the role of slaughter machines. Their tremendous might caused Asskickers United to suffer heavy losses. However, in front of this level 100 lord, they looked like nothing more than children's playthings. The Crypt Lord was an existence that would turn the tide of this war. The Crypt Lord, which was comparable in size to a large hill, immediately became the focal point of the battlefield. A level 100 lord, this kind of label was enough to frighten just about anybody. Soaring Angel was busy overseeing the war, passing down his orders to the higher-ups from Bloodlust Blades, Alliance of Mages, Divine Protectors, and Victorious Return. Besieged on all sides by his forces, Sapphire Shrine, Holy Empire, Asskickers United, and their 5 branch guilds were showing signs of wavering. He only required one final push to secure victory. From this day forward, there will only be Angel Corps, Bloodlust Blades, Alliance of Mages, and Divine Protectors. Asskickers United, Sapphire Shrine, and Holy Empire will cease to exist. Let this war mark their demise and this battlefield be their burial ground. Soaring Angel arrogantly declared. He had Alliance of Mages and Divine Protectors launch a full-on assault, gradually beating Holy Empire and Sapphire Shrine into retreat. Meanwhile, Bloodlust Blades was sweeping through the forces of Asskickers United with their armored catapults. At this moment, Soaring Angel felt the ground violently quake beneath his feet. He looked toward the source of the commotion and spotted a giant scarab beetle. A level 100 Crypt Lord. Soaring Angel rubbed his eyes in disbelief. Why did a level 100 lord suddenly appear here of all places? An ominous thought popped into his mind. This was Asskickers United's trump card. The situation was looking grim. Was all the effort and planning he put into this operation going to be ruined by this Crypt Lord? A level 100 lord, an existence capable of single-handedly turning the tides of this war. Once you started riding on a tiger's back, there was no getting off. Soaring Angel feared if his side started retreating now, the enemy wouldn't let them off lightly, and they would suffer even more disastrous losses. Stuck between a rock and a hard place, the only option was to fight until the bitter end. Soaring Angel still had the 2 remaining armored catapults sitting on the plains, undamaged by the goblin magic cannon. They were his last hope. From the moment Soaring Angel's forces attacked the crypt stronghold, their fate was bound to the outcome of this war. The attacking side couldn't use return scrolls during a siege, but the defending side could. Of course, they would only be returned to their stronghold. This was one of the rules of a stronghold siege. Boss, what are we going to do? It's a level 100 lord. An elven great mage worriedly asked. There was an intrinsic difference between a level 99 and level 100 lord. Level 100 was a watershed, similar to level 50. For players at this stage of the game, any creature at that level was an unrivaled existence, let alone a lord. Soaring Angel's mind was also drawing a blank. He had never faced a level 100 lord before. Even if they attempted to overwhelm the Crypt Lord with numbers, it would require the sacrifice of at least 10,000 of their best players. More importantly, this new variable had reversed the momentum of the war, greatly dampening the morale of their troops. Who would want to engage a level 100 lord? That was no different from throwing their lives away. Elsewhere on a hilltop, a silhouette was dashing towards the Crypt Lord at breakneck speed. It was Nie Yan. Nie Yan could sense that the Crypt Lord was currently waiting for him to awaken it. The Crypt Lord showed no sign of movement. It was like a gigantic statue, towering over the mountain forest, motionless, as though it had stood there since time immemorial. Even from far away, Nie Yan noticed the hollowness in the Crypt Lord's eyes, lacking even the tiniest spark of life. It was clearly nothing but a giant corpse, an empty shell that had been transported here from another world. Awaken, Crypt Lord. When Nie Yan arrived within 100 meters of the Crypt Lord, Bennett's soul flew out of his bag. It was shining brightly like the zenith sun, emitting a blinding radiance. This was proof it had grown much stronger after absorbing the energy from the shattered holy stones. Bennett's soul flew over toward the Crypt Lord and entered its forehead. The Crypt Lord's eyes suddenly blossomed with dark light as powerful death energy pulsed out from its body in waves. It was awakened. The Crypt Lord gently stretched out its limbs. This Crypt Lord needed a soul to awaken. Bennett's soul in Nie Yan's bag fulfilled this requirement. Back in the mountain forest behind the Crypt stronghold, the 20 great mages who had completed the summoning ritual could feel Crypt Lord Bennett's powerful strength as mana rapidly drained away from their bodies. Several of them hurriedly drank advanced mana potions. They stood in place, legs locked to the ground. This hexagram array couldn't be broken, or else Crypt Lord Bennett would be unsummoned. It was only linked to this world by their mana. Nie Yan could sense Bennett's excitement through their spiritual connection. The ground quaked as Crypt Lord Bennett took a step forward. Its body was brimming with destructive power. He also discovered he could direct the Crypt Lord through Bennett's soul. Looking up, Nie Yan noticed a flat surface on top of the Crypt Lord's forehead. He leapt up 6 meters into the air and swung himself up with a web line. On top of the Crypt Lord's head, the sea of players spread out over the plains looked like nothing more than ants. They stared at Nie Yan with a mix of fear and awe, as though they were facing a god. Right now, Nie Yan was planning to unleash hell on the enemy alliance led by Soaring Angel. This day would become a nightmare that would forever haunt them. Under Nie Yan's command, Crypt Lord Bennett charged into the battlefield. Each of the Crypt Lord's steps left depressions in the ground. It was an invincible moving fortress. Seeing Nie Yan riding this ancient beast toward the forces of Bloodlust Blades, the players of Asskickers United broke out in frantic cheer. The sight of Nie Yan on the Crypt Lord was truly awe-inspiring. This was a declaration of Asskickers United's invincibility. Victory belonged to them. Their fighting spirits were once more reignited as countless players rallied behind the Crypt Lord. Their cheers resounded through the sky. Long live Asskickers United. Brothers, let's wipe out those bastards. Bloodlust Blades, Angel Core, and the rest, we'll send them straight to hell. These players under Nie Yan's lead resembled an unstoppable tidal wave, surging towards the enemy forces. Nie Yan was also fired up. He was currently an unparalleled existence on the battlefield, ruling over life and death. Slaughter the enemy, Crypt Lord Bennett. Let their blood and lives hail the second coming of your undying presence. Before long, a group of 5,000 Bloodlust Blades players entered Nie Yan's sights. They looked especially weak and puny in front of the Crypt Lord. Nie Yan flashed a sinister smile. You bastards can all die. His appearance was akin to that of a death god to these players from Bloodlust Blades. Before their alarmed eyes, Nie Yan ordered Crypt Lord Bennett to attack with impale. Crash! Crypt Lord Bennett slammed his massive claws into the ground, causing sharp tendrils to erupt out and pierce through every player in a 50-meter line. Like a sacrificial ritual, more than 500 players were instantly killed. The Crypt Lord was unstoppable, leaving a trail of bodies in its wake. The players on the side of Bloodlust Blades started frantically retreating. In front of this powerful Crypt Lord, they couldn't summon up any will to resist. Overcome with despair, they fled en masse, for fear they would be the next to lose their lives. The Crypt Lord's frightening power also shocked the players from Asskickers United as they slaughtered the retreating forces of Bloodlust Blades unimpeded. At this moment, victory was within their grasp. A group of 100 warriors from Bloodlust Blades were prepared to face the oncoming forces of Asskickers United, when tendrils erupted from the ground below their feet. The whole area was transformed into rays of light. After scraping up a group of players willing to put up a fight, Bloodlust Blades' pitiful resistance was instantly crushed by the Crypt Lord's incomparable strength. Within a minute, Bloodlust Blades' forces were routed as they were slaughtered left and right. Nie Yan had slaughtered more than 1,000 players in the blink of an eye. His control of the Crypt Lord had also become a lot smoother. At this moment, the Crypt Lord let out a screech as the corpses on the ground formed into 5 carrion scarabs. These carrion scarabs were roughly the size of a grizzly bear, resembling miniature Crypt Lords. They were ordinary level 80 monsters with 12,000 health. Their defense wasn't high, but their attacks were extremely powerful. The 5 carrion scarabs charged forward and opened up a path for Crypt Lord Bennett. 2 carrion scarabs spotted a Bloodlust Blades player who couldn't flee in time. They instantly pounced forward and ripped him to shreds. Their attacks dealt more than 1,000 damage each hit. About 30 seconds later, the Crypt Lord summoned 5 more carrion scarabs. As time passed and Asskickers United's forces continued pushing forward, the Crypt Lord had already summoned 25 carrion scarabs, and that number was rapidly growing. The army of carrion scarabs steamrolled a path forward. Nothing could stop the Crypt Lord's advance. With the Crypt Lord serving as the core, Asskickers United's forces resembled a steak knife plunging into the heart of Bloodlust Blades, wantonly slaughtering the enemy. They had already killed more than 2,000 players. It looked like Bloodlust Blades was about to suffer a crushing defeat. Wherever the Crypt Lord went, even the toughest of defensive lines collapsed with a single hit. Nie Yan surveyed the battlefield. His eyes locked onto the 2 armored catapults. They were being slowly towed away from each other before being set up to deal with the Crypt Lord. The armored catapults were the only things on the battlefield capable of posing a threat to the Crypt Lord. The armored catapults could deal a lot of damage to the Crypt Lord. However, they were cumbersome and could only be used on flat ground. If they encountered rough terrain, it would be difficult to move them or adjust their aim. The next objective was precisely these 2 armored catapults. Nie Yan slaughtered to his heart's desire, making sure he never got in range of the 2 armored catapults. There would be plenty of time to deal with them later on. Besides, they were too cumbersome to keep up with the Crypt Lord. The enemy had 2 powerful war machines but no way to use them. On this battlefield, Nie Yan had thoroughly crushed the enemy's fighting spirit. All their elites had retreated. The ordinary players who remained couldn't even withstand the attacks from the carrion scarabs, let alone the Crypt Lord. Soaring Angel's face was extremely unsightly. He had started gathering all his elites, specifically the fighters. The main tank from Angel Corps was already on his way. Only fighters could tank the Crypt Lord, albeit with great difficulty. The level difference was simply too great to overcome. Even so, if they could stall the Crypt Lord for only a brief moment, it would allow the attacks of the armored catapults to land. This was their only hope for victory, no matter how distant and remote. With the Palant Phoenix longbow in hand, Soaring Angel was currently dashing between the players on the battlefield. He took out 3 arrows from his quiver and fired as several crimson streaks of light flew toward Nie Yan. Nie Yan quickly picked out Soaring Angel from the crowd. He had Crypt Lord Bennett swing around as 3 arrows brushed past him. Sadly for the enemy, they weren't homing. In front of Crypt Lord Bennett's unrivaled strength, Soaring Angel could only rely on his ranged attacks to harass Nie Yan. Under Nie Yan's command, Crypt Lord Bennett suddenly accelerated toward Soaring Angel. Although the Crypt Lord looked large and clumsy, by no means was it slow. After all, it was a level 100 Lord. It sped up, reaching a terrifying speed, and quickly caught up to Soaring Angel. Seeing the mountain-like Crypt Lord barreling towards him, Soaring Angel's eyes widened in alarm. He never expected such a behemoth to move with such speed. Soaring Angel sped himself up with a haste skill as he dashed through the battlefield. Elven demon hunters were innately quick on their feet to begin with. Add this on top of his excellent equipment, and he could rival even the fastest thieves. Every now and then, he would turn around and fire a volley of arrows at Nie Yan. Kiting around like I'm some kind of boss, huh? I'll show you not to underestimate me. Nie Yan naturally wasn't going to put up with Soaring Angel's antics. Nie Yan had the Crypt Lord continuously swaying back and forth to avoid Soaring Angel's arrows. It sent countless players from bloodlust blades flying during the pursuit. Nothing could obstruct its path. At this moment, a large group of fighters rushed over and tried to intercept the Crypt Lord, only to be sent flying away by its spiked carapace. Only then did they realize how insignificant they were. Soaring Angel seized this brief moment of respite, which was bought through the sacrifice of hundreds of lives, to flee far away. Soaring Angel had absolute confidence in his skills. He wasn't afraid of Nie Yan in a one-on-one duel. But the Crypt Lord was a different matter altogether. The gap in strength was so overwhelming that he couldn't help but feel a profound sense of helplessness. Although Angel Corps had many elites, they lacked a being that possessed absolute strength like the Crypt Lord. Tisk, he flees pretty quickly. Nie Yan grumbled. In any case, Soaring Angel's attacks couldn't pose a threat to him. He continued to wantonly slaughter the enemy's forces. The losses of bloodlust blades were severe. At this rate, they would soon be completely wiped out. The mages in the vicinity all started chanting their magic, preparing to bombard Nie Yan. Nie Yan glanced at Crypt Lord Bennett's skill bar. Impale was back off cooldown. The Crypt Lord sent sharp tendrils erupting from the ground, instantly skewering every mage within a 50-meter radius. Even though Nie Yan knew he had entered the range of the armored catapults, he didn't stop advancing. He planned to let the Crypt Lord tank a hit just to see how much damage they dealt. If it wasn't too much, he would brave through the assault and destroy them. The only way for the enemy alliance to kill the Crypt Lord was to lure it into the range of the armored catapults. As Soaring Angel ran, he ordered the players on his side to ready the armored catapults. Before long, the Crypt Lord entered within 500 meters of one of the armored catapults. The armored catapult launched 5 shells into the air. Seeing the volley of shells flying in his direction, Nie Yan leapt off the Crypt Lord, ordering it to dodge as best as it could while he fled to safety. Boom, boom, boom. 5 red shells ruthlessly bombarded the Crypt Lord's thick carapace as flames engulfed its entire body. Minus 82,727. Minus 81,444. Minus 86,539. Minus 80,106. Minus 80,025. What frightening damage. The Crypt Lord staggered several steps backwards. Although the range of armored catapults was only 500 meters, not nearly as great as goblin magic cannons, most of the threat came from the additional fire damage from their shells. Every shell underwent a special manufacturing process, and was inscribed with powerful magic runes that detonated on impact. The explosion radius was quite large, so it was difficult to avoid. Ass-Kickers United had suffered many casualties precisely to these explosive shells. The impact of the shell along with the additional fire damage was a double whammy. When the armored catapult prepared to fire again, a group of 100 fighters from bloodlust blades charged toward the Crypt Lord. 3 among them were class advanced players, so their defense was quite high. They wanted to lock down the Crypt Lord so that the armored catapult could bombard it to death. Nie Yan naturally wouldn't allow their plan to go off without a hitch. There was currently no need to brave through the attacks of the armored catapults. The area around them was booby-trapped with thunderstorm mines too. If a large number of these went off at once, they could deal considerable damage. It wasn't worth it to make the Crypt Lord walk through this minefield. Nie Yan ordered the Crypt Lord to retreat, causing the fighters to miss their encirclement. The Crypt Lord was still constantly spawning carrion scarabs. More and more of them were scuttling about. The ground was completely littered with corpses anyway, so there were plenty of summoning mediums. It could even be said there was an inexhaustible supply. Furthermore, Nie Yan discovered that the more corpses there were on the ground, the stronger the Crypt Lord became and the faster it recovered health. It was absorbing the death energy from these corpses to replenish its own health. Under Nie Yan's command, the carrion scarabs pounced toward the group of fighters, cutting off their retreat. God damn it, it can even heal. Why the hell is it so strong? Soaring Angel cursed. He was truly feeling helpless. Since the Crypt Lord was being controlled by Nie Yan, this was equal to it having intelligence. A level 100 Lord with intelligence was much more frightening than an ordinary one. The mages from bloodlust blades unleashed a concentrated barrage of magic at the Crypt Lord. However, the damage they dealt was negligible, failing to even exceed its health regeneration. Soaring Angel was at his wit's end. It looked like Nie Yan was toying with them, purposefully staying just out of range of the armored catapults while he massacred their forces. As time passed, the number of casualties on the side of bloodlust blades piled up to frightening heights. Of the more than 50,000 players, they had lost more than half. Every place outside of the 500-meter range of the armored catapults was devoid of any players from bloodlust blades. They had all been wiped out. The players from Ass-Kickers United had also found their stride. With morale at an all-time high, they displayed formidable fighting strength. After clearing out all the enemies in the area, some of them headed to the other battlefields to provide support to Holy Empire and Sapphire Shrine. After about an hour, the Crypt Lord had spawned more than 600 carrion scarabs. This was a frightening force. One had to remember every carrion scarab had 12,000 health and 1,000 attack power. What's more, this army was continuously growing in size. Under the Crypt Lord's lead, there was no enemy left alive in their wake. Nie Yan turned his attention to the 2 armored catapults in the distance. It was about time he dealt with them. The more than 600 carrion scarabs spread out and started closing in on the two armored catapults from every direction. The carrion scarabs were expendable units that didn't fear death. They charged forward one after another, setting off the thunderstorm mines in the vicinity. Bang, bang, bang. Successive explosions rang out in the air as they were blasted away and transformed into smoking corpses. However, more would swarm forward to replace them, triggering more of the thunderstorm mines further up ahead. In this fashion, more than half of the thunderstorm mines were destroyed. What took nearly half a day setting up by 6 shamans was destroyed in the blink of an eye. When the carrion scarabs cleared away all the thunderstorm mines, the Crypt Lord and Ass-Kickers United's forces in the back could safely advance forward. After witnessing more than half their defenses being cleared away, the players from Bloodlust Blades could only struggle to the bitter end. They all knew it was too late for regret. They were surrounded on all sides by the forces of Ass-Kickers United. One armored catapult launched 5 flaming shells into a dense crowd of carrion scarabs. An explosion swept through and killed close to 30 of them. At this moment, the Crypt Lord let out a thundering roar. Soaring Angel's face paled. What he dreaded the most was finally happening. Most of the thunderstorm mines surrounding the armored catapults were cleared away, leaving only the 3,000 or so players from Bloodlust Blades to defend. Their defense was extremely frail. Countless players from Ass-Kickers United charged toward the armored catapults. The Crypt Lord along with hundreds of carrion scarabs also swarmed forward. With so many enemies closing in from every direction, the armored catapults had no way of stopping everyone. Soaring Angel urgently requested for support from Alliance of Mages and Divine Protectors. If the armored catapults were destroyed, what little chance they had at victory would be extinguished. Holy Empire and Sapphire Shrine's blockade had been broken through. More and more players from Alliance of Mages and Divine Protectors were converging here. Nie Yan received word about the enemy's movements from Sleepy Fox and Fall Lan. It would be troublesome if the reinforcements from Alliance of Mages and Divine Protectors arrived before he could destroy the armored catapults. He needed to hurry up. Nie Yan had the Crypt Lord charge forward, entering the range of the two armored catapults. Boom, boom, boom. 10 red-hot shells fell from the sky and struck the Crypt Lord, engulfing the surrounding area in powerful flames. More than 20 carrion scarabs were killed in the inferno. The Crypt Lord was also knocked several steps back by the impact. The Crypt Lord was stopped dead in its tracks. The armored catapults were extremely powerful. The 10 shells had dealt more than 700,000 damage total. However, since the armored catapults were focused solely on the Crypt Lord, they had no time to deal with the oncoming forces from Ass-Kickers United, leaving the players of Bloodlust Blades to fend for themselves. They were forced into constant retreat. Bang, bang, bang. Thunderstorm mines exploded across the battlefield, blasting countless players from Ass-Kickers United into smithereens. However, more players would rush forward to replace the fallen. Taking advantage of the downtime between attacks, Nie Yan had the Crypt Lord charge directly for the armored catapults. Quickly withdraw. Retreat 30 meters back. Soaring Angel anxiously ordered the players from Bloodlust Blades. As long as they could hold out, a large amount of reinforcements from Alliance of Mages and Divine Protectors would arrive, and the pressure on them would lessen by a lot. The formidable might of the armored catapults gave him a trace of hope. As long as they were protected, it would still be possible to kill the Crypt Lord. The Crypt Lord was a nightmare for Bloodlust Blades. From the moment it appeared, the Crypt Lord was invincible, sweeping through every enemy in its path with its domineering might. Tallying everything up, Bloodlust Blades had suffered over 43,000 deaths, of which the Crypt Lord was responsible for more than 7,000. More importantly, its presence alone had thoroughly wrecked their morale, causing them to lose all will to fight. The Crypt Lord was rapidly approaching the armored catapults, only 200 meters away. 5th to 7th Fighter Division, stop the Crypt Lord. Soaring Angel shouted. Under his command, 3 teams of close to 200 fighters formed a human wall in front of the Crypt Lord's path. It would be difficult for even the Crypt Lord to break through this solid blockade. Nie Yan glanced at the Crypt Lord's skill bar. Impale wouldn't be off cooldown for another minute, and it only had roughly 30% mana left. He was spamming skills too much in the beginning. Looking at the other skills, Corpse Eater was still available. He activated it and saw the Crypt Lord swallow several corpses whole in one go, recovering over 300,000 health and 30% mana. What an amazing skill. Impale was about to come off cooldown soon. With Impale, the Crypt Lord could sweep through the fighters up ahead. A human wall was useless against Impale. The armored catapults once more targeted the Crypt Lord. At this moment, the players from Ass-Kickers United were also making headway, with Blade Light and his group approaching within 30 meters of the armored catapults. They had already entered the safe zone. Armored catapults had a maximum range of 500 meters, but they also had a minimum range of 100 meters. Unable to attack anything within that distance, they could only continuously retreat as Blade Light and the others closed in. With his excellent equipment and high defense, Blade Light clashed with 3 fighters, one of whom was class advanced, from Angel Corp. The 3 of them had no way of stopping him. Shield bash. Blade Light rammed his great shield into one of the fighters, who was sent flying back by the powerful impact. The fighter attempted to struggle to his feet before ultimately collapsing dead to the ground. Blade Light was actually this powerful. Lofty Shadow and Nie Yan were also leading their groups, closing in on the armored catapults from different directions. Even if the armored catapults could stop the Crypt Lord, these players from Ass-Kickers United could also destroy them. The situation had become extremely perilous. Soaring Angel ordered 300 players from Bloodlust Blades to stop Blade Light and the others. He also had no choice but to join the fray, starting off by taking out 3 arrows and shooting them at Blade Light. Blade Light forced back a squad from Angel Core and beeline toward an armored catapult. He had an extremely powerful skill ready to go. Even if he couldn't destroy one, he would still deal a ton of damage. Seeing the armored catapults were only 10 meters up ahead, Blade Light grew excited as he hacked away even more fiercely with his one-handed sword. At this moment, 3 arrows flew out from the gap between 2 Angel Core players and shot towards him at lightning speed. Just as Blade Light was about to swing his sword, he noticed the 3 arrows from the corner of his eye. He hurriedly cancelled his skill midway and attempted to raise his great shield to block. Hung, 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 he was struck. The 3 arrows were too fast. Even though he saw them before they landed, it was already too late. 3 gouts of flame erupted and quickly engulfed his body. Flame shackles. This was a special skill from the Palant Phoenix bow. It could bind an enemy for 5 seconds. These flames, like thick strands of rope, tightly bound Blade Light and prevented him from moving. Seeing an opportunity, the several nearby great warriors started wailing on Blade Light, crippling him with tendon break. In response, 6 priests hurriedly healed Blade Light, bringing his health back up to a safe level. Blade Light and his group's advance was halted by the fighters from Angel Core. There was also a commotion over on Lofty Shadow's side. Several mages from Askakers United raised their staffs and shot fireballs at the armored catapults. The fire burst apart into flames after striking the armored catapults, leaving deep scorch marks on the surface. However, they failed to do any real damage. These fireballs were simply too weak. In order to avoid these spells, the armored catapults were towed around 30 meters back. They once more launched 10 flaming shells at the Crypt Lord. Impale. The Crypt Lord slammed its claws into the ground, instantly wiping out almost all the 200 fighters up ahead. Only 3 among them survived, and they had the best equipment out of all their peers. One of them was a class advanced player. Their defense allowed them to barely survive a single hit from the Crypt Lord. After being struck by Impale, they fell from close to 4,000 health to only several hundred. They chugged down advanced health potions and backed away while the several priests in the back frantically healed them. The Crypt Lord's attacks were far too horrifying. The 3 of them trying to block it was just suicide. Its unrivaled magic attack caused all the remaining players from Bloodlust Blades to scatter in fear. The Crypt Lord easily cleared the blockade ahead of it and continued its pursuit. 10 more shells bombarded the Crypt Lord, once more taking out over 700,000 health. Over on Lofty Shadow's side, since the opponents trying to intercept them were fairly weak, he and the 5 other fighters in his group were completely overwhelming the frontliners from Bloodlust Blades. A bit further in the back among the mages, an inconspicuous elementalist in grey robes stealthily raised his staff and started chanting. He wasn't outstanding, nor was he a famous player. Because of the chaos around him, not a single person noticed him chanting a fire-type area of effect spell. He whispered one syllable after another, so quietly that even he could barely hear. His staff just happened to be hidden behind an arcane mage from Askakers United. He was only 35 meters away from one of the armored catapults. For an armored catapult, it was extremely dangerous to allow an enemy elementalist to get so close. Under normal circumstances, a paladin would definitely rush up and silence him. However, with how chaotic things were right now, no one had noticed him. When his friends noticed him chanting an area of effect spell, and an advanced magic at that, they quickly moved to cover him. You can do it, Upstart. You're almost there. The arcane mage cheered. He clutched his staff as his heart was racked with nervousness. Upstart had already been chanting for 12 seconds. They only needed to hold the enemy off for 8 more seconds. Wisps of fire elemental energy swirled together, quickly converging in the air. Everyone could feel the heat as they passed. From the early days of Conviction to now, advanced magic had gradually become more and more accessible, to the extent where they were even getting into the hands of ordinary players. Upstart ranked roughly within the top 100 elementalists in Askakers United. He wasn't a top player. But any advanced magic was extremely powerful, regardless of the caster. The armored catapult had already been enveloped by a blazing red haze. Only then did the players from Bloodlust Blades realize something was wrong. Stop him. Cast silence. One paladin from Bloodlust Blades after another charged toward Upstart. Lofty Shadow was at the front dealing with the enemy fighters. Looking at the commotion in the team chat, he faintly smiled. Upstart, that kid, not bad. Seeing the paladins from Bloodlust Blades charging over in his direction, gradually entering within a 5-meter range of him, Lofty Shadow bellowed out with a deafening roar. Demoralizing shout. All the surrounding players from Bloodlust Blades were stopped dead in their tracks. Although the effect of demoralizing shout wasn't powerful, what was so great about it was that it was an area of effect skill. At the same time, an elementalist in the back cast whiteout. The area was blanketed by a layer of dense icy mist as the temperature plummeted by several degrees. Everyone within the influence of the spell, enemies and allies alike, had their movement speed reduced to a crawl. The mages in the back were willing to do anything to protect Upstart. They all had similar resolve. So long as they could destroy the armored catapults, even sacrificing their fellow comrades in arms was acceptable. Because since the start of the war, the armored catapults had killed over 9,000 players from Askakers United, and indirectly led to the deaths of tens of thousands more. If it weren't for the Goblin Magic Cannon and Crypt Lord, the Crypt Stronghold would have long since fallen. As such, the players of Askakers United loathed these armored catapults to the bottom of their hearts. Bloodlust Blades, Alliance of Mages, Divine Protectors, and Angel Corps weren't guilds that Askakers United was capable of contending with. Although Askakers United had many elites with a decent pool of talent, and their potential for growth appeared limitless, even a guild with the most solid of foundations couldn't come out of so many successive wars unscathed. Though this might not be the case with skill, in terms of level and gear quality, the top elites in Askakers United were now far inferior to their counterparts in Alliance of Mages, Divine Protectors, and Angel Corps. Some of the former elites, who Nie Yan originally had high hopes for, had dropped to level 30 to 40 over the past several wars. For them to catch back up to the rest of the pack would be a Herculean task. But before they even got a chance to recover, Askakers United became embroiled in another war. If it weren't for Nie Yan's enormous financial support and Askakers United's unity, any other different guild would have long since withered away. It would be very difficult for Askakers United to get out of their current situation. If it were only Bloodlust Blades, there would be no problem. But gathered here today was the combined forces of 4 major guilds. Then add in weapons of mass death like the armored catapults on top of this, and it was miracle Askakers United hadn't been defeated already. It was only the emergence of the Crypt Lord that had nullified the superiority of the armored catapults, allowing the scales of victory to start tipping in Askakers United's favor. At this point, the players from Askakers United only had one thing on their minds. If they destroyed the remaining 2 armored catapults, then the war would already be half won. For the sake of their fallen brothers. Area of effect magic with relatively short cast times bombarded the space up ahead. These ground-targeted spells only had radiuses of 5 meters. They couldn't differentiate between friend or foe either, damaging players from both sides. But at this moment, they were the only things that could stop the charging players from Bloodlust Blades. Players were dying in droves under this dense bombardment of small area of effect spells. The vast majority of these deaths were from Bloodlust Blades, but a portion also belonged to Askakers United. Under this intense shower of magic, even fighters would falter and collapse. The space up ahead was cleared away, turning into an isolated zone between both sides. These small area of effect spells could last 7 to 8, even 10 seconds. Fireballs ruthlessly pelted Lofty Shadow. A string of damage values ranging from 500 to 600 rose up above his head. His health instantly fell to critical levels. The 8 priests in the back frantically tried to keep him alive. All the other fighters in his group had died. He was the only one that remained standing. Under the endless inferno, Lofty Shadow charged towards several oncoming enemy paladins. It was better to go out together than to let them pass. Soaring Angel couldn't pass through the wall of flames, so he could only repeatedly shoot at Upstart with his arrows. The others mages from Askakers United lunged forward one after another, taking the hits at the cost of their lives. Protect Upstart. Everyone, persevere. The mages transformed into rays of light after being pierced by Soaring Angel's arrows. 3 seconds, 2 seconds, 1 second. Upstart had finally finished chanting his advanced magic. Ravaging blaze. A gigantic column of flames descended from the sky and smashed into the armored catapult. These flames resembled lava erupting from a volcano, possessing incredible might. The armored catapult was immediately set alight. As the flames raged on, it exploded into fragments of wood and metal. Soaring Angel lowered his Palant Phoenix longbow as despair washed over him. It was over. He hatefully glared at Nie Yan riding on the Crypt Lord in the distance. Nirvana flame, things between us won't be over so easily. He would come once more when flying mounts were released. Of 2 armored catapults, only one remained standing. Their already slim chances of stopping the Crypt Lord had dropped even further. At this moment, Nie Yan had the Crypt Lord charge towards the remaining armored catapult. 5 flaming shells struck its body, shaving away 350,000 health each time. Since the gap between attacks was relatively long, the lone armored catapult didn't pose much of a threat. The Crypt Lord tramped over all the players in its path and rammed into the armored catapult with its horn, causing it to burst apart and splinter into pieces. Bloodlust Blades had lost all hope of making a comeback. It wasn't long before the tens of thousands of troops from Alliance of Mages and Divine Protectors received word of the destruction of the armored catapults. The armored catapults were destroyed. We're done for. Despair loomed over the hearts of these players. They were just about to turn around and leave this area, when the Crypt Lord appeared before them in the distant plains. Its frightening appearance and imposing aura immediately struck fear into their hearts. Without the armored catapults, the Crypt Lord became the sole ruler of this war. Where's Soaring Angel? Nie Yan asked in the guild chat. I don't know. He disappeared. Damn it, he sure fled fast, just like a rat. Soaring Angel had vanished without a trace. Victorious Return was currently tangling with Holy Empire and Sapphire Shrine. Sensing things weren't going well, they attempted to retreat in the direction of Radiant Sacred Flame. God damn it, Trickster. Why the hell haven't you done anything yet? The war is almost fucking over, and your forces are still just standing there like jackasses. Heaven Breaker cursed. He had made an agreement with Nightbreak Trickster that they would both take action together. With so many troops, they would at least be able to wipe out Holy Empire and Sapphire Shrine. Meanwhile, Asskickers United had suffered heavy losses with only 30,000 players remaining at most. They could swoop in and deal the finishing blow. So what if they had the Crypt Lord? Could it stand up to overwhelming numbers? Although Heaven Breaker didn't know the stats of the Crypt Lord, he knew that these types of powerful existences couldn't stay on the battlefield forever. As long as they stalled and delayed until the summon duration was over, then launched a counter-offensive, it would still be possible to win. However, Radiant Sacred Flame didn't follow with their agreed-upon plan and just remained on the sidelines doing nothing, even up till now. How could Heaven Breaker not be incensed? Nightbreak Trickster didn't get mad over Heaven Breaker's cursing. Instead, he simply cracked a faint smile. Oh, was I supposed to do something? Sorry, but we all have our own interests to follow. Better luck next time, old friend. Trickster, what the hell are you trying to say? Heaven Breaker shouted. Just as these words left his mouth, the huge army of Radiant Sacred Flame let out thundering battle cries and started slaughtering their way through the forces of Victorious Return. At this moment, Heaven Breaker received a report from his subordinate. Boss, Radiant Sacred Flame was acquired by Asskickers United. We've been backstabbed. The player cried out in a panic. Shit, that bastard Trickster. Why didn't we get this information earlier? Heaven Breaker cursed. He didn't expect things to turn out this way. It seems Trickster even kept it a secret from his own guild. He only revealed this to them just now. Sapphire Shrine, Holy Empire, and Radiant Flame are currently attacking our strongholds. They had also just received the news. Nightbreak Trickster had kept Radiant Sacred Flame's relationship with Asskickers United under lock and key. At this moment, the forces of Radiant Sacred Flame and Victorious Return had already started clashing. Furthermore, Heaven Breaker received 2 notifications. Dawn's stronghold is under attack. Victorious stronghold is under attack. Sapphire Shrine, Holy Empire, and Radiant Sacred Flame were storming the 2 strongholds. The number of players participating numbered only around 6,000. However, almost all the manpower in Victorious Return had set out to participate in the Crypt Stronghold siege. Only a couple thousand players were left behind to guard the 2 strongholds, and they were mostly low level. If their 2 strongholds were destroyed, Victorious Return would no longer have a place in Kalor. However, their troops were all tangled up in combat outside the Crypt Stronghold. There was simply no way to return. The undisputed number 1 guild of the previous timelines, Viridian Empire, would fall today. Even the most brilliant stars eventually flicker and die. A chaotic melee ensued between Radiant Sacred Flame and Victorious Return, 2 old allies ultimately ending up on opposite sides. Heaven Breaker had planned to preserve his strength by withdrawing his troops from the main battlefield, while waiting for the Crypt Lord's summon duration to end. At that time, the battle outside the plains of the Crypt Stronghold would be wrapping up. Although the more than 100,000 players from Bloodlust Blades, Alliance of Mages, and Divine Protectors would be wiped out, Asskickers United, Sapphire Shrine, and Holy Empire would also suffer heavy losses, having at most less than a quarter of their original force remaining. Not to mention they would be exhausted and weary. Heaven Breaker would take this chance and join forces with Radiant Sacred Flame. With their combined force of over 100,000 players, they could annihilate the weakened Asskickers United, Sapphire Shrine, and Holy Empire and capture the Crypt Stronghold. After divvying up the remaining strongholds with Radiant Sacred Flame, Victorious Return could once more rise to glory. Sadly, plans rarely worked out that smoothly, and reality was indeed far crueler. Radiant Sacred Flame had turned traitor at this crucial juncture, catching Heaven Breaker with his pants down. It was revealed that Asskickers United had acquired Radiant Sacred Flame long ago. This wasn't something he could have ever imagined, not even in his wildest dreams. Of course he wasn't willing to go down like this, but he had been checkmated. Victorious Return and Radiant Sacred Flame clashed fiercely. It would be a while for an outcome to be reached. By then, the struggle at the Crypt Stronghold would have long since concluded. Nie Yan led the massacre while riding on top of the Crypt Lord. The remaining forces of Alliance of Mages and Divine Protectors didn't stand a chance. Checking the time, only 30 minutes remained on the Crypt Lord's 3-hour summon duration. After clearing away the stragglers, there would be no time left to help Radiant Sacred Flame. However, the remaining forces of Asskickers United, Sapphire Shrine, and Holy Empire were more than enough. Then they could dispose of the enemy together. The fate of Victorious Return was sealed. Victory was inevitable. Nie Yan looked over the casualties. Due to the 3 armored catapults, Asskickers United side had lost close to 80,000 players, 50,000 from Asskickers United and 30,000 from the elites of the 5 branch guilds. Of the more than 100,000 players stationed in the Crypt Stronghold, only 20,000 remained. Sapphire Shrine and Holy Empire had also suffered heavy losses. Of the more than 120,000 players that arrived, only 30,000 survived. Thankfully, with the assistance of the Crypt Lord, they had finally defeated the enemy. The several thousand remaining from Alliance of Mages and Divine Protectors fled to the neighboring maps. Nie Yan dispatched 3,000 thieves to collect the spoils of war on the battlefield. The harvests from such a long war were considerable, enough to cover some of their losses. With the war over, it was important for Askickers United to start recuperating. If they were dragged into another war of this scale, even if they didn't lose, they would be worn down into collapse. The average level of their players had fallen too low. Nie Yan had the Crypt Lord continue chasing the fleeing players from Alliance of Mages and Divine Protectors, so he could keep increasing his gains from the war. The surviving players from Askickers United gathered together and prepared to set off to help Radiant Sacred Flame defeat Victorious Return. The players from Askickers United were all surprised when they heard that Radiant Sacred Flame had joined their side, as many conflicts had broken out between them even just recently. Since when did Radiant Sacred Flame become their ally? Nonetheless, all of them were excited since this meant their victory was settled. It appeared that Nie Yan had planned for this long in advance. Surrounded on both sides, Victorious Return was quickly routed. The betrayal of Radiant Sacred Flame had struck a fatal blow to their morale. One of their oldest allies had sided with an enemy. With Bloodlust Blades, Alliance of Mages, and Divine Protectors defeated, Victorious Return was completely surrounded. Even if they won by some miracle, so what? They no longer had a place in Kalor. Thus, everyone in Victorious Return lost their will to fight. Victorious Return's 2 strongholds had also been captured in quick succession. This battle at the Crypt stronghold had ultimately led to the collapse of Victorious Return. All of Kalor now belonged to Askickers United. After 30 minutes, the Crypt Lord's summon time came to an end. Bennett's soul flew out of the Crypt Lord's body and returned to Nie Yan's bag. Without a soul supporting the vessel, the Crypt Lord looked no different from a statue as its vitality rapidly dissipated from its body. Small cracks started spreading along its carapace before it finally collapsed into a pile of dust. Its summoning had been a great success. At long last, the siege of the Crypt stronghold came to a conclusion. The priests on the battlefield could finally bring back the fallen, such as Smoke Stub. Some players, who were on teams that lacked a priest with a revive, could only resurrect in the graveyard, meaning the level loss would be a bit more severe. Nie Yan found to his dismay that the players who died during the war would drop an average of 5 levels, a measure set by the system to prevent a guild from bouncing back too quickly after a siege. This penalty was far too harsh. However, the penalty applied to both sides. The fallen players from Bloodlust Blades and the other guilds would also drop 5 levels. Before long, Nie Yan received word that Bloodlust Blades had disbanded. Some of their elites entered Alliance of Mages and Divine Protectors. The ordinary players weren't so lucky. They were abandoned and left to their own devices. As for the Blackstone Stronghold, following the dissolution of Bloodlust Blades, it naturally went back to Askickers United. Wars were always a coexistence of profits and losses. For example, though Askickers United had sustained heavy losses this time, they had obtained 2 strongholds and furthermore cemented their position. Their spoils were quite sizable. There was no longer anyone left in Kalor that could threaten them, putting them on the same starting point as Angel Core. Both guilds stood unopposed in the capitals of their respective nations. Although Askickers United was still a far ways off from being seen as equals to Angel Core, their future was bright. Nie Yan, Guo Wai, and the others started tallying up their losses from the war. All the loot they collected was placed in the guild treasury, a total of over 26,000 pieces of equipment. Since Sapphire Shrine, Holy Empire, and Radiant Sacred Flame were acquired, they all shared the same treasury. Naturally, the merit points to purchase things would be provided by Askickers United. Guo Wai and the other higher-ups started distributing rewards to participants of the war, especially to those that lost 5 levels. The higher the kill count, the more generous the reward. Upstart, who had destroyed one of the armored catapults with his advanced magic, received the largest reward. Askickers United had paid out close to 600,000 gold and a large amount of guild contribution after it was all worked out. If Nie Yan hadn't returned to the underworld, there was no way they could cover a cost of this level. However, with the unification of Kalor, all the strongholds in the territory now belonged to Askickers United. The 600,000 gold would be made back in no time. In the following days, Askickers United would be consolidating their strength by clearing away all their rivals and capturing the remaining strongholds. Afterwards, they would focus on quickly raising the level of their players to keep Angel Core from pulling further ahead. With so many matters that required tending to, Askickers United's administrative team was swamped with work. Nie Yan's job was a lot cushier in comparison. All he had to do was occasionally give out an order or two. What he would focus on next was using his 10 years of game experience to make the guild even more powerful. Right now, Kalor was unified. Even if Alliance of Mages and Divine Protectors tried to pull anything funny, they would find themselves powerless. To say nothing of Angel Core, who was so far away in the Satrine Empire. At best, they could only dispatch some elites to stir up a bit of trouble. Before flying mounts were released, they posed no threat. According to the events of the previous timeline, flying mounts would only appear a year and a half after the release of the Buried History expansion. This was a crucial point in time. If Askickers United failed to catch up to Angel Core by then, they would be in trouble. The following months would be a period of peace and growth. Since the release of Conviction, by relying on his previous life's experience, Nie Yan had obtained powerful equipment, finished a high-difficulty quest that earned him the Crypt Lord, and led Askickers United in the unification of Kalor. But no matter how strong he became in the future, he could never be invincible by himself. To have achieved his current success was already remarkably impressive. Beyond level 100 would be the era of master classes, shadow dancers, magisters, sword saints, bishops, champions, and so on. The countless master class players would be the rulers of this era. Each one of them was a peerless talent. It would be great if Nie Yan could even rank within the top 10 by relying on his earlier superiority. But for him to maintain his current dominance was difficult. After all, a single person could only do so much. All he could do was make Askickers United powerful. Askickers United had gathered so many elites. Nie Yan planned to use his 10 years of gaming experience to guide them. Within the next year and a half, he wanted to transform the guild into a galaxy of shining stars. Nie Yan needed to go from being a mere skilled player to a true guild leader who would guide all those who looked up to him. After settling the matters on the battle, Nie Yan returned to the Crypt stronghold. It was bustling with people. Thanks to the recent gold and guild contribution rewards, everyone was outfitting themselves with new gear, either exchanged from the treasury or purchased on the marketplace. The players who had fallen 5 levels were forming teams and setting off for various leveling spots. Hey, little Sue, how about we run the Soulgated Burial Ground together? Sure. We're still missing a priest. Know anyone in the guild that would be interested? More people than usual were looking to grind or run dungeons together today. Many had dropped levels and were impatient to get them back. Boss. You're back, boss. After spotting Nie Yan, the players ran up to greet him one after another. Their faces were filled with reverence and excitement. This was the joy of victory. Nie Yan entered the guild headquarters. All the elites of Asskickers United had gathered here. They were having a lively discussion about the events of the recent battle. Seeing him walk in, they dropped what they were doing and walked up to greet him. Boss, we actually won. Undying Scoundrel happily exclaimed. It was a hard-fought victory. Almost all the elites in the guild had ended up dying, with the mages being a bit better off, since they were summoning the Crypt Lord and didn't actually participate in the battle directly. Everyone was savoring their victory. This was like the rainbow after a storm. Their hard work finally bore fruit. Asskickers United had weathered through wind and rain and come out the other side still standing strong, defeating all their rivals and furthermore uniting Kalor. This was an indescribable feeling. Yeah, we won. Nie Yan faintly smiled. He could understand everyone's mood. You all should focus on raising your levels now. From this day forward, Kalor belongs to us. We're the rulers of everything in this territory. All of our enemies have been swept away. Those who remain obstinate will be killed until they're convinced. Those who don't will be treated justly without oppression. As the de facto top guild in Kalor, Asskickers United had to establish their authority and stamp out all opposition. Hearing Nie Yan's words, everyone broke out in cheer. After struggling for so long, they had finally obtained Kalor. This was definitely worth celebrating. It would be smooth sailing from here on out. All of Asskickers United was celebrating, especially the guild chat. Many people could hardly contain themselves. With Kalor unified, they would naturally rise along with the guild. Nie Yan took advantage of this moment to raise everyone's benefits. This was only a matter of course since the guild's position in Kalor was secure. With this, the players below would feel appreciated and grateful. Afterwards, Nie Yan arranged for Blade Light to lead an army of players in clearing out and capturing the remaining strongholds, which would generate considerable profits for the guild. Furthermore, he still had to help the War God tribe capture more strongholds so that the Nie family financial group could continue expanding. Nie Yan handed over the Flamespitter crossbow blueprint to the engineers in Asskickers United and ordered them to quickly start manufacturing. These crossbows were essential for siege defense. After setting them up, they could greatly increase the defenses of a stronghold, which would give pause to enemies like Alliance of Mages and Divine Protectors who might otherwise try to attack again. After this brief period of celebration, everyone in Asskickers United immediately got to work. They understood that this wasn't the time to be relaxing. There was no telling when Alliance of Mages and Divine Protectors would attack again. They had to quickly level up, lest they suffer defeat because they were too weak. Seeing everything running smoothly, Nie Yan felt reassured. In the near future, he could bring the elites of Asskickers United leveling with him. Then, every now and then, he would make trips back to the underworld to raise funds. Besides this, he still needed to find the last fragment of Sulgate's shadow, then he would have his first piece of legendary equipment. Sulgate's shadow boots. After all three fragments were put together, Sulgate's shadow would have extremely impressive stats. It could be considered a relatively powerful piece of legendary equipment. During this time, Nie Yan spent a long time recalling the locations of legendary item fragments, sub-legendary, and legendary grade equipment and writing them all down on a piece of paper, which he handed to a select few elites. If they could find a piece or two, the quality of their equipment would be greatly increased. He also wrote down some of the shadow dancer techniques he had previously learned from the Glimpse of Darkness and distributed a few copies to some trustworthy thieves in the guild. As they grew stronger and stronger, he hoped to give them a better chance of becoming shadow dancers in the future. After settling these matters, Nie Yan could finally relax, whereupon he immediately felt something was a bit off. He hadn't seen Xie Yao this whole time. Checking his friends list, he noticed Yao Yao's name was grayed out. She had already logged off. It was around 2 a.m. right now. It was rather odd for her to be offline at this time. Nie Yan had a momentary premonition of doom, but quickly shook it off and laughed at himself. Xie Yao probably just had something come up, so she went offline. Nie Yan really wanted to share in his present happiness with Xie Yao. Thanks to his efforts, the shadows of his previous life had gradually faded away. Victorious Return and Bloodlust blades had already become relics of the past. He had also weakened the influence of the Century Financial Group inside Conviction. Although the future was still uncertain, he believed everything would be okay as long as he stayed true to himself. That overhanging cloud was gone, so all that awaited him was a bright future. His future with Xie Yao would also be filled with joy. Just as Nie Yan's head was in the clouds, he received a message from Xie Yao. Nie Yan, there's strangers in my villa, and they've somehow disabled the security system. I'm scared. This was a text Xie Yao had sent from her cell phone in real life. Xie Yao's parents had been busy, so they hadn't been home for a while. Xie Yao was currently home alone. Nie Yan's heart immediately became racked with worry. He quickly contacted Guo Wai. Something came up. I'll be logging off first. There's still a lot of matters that need attending to do. I just received a report about the war. Guo Wai wanted to inform Nie Yan that the Tuoba family had organized their 5 guilds and were preparing to launch a counterattack after the War God tribe intruded on their interests. I don't care. It can wait until I get back. Even if the enemy comes storming into the crypt stronghold. Nie Yan flared. He hung up before Guo Wai could finish speaking. Nie Yan got out of his game capsule. He put on some clothes, gathered a few things, then fetched his car in the garage and sped off towards Xie Yao's villa. Cloudwater, this villa district, had the best security in all of Huahai. Their security systems were linked up with satellites. It was impossible for dangerous individuals to avoid the detection of these satellites without the help of some very advanced and specialized equipment. Unless the other side was invisible to satellite detection, Cloudwater's management would be immediately notified as soon as the security systems were compromised, and the entire district would be placed on lockdown. This was a confrontation of technology. The satellites watching over Cloudwater were some of the most advanced. For the other side to avoid detection meant they had top-of-the-line military-grade technology. However, with some background, it was still possible to get those types of military-grade equipment. If something were to happen to Xie Yao, Nie Yan's chest felt tight. He immediately pushed this thought to the back of his mind. He would never allow such a thing to happen. His car sped along the streets of Cloudwater. After turning a corner, he parked about 60 meters away from Xie Yao's villa. Any closer and he might end up alerting the enemy. Getting out of his car, Nie Yan stayed low and stuck close to the shadows. This a habit that was ingrained into his very being from playing a thief for so long. He would naturally gravitate towards cover. Only now did Nie Yan somewhat understand why the Federation was pushing Conviction. It could greatly raise the fighting ability of every player, like military training for the entire world. Ever since he started playing the game, he noticed a drastic improvement to his body in every aspect. Looking at the security equipment installed in the area, it all appeared to be still working. However, they were probably hacked. He leapt over the wall of Xie Yao's villa and entered the garden. He hid within the bushes and made his way towards her house. Before coming here, he had forgotten to bring dark clothes. Xie Yao's villa was covered in a shroud of darkness. It was quiet to an eerie degree. As Nie Yan approached Xie Yao's house, he noticed two shadowy figures arguing in the courtyard outside her front door. He was a bit flabbergasted. These were the strangers Xie Yao mentioned. These two had likely come for Xie Yao. But why did it seem like they were only seconds away from coming to blows? Were they actually not on the same side? Nie Yan put on his night vision goggles, one of the items he had casually brought out of his house. He didn't expect them to actually come in handy. A flash of red light on top of a roof a kilometer away immediately caught Nie Yan's eye. My god, a sniper rifle. The person holding the sniper rifle was currently aiming at one of the people standing in the courtyard. Just what the hell was happening? Was one of them actually here to save Xie Yao? Nie Yan's heart was filled with endless anxiety. The fact that these people could enter Xie Yao's villa meant they came prepared. They were even using a dangerous weapon like a sniper rifle. He didn't know what their object was. Were they here for Xie Yao? What did they plan to do with the sniper rifle? Nie Yan's eyes flashed with killing intent. Were they going to assassinate Xie Yao? He would never allow that. Xie Yao was important to the Dragonsaur and Glory financial groups. The actions of these people today were definitely related somehow. Nie Yan slowly approached them, his movements stealthy and nimble. He had no idea what Xie Yao was doing right now. He switched his phone to silent mode and sent her a text. Xie Yao, where are you right now? It didn't take long for Xie Yao to reply. I'm still hiding in the bathroom. I'm scared to go out. Her bathroom was bulletproof and had a voice control system. Nie Yan could sense Xie Yao's fear and restlessness. Stay in there. Don't come out. I'll be there in a moment. The villas in Cloudwater were constructed out of the highest quality materials. Every brick and panel of glass was designed to withstand the strongest impacts. Furthermore, the bathroom doors were controlled by user voice command, so other people couldn't enter without permission. It was precisely due to these added safety measures that Xie Yao chose to hide here. Be careful, Nie Yan. My family's security will be arriving in 3 minutes. Nie Yan stayed low and crept closer to the two people until he was within earshot. Bayonet, you do understand the consequences of your actions, right? One of the figures asked with a sinister laugh. Wisp, there's not many things we mercenaries won't do for money, but we have a principle of not harming women, children, or the elderly. Before we came here, you never clearly explained the situation to me. This doesn't count as me breaking the agreement. Bayonet firmly rebuked. If it wasn't for your satellite bypassing technology, I would have never called a stubborn bastard like you over here. Listen here. You're a mercenary. I'm a hitman. The client pays us the money, and we carry out the job. To hell with your morals. Don't forget. Those disabled buddies of yours are still waiting for you to bring back some money so they can provide for their families, Wisp sneered. Bayonet sank into silence for a moment. My buddies were also mercenaries once. They'll understand my choice. Even if they do you think you'll make it back to see them again? Are you threatening me, Wisp? Oh, no, not me. Since the client has tasked us with this job, they've naturally made preparations for you backing out. You bastard. Who's the client? Bayonet growled. Don't be silly. You know we hitmen don't reveal any information about our clients. It's one of our principles, after all. Listening to their conversation, Nie Yan roughly understood the gist of the situation. These two people had come here to either kidnap or kill Xie Yao. Wisp was the one who had accepted the mission and recruited Bayonet for his technology that could bypass the satellites monitoring Cloudwater. But when they got here, they suddenly broke out into an argument. Bayonet held firm to his principle of not harming women, children or the elderly, and Xie Yao was just a 18-year-old girl. So, he wanted out. Nie Yan somewhat admired Bayonet for sticking to his code even in this sort of situation. At this moment, a red dot hovered over Bayonet's chest. I'm sure you should know by now. You don't get to choose. Wisp faintly smiled, derision filling his eyes. Bayonet glanced over at a rooftop in the distance. With the pull of the trigger, he wouldn't live to see the next moment. Let's go. Where's the girl at? Bayonet said after a moment of silence. Good, so long as you know your place. Don't try to pull anything funny either. If I detect the slightest hint of betrayal, you and your buddies will be accompanying each other straight to hell. Bayonet's eyes flashed with a cold light. I don't care who the client is. Pass this message on to them. As long as I live, they best not touch my friends. Otherwise, I'll chase them down to the end of the universe. Wisp simply chuckled, not saying anything else. He had worked together with Bayonet a few times before. He was well aware Bayonet was capable enough to carry through with his words. Even then, so what? He was only in charge of the mission. Once it was over, and he received the rest of his commission, he was free to do whatever he wanted. As for someone else's life or death, he couldn't care less. The two approached Xie Yao's house. Nie Yan didn't know whether their objective was to kidnap or assassinate her. But once they got into the house, her life would be in danger. Although her bathroom was bulletproof, considering the enemy was capable of bypassing some of the most advanced satellite technology in the world, the voice control system locking them out would offer little to no protection. At this moment, 8 silhouettes appeared outside the entrance of Xie Yao's villa. They were her family's security team. Wisp, we have small fries coming your way, a voice rang through Wisp's earpiece. Kill them. Wisp laughed as his eyes flashed with a cold glint. A red beam of light swept through the air. With a muffled bang, a bullet pierced through the heart of one of the bodyguards. He let out a groan before collapsing to the ground. A brief, chaotic flurry ensued as the security guards dove for cover. They have a sniper. Find them, quickly. From their reactions, it appeared these bodyguards had also gone through special training. You have 3 minutes to secure the target and get out. I won't be responsible for anything that happens after. The sniper informed. Understood. 3 minutes will do, Wisp replied. With that, Bayonet and Wisp broke into Xie Yao's home. Nie Yan checked the nearest window and found it already open. He clambered in and used his familiarity with the house to arrive at her bedroom before the intruders. Xie Yao's bathroom door remained tightly sealed. Nie Yan looked around before hiding near the bedside. Seeing a silhouette enter sight of her room's security cameras, Xie Yao started panicking. Although she knew taekwondo and a bit of mixed martial arts, she held no illusion about being a match for professional hitmen. Don't worry, it's me, Nie Yan whispered. Xie Yao immediately calmed down. Nie Yan's voice gave her a sense of security. Stay hidden, and don't make any noise. I'll protect you. Nie Yan knew he was risking his life by doing this. But he couldn't allow harm to befall Xie Yao. Nie Yan didn't know how skilled the other side was. But from what he gathered from their conversation, one being a professional hitman and the other a professional mercenary, they couldn't be weak. Best case scenario, he estimated he could take out one of them in an ambush. Two at the same time would be troublesome. But if they broke into Xie Yao's bathroom, Nie Yan would have no choice but to fight. Nie Yan could hear two people quickly making their way over from the corridor. Though their footsteps were light, he could still detect them through the vibrations in the floorboards. Nie Yan stayed low to the ground, his body half hidden under the bed. With a flick of his wrist, he pulled out a sharp ornate dagger. He had grabbed it while leaving the house. It was normally left up on display in his room. The blade was only about finger length and looked completely harmless. But if someone stabbed with enough strength, it could still deal a fatal blow. Xie Yao's door opened. Nie Yan immediately tensed up and held his breath. Bayonet knitted his brows upon entering the room. After surviving through some of the most dangerous environments over the years, he had an acute sense of awareness far above that of an average person. He detected the presence of two people, one a girl and the other a man. Bayonet briefly paused but didn't say anything. Wisp entered the room behind Bayonet. He was an expert at assassination, but his senses for detecting danger weren't as developed as Bayonet's. Where's the little miss? Wisp asked. He looked around for a moment before letting out a sinister chuckle as he found the bathroom door. Wisp stayed one step behind, letting Bayonet enter first. Bayonet took out a thin metal chip, which flew up and attached itself to the frosted glass door of the bathroom. Bang! The chip exploded and instantly shattered the glass door into tiny shards which fell to the ground like clinking rain. Xie Yao's scream could be heard from inside the door. Xie Yao pretended to act panicked and flustered to attract Wisp's attention. Even though she was anxious, she tried her best to remain calm since Nie Yan was in the room with her. The martial arts classes and occasional bouts had honed her mental strength. Bayonet furrowed his eyebrows. The client wants her alive. Wisp snickered. Relax. She won't die. He ogled the flustered girl inside the bathroom with a wicked smile. Xie Yao's hair was messy but her beauty was still clear to see. She's so pretty. Even more than what the picture showed. Bayonet, do you want to sample a taste with me? Wisp's lips bent into an evil perverted grin. We're short on time. Bayonet's face was full of disgust and loathing. Just as Wisp was about to enter the room, Nie Yan sprang up from his hiding spot and lunged at the hitman with his dagger. Seeing Wisp approach Xie Yao, Nie Yan couldn't hold back any longer. If she got taken, he would be powerless to do anything. It was probably due to how much Nie Yan played as a thief. His stealthing technique seemed ingrained into him. Wisp hadn't noticed him until the moment he took action. Die. Nie Yan pounced toward Wisp with unwavering ferocity and decisiveness. Just as the dagger was about to plunge into Wisp's back, he suddenly whipped around and parried the attack with his hand. Nie Yan's dagger missed, but he still managed to land a heavy blow on Wisp's shoulder joint with his left elbow. With a heavy thud, Wisp's shoulder was dislocated, his arm weakly slumping to the ground as he grimaced in pain. What a ruthless attack. Nie Yan's emergence was too sudden. Wisp's attention had been completely focused on Xie Yao. He never expected there to be someone else in the room. It was incredibly difficult to defend when caught by surprise. Nie Yan's attacks were quite fierce, reaching a level seen in fighting tournaments. His actions were sharp and decisive, leaving no room for error. He wasn't the least bit inferior to professional hitmen, and that was because he was one in his past life, having learned all sorts of assassination techniques. How else could he have succeeded in killing Cao Shu? With the element of surprise on his side, Nie Yan would have to be completely inept to allow his opponent to get away unscathed. Wisp received another blow to his chest. As though he had been struck by a sledgehammer, it felt like his ribs were on the verge of shattering. However, he still maintained the clarity to retaliate. His right elbow went slashing towards Nie Yan. Nie Yan sidestepped instantly, but his shirt was still ripped in two. The blades on the hitman's elbow glinted with malice. Nie Yan instantly gauged the opponent's strength during their brief exchange. Although Wisp was quite strong, he couldn't be ranked among the top in the world. Ever since reincarnating, Nie Yan hadn't stopped training for even a day. He had long since surpassed his past self in terms of strength. Even so, killing Wisp wouldn't be simple. After dodging the elbow slash, Nie Yan planted his fist into Wisp's right shoulder, shattering bones and incapacitating him. He then stabbed toward Wisp's forehead with his dagger. At this moment, Bayonet stepped forward and pressed the muzzle of his gun against the side of Nie Yan's head. Nie Yan's mind trembled. What fast movements. He had no time to react at all. This fellow was definitely a weapons and martial arts expert. Bayonet's strength far exceeded Nie Yan's expectations. The opponent was even a step above him. The two sides were instantly locked in a stalemate. Nie Yan's dagger was pressed against Wisp's forehead while Bayonet's gun was pressed against Nie Yan's temple. Neither side was backing down. The dagger cut into Wisp's forehead, causing blood to flow out. Don't forget I still have a partner. Move your blade away now, or else he'll blow your brains out. Wisp threatened with a sharp sinister laugh. Nie Yan chuckled. This guy was truly ballsy. He pulled away the device from Wisp's ear and crushed it into pieces. Bayonet didn't make a move, allowing Nie Yan to destroy the earpiece. His eyes flashed with a peculiar light. No one could tell what he was thinking right now. From listening in on their previous conversation, Nie Yan knew Wisp was far from a reliable partner. He glanced at Bayonet. Put your gun away. I'll let you go. Aside from you, me, and Xie Yao, no one else will know what happened here today. Let him go. You have a gun pointed at your head. You're in no position to make any demands. Wisp roared in anger. Don't play me for an idiot. I bet the one who wants you dead more than anyone else right now is your partner. Nie Yan sneered. Listening to Nie Yan's words, Wisp trembled. He turned to Bayonet in disbelief. Would his partner really betray him? At this moment, Nie Yan was also extremely tense. Having a gun pointed at your head was far from a relaxing situation. Bayonet glanced at Nie Yan with an icy gaze. I don't like people like you who are too smart for their own good. He turned to Wisp and continued, but what I hate even more is when someone manipulates me by threatening my friends. I'll kill any bastard who tries that. Wisp's face turned ashen. A battle-hardened mercenary like Bayonet had danced with life and death countless times. His way of thinking couldn't be judged with common sense. These words basically sealed his fate. Bayonet, you can't do this. There's nothing I can't do in this world. Bayonet indifferently replied. Wisp was simply a stranger whose life meant nothing to him. I promise I won't reveal anything that happened here today. Not only that, but if you find yourself out of options one day, you can come look for me, Nie Yan said. Nie Yan roughly understood Bayonet's way of thinking. Mercenary or hitman, anyone with a bit of self-respect wouldn't allow themselves to be manipulated so easily. If he were in Bayonet's shoes, he would almost certainly kill Wisp first, then deal with everything else after. Nie Yan guessed right. Bayonet was thinking about killing Wisp. Bayonet withdrew his gun. Bayonet, don't think this is over. The client definitely won't let you off. Wisp exploded in anger. Cut the crap. I'll slaughter the entire family of anyone that dares to touch my friends. Bayonet sneered. His entire body emanated with icy cold killing intent. Don't forget, he was a mercenary. How could he cower in fear every time he encountered trouble? He had survived through hails of bullets and dithered on the edge of death countless times. What did he have to fear? His brothers had also climbed out of a mountain of corpses and ocean of blood. Would they fear this kind of danger? Seeing Bayonet withdraw his gun, Nie Yan breathed a sigh of relief. He turned to Wisp, his eyes flashing with murderous intent. I know you're not willing to go down like this, but you can vent out all your grievances to Yama. Anyone that dares to touch my woman will meet a tragic end. At this moment, Nie Yan plunged his dagger inward as blood gushed out from Wisp's forehead like a fountain. The glabella was the one of the vital points of a human. If it was pierced, the brain would instantly stop, leaving no chance for survival. Blood splattered the floorboards as Wisp collapsed. This was Xie Yao's first time seeing such a bloody scene. It was completely different from plain conviction. The odor of blood permeated the air. She noticed the Nie Yan she was familiar with had transformed into another person. He took a life so easily. Xie Yao stared at Nie Yan, who looked familiar yet unfamiliar at the same time. He resembled himself inside the game, Mad Rogue Nirvana Flame, the death god that slaughtered countless lives on the battlefield. Even so, Xie Yao was deeply moved that Nie Yan had risked his life to save her. A complicated feeling arose in her heart, one she couldn't explain properly. Even up until his death, Wisp probably didn't understand why Bayonet would allow Nie Yan to kill him. Nie Yan could feel that he and Bayonet were the same type of person. Their nature wasn't something people like Wisp were capable of understanding. How do you plan to get out of here? Nie Yan turned to Bayonet, sizing him up. Bayonet looked around 28 years old. He wore a black bodysuit. His face was painted in dark camouflage with a scary-looking scar on his forehead. A pair of sharp eyes stared back at Nie Yan. His pupils resembled a hawk's. It seemed like they could see through a person's heart. Nie Yan couldn't tell what Bayonet was thinking. This fellow was shrouded in mystery. Nie Yan understood he and Xie Yao weren't in the clear just yet. If Bayonet were a bloodthirsty individual, he might try to get rid of all evidence. But based on Bayonet's earlier argument with Wisp, when he said he wouldn't target women, children, or the elderly, Nie Yan could confirm that Bayonet wouldn't kill without good reason. I hope the events that happened here today remain a secret between the three of us. If a fourth finds out, I'm sure you know what the consequences will be, Bayonet said in a cold voice, his expression still unchanging. If you decide to quit the mercenary business one day, you can come look for me in the Nie family financial group, Nie Yan offered. A person like Bayonet would be a valuable subordinate to have, especially for doing messy work. If he could recruit Bayonet, he would have another safeguard by his side. The skills of a murderer could also be used to protect. After being on the battlefield for so many years, Bayonet would have no issue dealing with a few hitmen. Furthermore, he was proficient at bypassing satellite technology. The main point was that he could be helpful in a great many situations. Any financial group would probably spare no expense to hire a mercenary of Bayonet's caliber. You're willing to hire a killer like me. I have at least 50 homicide cases on my head. Bayonet lightly chuckled. As long as you're willing to join, I'm willing to accept you, Nie Yan said straightforwardly. Bayonet was the arrogant type who didn't easily submit. If he showed any sign of fear, he would end up being looked down on. As for Bayonet's homicide cases, Nie Yan planned to have his people investigate to gain a better understanding of the situation. Nie Yan knew he would one day go up against Cao Shu. When both sides clashed, they would definitely use any means by fair or foul to eliminate the other. At that time, an expert like Bayonet would be invaluable. Based on Nie Yan's experience from his past life, Bayonet was definitely a world-class expert. He had originally believed Bayonet and Wisp were roughly equal, but after the previous exchange, he could tell they weren't even on the same level. Some people would deliberately hide their true ability, only revealing it at crucial moments. Bayonet was one of those people. Of the 8 bodyguards outside, 3 snuck away to find the sniper. The enemy they were after was very skilled. He had already gunned down 3 of their comrades in quick succession. The remaining 2 wanted to get to the villa, but the sniper was preventing them from approaching any closer. It became incredibly difficult for them to advance. They were all military veterans. Their strength and combat awareness couldn't be underestimated, but they were far from being comparable to this sniper. When the 3 bodyguards finally found the hiding spot of the sniper, they discovered the person had long fled. After Wisp died, Bayonet jumped out of the window. Before long, his silhouette disappeared into the darkness, vanishing without a trace. Watching Bayonet disappear, Nie Yan sank into silence. He couldn't help but wonder if Bayonet would come looking for him. Nie Yan, why do you want to recruit such a dangerous person? Xie Yao asked with a bit of apprehension. She carefully moved around Wisp's corpse. I don't know. I just feel like he's trustworthy, Nie Yan replied, not knowing how to explain. Xie Yao's eyes flashed with a trace of doubt. Although she didn't really understand, she chose not to ask any further. A while later, the monitoring satellites returned to normal. Cloudwater quickly dispatched a large security force over to Xie Yao's villa. Nie Yan had Xie Yao call her parents to let them know she was safe and sound. He then quietly brought her to his car, away from everyone's sight, before disappearing into the curtain of night. The sniper was still at large. That fellow was extremely dangerous. Nie Yan knew how hitmen operated. They wouldn't give up so easily after failing to kill their target. The larger the security force that arrived in Cloudwater and the more chaotic things became, the greater the danger Xie Yao was in. He sped along the streets in his Thrawn and finally returned to his own family villa. The people targeting Xie Yao would probably never guess that she was still in Cloudwater. Sometimes the most dangerous places were the safest. After arriving at Nie Yan's home, Xie Yao called her parents once more and told them everything that happened. The attempt on her life had momentarily thrown both the Dragonsaur and Glory financial groups into turmoil. They immediately started investigating the matter. When they found out who dared to lay a hand on their precious princess, they would unleash their combined fury onto the culprit. My father wants to speak with you. All right. Nie Yan took the phone from Xie Yao. He understood Xie Jun probably wanted to ask him to do something. Uncle, what would you like me to do? I leave Xie Yao in your hands. Please keep her safe. It isn't suitable for her to appear in public right now. Having her stay at your place is probably the safest option. After we finish handling this matter, we'll come pick her up. We'll be troubling you in the meantime, Xie Jun said solemnly. Nie Yan could tell from his tone that this matter definitely wasn't small, or else they wouldn't be leaving her with him. Don't worry, uncle. I'll definitely keep your daughter safe, Nie Yan declared. Nie Yan and Xie Jun chatted for a while longer. He learned from their conversation that they had gotten into a business dispute with the Century Financial Group. Furthermore, internal fighting had broken out in the Dragonsaur Financial Group due to Lu Rui's father. Nie Yan suddenly recalled such an incident occurring in his past life. Although he wasn't aware of Xie Yao's background back then, it was pretty big news. The Dragon Soar and Glory financial groups had fallen into a crisis when a huge argument broke out between Lu Rui's father and Xie Yao's grandfather during a shareholder meeting. This matter wouldn't be resolved until several years down the line. Nie Yan recalled Xie Yao and Lu Rui's engagement was announced not long after. Back then, he was overwhelmed with despair and sunk even further into depravity. This was also the period in his life where he carried out his most outrageous antics. Did Xie Yao's engagement with Lu Rui happen to be related to this matter? Uncle, if you need me to do anything, just say the word. I'll definitely do my best to carry it out. Nie Yan was determined to make sure what happened in his past life wouldn't be repeated. Xie Jun chuckled. Do these words represent you or your Nie family? My words represent the Nie family. Nie Yan replied. He understood Xie Jun was trying to tell him that there wasn't much he could do by himself. Xie Jun was taken aback. Nie Yan was only 18 years old. Did Father Nie really entrust authority over the whole Nie family business to his son? Xie Jun didn't take Nie Yan's words to heart. Nevertheless, the earnestness left a deep impression on him. He felt at ease entrusting his daughter to this boy. Remember my words back at the banquet. Both of you are adults now. I'm fine with leaving the two of you alone together. Just make sure to take responsibility. Nie Yan and Xie Yao felt a bit embarrassed since they knew what Xie Jun was alluding to. Xie Yao in particular blushed red. Understood, uncle. Nie Yan laughed. Xie Yao took the phone back from Nie Yan and chatted with her father for a while longer before hanging up. Once Xie Yao realized she would be living in Nie Yan's home for the next few days, she couldn't help but turn frantic. Looking at Nie Yan, her cheeks burned hot. Nie Yan, your parents aren't home yet. No, I'm not sure when they will be. Sometimes they spend several days at the company, Nie Yan replied. His home life wasn't all that different from Xie Yao's. Both their parents were busy day and night with work. Xie Yao nodded. It would be best if Nie Yan's parents didn't come home while she was there, or else things would inevitably become even more awkward and embarrassing. Nie Yan showed Xie Yao around his home and prepared her a room next to his own. I don't have a spare game capsule. I'll have someone deliver a decent game helmet you can use for the time being. For your safety, I think it's best if you don't leave the house for the next few days. If you need anything, don't hesitate to ask. All right. Xie Yao nodded. She was a lot more reserved in this unfamiliar environment. This was Nie Yan's first time seeing this side of Xie Yao. It made him want to protect her even more. We'll have to figure out your clothing situation too. Tell me your sizes. I'll have my aunt deliver some over. Nie Yan gazed at Xie Yao's body. She was slim and stood at around 167 centimeters. She was pretty tall for a girl. Xie Yao started telling Nie Yan her clothing sizes. When it got to her bra size, she hesitated. It was too embarrassing. Nie Yan glanced at Xie Yao's chest, recalling the previous incident in her bed. You're probably a 36D, right? He shamelessly chuckled. Her assets were quite well developed. Xie Yao was speechless. Nie Yan's guess was almost spot on. She couldn't help but flush red with embarrassment. Seeing Xie Yao's flustered appearance, Nie Yan laughed. He didn't tease her any further, instead calling Ah Chen's wife and asking her to help him buy some underwear and other daily articles. By the time Nie Yan finished arranging everything, it was almost dawn. He called up Guo Wai. How's the guild doing? You finally called. Guo Wai breathed a sigh of relief. Nie Yan's sudden departure had left Ass-Kickers United in a mess. There were many matters Guo Wai didn't dare to decide on without approval. Based on the words Nie Yan had spoken before hanging up, Guo Wai understood the matter was urgent. So, he didn't dare to call despite being worried something bad had happened. Nie Yan understood Guo Wai's feelings. The situation came too suddenly, so he couldn't help but leave on short notice. Thankfully, nothing happened to Xie Yao, or else he would have been left with a lifelong regret. Things at the guild have calmed down. There's still a few matters that require your attention. Besides this, I also need to talk to you about the War God tribe. The 5 guilds under the Tuoba family are planning to make their move. The Tuoba family's influence in Nisode is still strong. I'm worried the War God tribe will be defeated. But we can't afford to get into another war. We suffered disastrous losses during the last one. It'll take weeks for our players to return to their previous levels and months to catch back up to the rest of the pack. I'm not sure we can survive another major war, Guo Wai said. Ass-Kickers United couldn't take any more losses. Nie Yan thought for a moment. Radiant Sacred Flame, Sapphire Shrine, and Holy Empire also took heavy losses. How about we have Battle-Crazed Alliance go? Not possible. Battle-Crazed Alliance is currently at war with several rival guilds. They still haven't united Hilderlock yet. They don't have any troops to spare. Guo Wai shook his head. He had long since thought this matter through. The situation over at Hilderlock was far from smooth. The War God tribe won't fall so easily. Let's wait and see how the war develops, Nie Yan said. This was the only thing they could do for now. He couldn't sacrifice the well-being of Ass-Kickers United for the War God tribe. The Tuoba family definitely planned this in advance. That's why they waited with their attack until our war with Bloodlust Blades, Alliance of Mages, and Divine Protectors was over. We can't easily provide support to the War God tribe, Guo Wai said in a concerned tone. Nie Yan recalled the events of his past life. Back then, the War God tribe hadn't grown this quickly. They were still a small guild unworthy of the Tuoba family's interest. It was only later on when the Tuoba family's influence waned due to internal fighting that they rose to power and united Nisode. Meanwhile in the present, the War God tribe had prematurely attracted the attention of the Tuoba family. A starving camel was still larger than a horse. If they went to war with the War God tribe, it was hard to say which side would come out on top. The War God tribe probably wouldn't have any problem holding onto their strongholds. It appeared their only option was to endure for the time being. Nie Yan handed over a list to Guo Wai with the names of 2,000 Ass-Kickers United elites who hadn't dropped levels in the battle at the crypt strongholds, and ordered him to dispatch as many as possible to aid the War God tribe in their crisis. As for himself, he definitely couldn't go to Nisode. There were already too many important things he had to attend to. When evening came, Nie Yan and Xie Yao logged back into conviction. The first thing Nie Yan wanted to do was to upgrade the special items in his possession with the radiant gems. After talking to Guo Wai about it, he learned Sun was in the middle of a quest given by Master Jewelcrafter Paget. When the quest was completed, he could enjoy preferential treatment on gem upgrades. Nie Yan pondered for a moment. It was probably best to wait. There was a significant difference between the workmanship of a master and advanced jewelcrafter. He wanted to get the most out of those 5 radiant gems. After all, special items like the crawler ring and silk spinner ring were his treasured darlings. The better their properties, the more use he could get out of them. With his equipment more complete than before, Nie Yan planned to do a few things to raise the guild's overall strength. The first thing that came to mind was the armored catapults. Armored catapults had frightening destructive power which was crucial in guild wars. Generally when players obtained a rank 1 armored catapult blueprint, the guild's engineers would have to constantly improve it to raise it to higher ranks, similar to goblin magic cannons. Armored catapults could only be used on flat plains. Their wooden wheels prevented them from traversing rugged mountainous terrain, which put some limitations on them. Furthermore, since they were mechanical units, the monsters they killed wouldn't give loot or experience, making them unsuitable for grinding purposes. Even so, they were unrivaled existences on the battlefield. They would only start slowly becoming obsolete at level 100, when master classes were unlocked and equipment defense increased greatly. Nie Yan suddenly recalled the location of an armored catapult blueprint. Not to mention this blueprint was for one even better than those brought out by Bloodlust Blades during the war, the rarely seen armored ice catapult. Ordinary armored catapults only launched explosive shells that dealt fire damage. However, armored ice catapults launched ice shells that froze all targets in the impact radius. When dealing with large creatures such as the Crypt Lord, armored ice catapults were far more effective. These armored catapults would be slaughter machines on the battlefields prior to level 100. Especially with how the Tuoba family was gearing up for war, if the war god tribe could get their hands on even a few of these catapults, they would achieve victory. Although Nie Yan always knew about the armored ice catapult blueprint, he didn't dare to go retrieve it before since his level and equipment were too weak. Now, he barely met the requirements, so he could give it a shot. If worse came to worst, he could just flee with an unknown transfer scroll. Nie Yan teleported to Amore town and bought 2 intermediate web scrolls, 3 advanced twisting vines scrolls, and 5 intermediate aggro dispel scrolls. These would probably come in handy. He also picked up a few advanced health potions and ice resistance potions from the Starry Night potion shop in preparation for his journey. Afterwards, Nie Yan informed Guo Wai and the others of his departure. Even if he was off searching for the armored ice catapult blueprint, he could still direct guild-related matters remotely. Nie Yan departed Kalor Gates and summoned his Faulkner warhorse before setting off for the distant mountain ranges in the north. Some ordinary players saw Nie Yan riding on his Faulkner warhorse. Their view of Nie Yan and Asskickers United had changed. Before, they only saw him as Kalor's most powerful guild leader. But now he was the ruler of the city. If these ordinary players wanted to grow in Kalor, they'd have to do so under Nie Yan's watch. No longer would there be anyone talking about killing him for his equipment. Such an act was no different from courting death. All he had to do was call some people, and the player in question would be slaughtered back to level 0. Although Nie Yan had no desire to actually do this, the possibility alone was a huge deterrence. Nie Yan rode through the grass plains and entered a level 90 map. The area up ahead was covered in a sea of white tents. At the center was a 2-story oval-shaped building that stood 3 meters tall. Its golden roof sparkled brilliantly under the sunlight. This was the encampment of the Blood Shadow Legion. Within the Karen Prairies lived a group of heathens that abandoned their faith in the light and became apostles of the darkness. They roamed around attacking unwary travelers and were considered evil existences. Their leader was the Blood Shadow Great Mage, a level 90 lord who was capable of summoning Blood Shadow bone dragons. There were also 7 armored ice catapults right next to the central building of the Blood Shadow Legion encampment. If an expedition team came here, they'd be decimated by the catapults. The Holy Shrine would frequently dispatch paladins to assault the Blood Shadow Legion, even succeeding in annihilating them multiple times. However, they would always rise back up from the ashes. There was a specific quest within the Holy Shrine that paladins could accept, and that was precisely to kill members of the Blood Shadow Legion. Every kill would reward a certain amount of honor. Nie Yan wasn't a paladin, so he naturally couldn't accept this quest. However, if he could obtain the evil gemstone from the Blood Shadow Great Mage, the Holy Shrine would recognize his achievement and reward him. It was rumored the reward was holy acclamation. After receiving it, if he was able to advance further into a shadow dancer, he could become an even more powerful existence, the Luminous Dancer. Luminous dancers were different from ordinary shadow dancers in that they were capable of giving themselves blessings and using powerful holy spells. In the previous timeline, a player had completed this quest and became the sole luminous dancer out of all shadow dancers. His name was Smiling Thief. From what Nie Yan recalled, this player wouldn't join the game until some time from now. Nie Yan's emergence had distorted history. In the previous timeline, even the highest level players were only level 30 to 40 at this point in time. But right now, level 50 to 60 players could be found everywhere. This was the effect of the buried history expansion. He had brought out a huge butterfly effect. Many people became strong while many others were withdrew from the stage of elites. He had changed the fate of many players and even the power balance of the entire Viridian Empire. In this new course of history, he didn't know when Smiling Thief would appear. If Nie Yan obtained the evil gemstone, he'd also change the fate of Smiling Thief who was originally meant to become a luminous dancer. Nie Yan cautiously approached the tents. Several Blood Shadow Legion guards were patrolling the area more than 10 meters away from him. They were wearing brightly colored crimson armor and wielded dark red great swords. Their entire bodies emitted a bloody aura. They were berserk slaughterers. Nie Yan inspected one of the Blood Shadow Legion guards with transcendent insight. Blood Shadow Warrior, level 90. Health, 32,000. The attacks of these Blood Shadow Warriors were extremely fierce. When in battle they would buff themselves with Bloodlust, increasing their attack power greatly and adding a lifesteal effect to their attacks. They were incredibly difficult to deal with. But luckily, even though they were humans, their intelligence was subpar at best. They were classified as low intelligence creatures. Only their leader, the Blood Shadow Great Mage was a bit smarter as an intermediate intelligence creature. However, Nie Yan didn't plan to tangle with these Blood Shadow Warriors. His goal was the armored ice catapult blueprint and evil gemstone. This quest was a bit difficult for his current self, but it was still within the scope of his capabilities. Nie Yan looked at the tents. There was a perimeter wall up ahead with magic cannons set up on them. Their dark muzzles were facing outward towards the plains. The defenses here were evidently extremely strong. If an expedition team came here, they'd first have to find a way through these cannons. Nie Yan snuck around the Blood Shadow Warriors and arrived beside the perimeter wall. He leapt upward, scaling over the wall, and jumped down the other side. He hid behind the tents as he slowly made his way toward the central area of the encampment. In an empty space between the tents up ahead were 6 wooden pillars spiked into the ground. They stood about 1 meter tall with small crimson flags stuck at the top. The flags had mysterious red designs drawn on them. That was the most infamous sign of the Blood Shadow Legion, the Blood Shadow Totem. Players could use certain special methods to destroy a Blood Shadow Totem. However, if they accidentally set it off and made it explode instead, they'd be goners. Blood Shadow Totems exploded out with rays of crimson light which would invade anything it came into contact with and inflict a powerful decaying effect. Those affected would see their health and defense plummet. In the previous timeline, Nie Yan had personally experienced the might of these Blood Shadow Totems when he came with 2 level 100+ 100-man teams. Back then, he was nothing more than an ordinary grunt. The outcome was that out of those 200-man teams, only a few dozen survived. The losses were disastrous. It was only at the end when the leader obtained the armored ice catapult blueprint that the losses were somewhat recouped. With 200 players almost completely wiped out, one could imagine just how bitter the battle was. Nie Yan's familiarity with the layout of this encampment came from that battle. He wouldn't have come here alone this time if it wasn't for that. Hearing activity in the distance, Nie Yan hurriedly hid within the shadows at the corner of a tent. A little after, more than 20 Blood Shadow warriors walked by. After scanning around and failing to discover Nie Yan, they slowly walked away. The open space covered an area of roughly 300 by 300 meters. The ground was uneven with rows of white tents on both sides. Several patrol squads would pass by every 2 minutes, with each one containing 30 to 40 Blood Shadow warriors. Nie Yan would have to avoid them if he wanted to get past this place. He would also have to be careful of setting off the Blood Shadow totems. Nie Yan gazed past the tents and saw the silhouettes of multiple Blood Shadow warriors. Some were even gathered around bonfires, seemingly celebrating something. Nie Yan lingered in the vicinity for a moment. Only by passing through here could he reach the center of the Blood Shadow Legion encampment. There was no other way. The 6 Blood Shadow totems was also an obstacle he couldn't get around. Nie Yan would have to get rid of them to get past. Thinking for a bit, Nie Yan played around with the idea of disarming the Blood Shadow totems, which would turn them into one-time use consumables similar to scrolls. But the process was difficult, and any mishap could lead to his death. A disarming guide was posted on the official forums in the previous timeline. Back then, many people were eager to give it a try, but those who actually succeeded numbered less than 5%. The method shown in the guide did actually work. Nie Yan wasn't sure if he could disarm them, but the temptation was too hard to resist. After all, having a few of them in his bag wouldn't hurt, especially for special situations. In any case, he wouldn't know until he gave it a try. He cautiously approached one of the Blood Shadow totems, halting his steps when he was 15 meters away. Any closer and it would explode. Nie Yan took out his cavalry crossbow and loaded up a bolt. He didn't need the pentabolt shot right now, so a single bolt sufficed. He examined the Blood Shadow totem. It was about a meter tall and as thick as his arm. It had wings in the middle with crimson flags sticking out on the side. The main body was covered in peculiar mechanics with a deep thumb-sized hole in the center. Raising his crossbow, Nie Yan took aim at the hole. Hitting a thumb-sized target from more than 15 meters away was a challenge even for him, but it wasn't impossible. Besides, since he was so far away, he'd have plenty of time to duck for cover if he missed and set it off. Nie Yan pulled the trigger. A bolt shot out and went perfectly into the hole, jamming the mechanism inside. Like this, the Blood Shadow totem couldn't explode. Success. Nie Yan picked up the Blood Shadow totem. It didn't explode. He looked it over before checking its properties. Blood Shadow totem, special totem item. Description: after being inserted into the ground, this totem explodes if any creature enters its range, dealing corrosion and shadow damage. Properties: 15,000 damage, 30-meter explosion radius, ineffective against plate armored units, can be disarmed, 15-meter trigger radius. This item is one-time use only and ineffective against members of the Blood Shadow Legion. This Blood Shadow totem was a fairly high-level totem. Since it was acquired in a level 90 map, this of course didn't come as a surprise. The damage was impressive too. Mine-type items generally had high killing power because they could only be triggered when the enemy entered their range. If the Blood Shadow totem was used well, it could become a powerful killing tool, like the Thunderstorm mines during the Crypt Stronghold siege. After disarming the first Blood Shadow totem, Nie Yan moved on to the next one. Like before, he aimed at the totem's hole. The target was very small. His eyesight wasn't good enough to see clearly from this distance, so his vision was somewhat fuzzy. Pulling the trigger, the bolt shot out and struck the totem itself, missing the target by an inch. The atmosphere suddenly turned chaotic. Almost immediately after Nie Yan's bolt hit the Blood Shadow totem, it exploded with crimson rays. Realizing his mistake, Nie Yan quickly pulled back. Just as the crimson rays were about to sweep over him, he activated Gale Step, taking advantage of the 3 seconds of invincibility to avoid the attack. Nie Yan's silhouette transformed into a blur as he dashed away to safety. Failure. There were 6 Blood Shadow totems in total, and they only respawned once every 2 days. It was impossible for Nie Yan to visit this place regularly, so every failure meant one less totem. The explosion of the Blood Shadow totem alerted the nearby Blood Shadow warriors. They started searching the vicinity for the culprit. Nie Yan entered stealth and snuck past the Blood Shadow warriors. With his cloaking ability, getting away from their pursuit would pose no problem. With so many life-saving skills at his disposal, Nie Yan could afford to take risks. He had no need to fear these level 90 Blood Shadow warriors. 6 Blood Shadow warriors were walking past about 5 meters away from Nie Yan. Suddenly, 2 of them halted their steps. Despite not finding anything amiss, they didn't move on. Their eyes lit up bright red, almost as if they had been set ablaze. Blood Shadow eyes. Under their gaze, Nie Yan's figure slowly materialized. Damn it, they have eye skills. It wasn't that all Blood Shadow warriors had eye skills. In fact, only a small portion of them did. Nie Yan was incredibly unlucky. When he was discovered, Nie Yan immediately bolted away. The Blood Shadow warriors gave chase, pursuing him closely from behind. He threw out a pouch of advanced flash powder that he got from the Starry Night General shop. With a poof, a blinding flash lit up the sky. He activated Disappear, causing the Blood Shadow warriors to lose sight of him, and ducked into a corner. The Blood Shadow warriors only regained their sight quite some time later. They looked around and discovered Nie Yan was long gone. They could only give up and slowly dispersed. Only after the Blood Shadow warriors walked far away did Nie Yan dare to come out of his corner. He continued to collect the Blood Shadow totems. Of the 6 totems, he failed 3 times and only acquired 3 totems. He stored them in his bag for later use. With the Blood Shadow totems cleared away, the path ahead opened up quite a bit. He moved forward while in stealth. Due to his recent activity, the number of Blood Shadow warriors in the area had increased exponentially, with patrol groups passing by regularly. There were too many Blood Shadow warriors crowding the area. Nie Yan had a much harder time advancing than before. Slowly but surely, Nie Yan left the open field. At this moment, a group of Blood Shadow warriors were walking towards him from up ahead. They were searching around, blocking his path forward. Seeing these Blood Shadow warriors coming towards him, Nie Yan knitted his brows. It appeared hiding would be impossible. There were around 100 Blood Shadow warriors in his direct surroundings. If all of them were alerted to his presence, he would quickly be surrounded and chopped into pieces. It was already difficult facing even a single one of these level 90 monsters, let alone so many gathered together. The Blood Shadow warriors gradually approached within 7 meters of Nie Yan. At this moment, they sensed something. One of them activated blood shadow eyes and gazed in Nie Yan's direction. Once that blood shadow warrior discovered Nie Yan, it immediately let out a thundering roar. The sound alerted the other blood shadow warriors in the area. They quickly rushed over and moved to surround him. Charge! A blood shadow warrior rushed at Nie Yan with its great sword raised. The surrounding crowd of blood shadow warriors also followed suit. After being completely surrounded, running away became impossible. Since it had reached this point, Nie Yan took out an unknown transfer scroll. He was ready to crush it but wouldn't unless absolutely necessary. The closest blood shadow warrior was already right in front of Nie Yan. It brandished its great sword and chopped down. Nie Yan glanced at his skill bar while swiftly pulling back, only to see the opponent's slash cut through him. -2203. What high damage! Nie Yan was taken for a scare. There was no way he would dare to face this group of blood shadow warriors head-on. These blood shadow warriors were level 90, almost 30 levels higher than Nie Yan. They easily cut through the protection of his leather armor. All blood shadow warriors were aggroed onto Nie Yan. It looked like he was going to get mobbed to death. Just as another blood shadow warrior charged up, he quickly activated Langdon's necklace of fake death. He collapsed to the ground. Showing no sign of life, he perfectly resembled a corpse. Nie Yan's sudden death left the blood shadow warriors in a daze as they lingered around his body. In the same moment he activated feigned death, he dropped all aggro. After activating feigned death, Nie Yan was extremely nervous. He was completely surrounded by blood shadow warriors. If one of them rushed up and attacked him, he would be toast. He was ready to crush his unknown transfer scroll at a moment's notice. Several blood shadow warriors investigated Nie Yan's body. After speaking some gibberish, they slowly started to disperse. Sensing the blood shadow warriors losing interest and walking away, Nie Yan breathed out a sigh of relief. He dispelled feigned death, got back on his feet, and entered stealth. Surveying the surroundings, no blood shadow warriors were coming back around. They had returned to their regular patrol routes. Nie Yan headed toward the tents up ahead. There were 3-meter-wide paths between the tents. From time to time, a couple of blood shadow warriors would pass by. It would be difficult to stay hidden here. He'd be very easy to notice if he relied on his regular stealth. He activated pygmy transformation and shrunk down to a third of his original size. Everything around him suddenly appeared much larger, as though he had been transported into a world of giants. Nie Yan stuck close to the corners of the tents and carefully advanced forward. Nie Yan crossed paths with many blood shadow warriors, but none of them discovered him. After shuttling between the tents for who knows how long, he arrived at a fork in the path. Two groups of roughly 80 blood shadow warriors each were walking over in his direction. With so many of them passing through, one of them was bound to discover him. Nie Yan felt his anxiety rising. He had nowhere to hide. Glancing at a nearby tent, he saw the swaying silhouette of a person inside. Nie Yan ducked into the tent, hiding behind the door flaps. Blood shadow warriors normally didn't enter inside these tents, so he could lay low here for the time being. Nie Yan glanced around the tent. It was quite spacious, covering an area of 10 by 10 meters. At the center were many cabinets stocked with all sorts of wonderful oddities, crystal bottles of various sizes filled with different colored liquids, which were cloudy and hard to make out under the dim lighting. These cabinets were roughly as tall as 2 people, dividing the tent into several areas. Further in the back stood a table. It was cluttered with beakers, tubes, and other glassware. Most eye-catching was the alchemy stand, which held a flask with a bubbling blue liquid that appeared to be boiling over with white smoke. This was clearly the workshop of an alchemist. At this moment, Nie Yan heard hurried footsteps coming in his direction. He quickly ducked behind a cabinet. Looking toward the source of the sound, he saw someone that was only half as tall as a normal person. He had a scraggly beard, and his face was covered in wrinkles. He wore ragged red robes dotted with holes and scorch marks from botched experiments. This short old man was probably the Blood Shadow Legion's alchemist. As he walked past Nie Yan, he was muttering something in Laki, a minor and uncommon language foreign to Nie Yan. The old alchemist walked over to the table. It appeared he was about to concoct something. Nie Yan inspected the old alchemist with transcendent insight. Alchemist Affleck protected level 90. Blood Shadow Legion member, special NPC. Health, 500/500. This was a special NPC. The system automatically took measures to protect NPC alchemists at master rank or higher. Any player that attacked them would suffer extremely severe penalties. Nie Yan recalled attacking a protected NPC was a violation of the Atlantic Continent's Scholar Spirit Treaty, and the offender would be barred from using any magic items, potions, and other consumables. The treaty sought to protect any NPC who reached master rank or higher in their respective profession. This NPC was a member of the Blood Shadow Legion. Nie Yan didn't dare to show himself easily. It would be troublesome if Alchemist Affleck became aware of his presence. Nie Yan scanned his eyes around this messy alchemist workshop, searching for anything of value. Decent loot often appeared in these kinds of settings. Most of the potions in the workshop weren't labeled, making things difficult for Nie Yan who didn't know the first thing about alchemy. His movements were very light as he searched around, not daring to make the slightest sound. At this moment, a Blood Shadow warrior in gold armor entered the workshop. Master Affleck, are the potions I requested ready? The Blood Shadow warrior asked. He was speaking in ancient common. His words were disjointed and hard to understand. Third cabinet, second shelf from the bottom, Alchemist Affleck replied. Their ancient common was far from fluent, barely passable for basic communication. The Blood Shadow warrior started walking over to the area where Nie Yan was hiding, which happened to be where Alchemist Affleck pointed him toward. Nie Yan watched the Blood Shadow warrior getting closer and closer. He estimated this fellow was at least an elite. There was no way he was a match at his current level. With nowhere left to run, Nie Yan looked up ahead and noticed some space between the top of the cabinet and the ceiling of the tent. He shot out a web line from his left hand and with a leap swung himself on top. Nie Yan couldn't help but feel somewhat anxious having been forced into such a tight spot. The Blood Shadow warrior appeared to sense something and started looking around. A trace of confusion surfaced on his face when he didn't discover anything. However, he threw it to the back of his mind and headed to the third cabinet. After rummaging around the second shelf from the bottom, he found what he was looking for. He bid Alchemist Affleck farewell and left the workshop. Nie Yan was just about to jump down when he discovered some sheepskin scrolls resting on the top of the cabinet opposite to him. He didn't know what they were, but they appeared ancient. Due to this place not being cleaned often, a thick layer of dust had accumulated on top of them. Nie Yan's mind trembled. The system usually hid treasure in difficult to find places. These several scrolls were certainly suspicious. Nie Yan leapt over the 3-meter gap between the cabinets and safely reached the other side. He didn't make the slightest sound on his landing. He bent down and picked up the scrolls. He discovered they were alchemy recipes for the Everwinter potion and Junior Vitality potion. Everwinter potions were a type of potion that boosted ice magic by 30% for 30 seconds. It was classified as a high-level potion and required an advanced alchemist to concoct. However, the Everwinter potion wasn't widely known simply due to its ice magic amplification effect. This type of potion was also an exceptionally good tool for tackling the barrier of the Master Alchemist rank. The amount of skill proficiency an advanced alchemist could obtain from making an Everwinter potion was somewhat more than ordinary high-level potions. Not to mention the materials required were fairly easy to find. A level 60 team could gather enough materials for several dozen potions on a single trip to the bitter winter mountains. This was why advanced alchemists favored the Everwinter potion recipe. However, due to the rarity of Everwinter potion recipes, very few advanced alchemists could afford them. Seeing this Everwinter potion recipe, Nie Yan's immediate thought was that the Starry Night potion shop would soon have its first master alchemist. This Everwinter potion recipe could allow an advanced alchemist to reach the master rank within half a month. As for the Junior Vitality potion, it was a bit different from ordinary health and mana potions. Junior Vitality potions instantly restored health and mana. This was extremely beneficial for casters who ran low on both during battles. It took too much time to drink health and mana potions individually. Drinking a single Junior Vitality potion would restore 35% health and mana, allowing the caster to instantly regain some of their combat strength. At later stages of the game, players would have upwards of 10,000 health and mana. Using a normal potion would only restore several hundred to 1 or 2,000 mana or health. At that point it would be more cost-effective to use Vitality potions because the amount they healed was percentage-based. Junior Vitality potions were classified as a master rank potion. Master alchemists were generally very scarce and extremely costly. Nie Yan recalled running the same level 100 dungeon more than 20 times just to obtain a single master alchemy recipe. The amount of gold earned from selling it allowed the entire party to raise the quality of their equipment by a step. Junior Vitality potions required a master alchemist to concoct. Intermediate and advanced Vitality potions probably required Grandmaster and Sage alchemists respectively. Nie Yan did the calculations in his head. The production cost of a single Junior Vitality potion was around 20 gold, and it could sell on the marketplace for roughly 50 gold. Generally, Vitality potions and ordinary health and mana potions were lifesavers only to be used during crucial moments. Nie Yan stored the 2 alchemy recipes in his bag, then checked on the Starry Night potion shop. Ever since Askickers United had unified Kalor, the number of advanced alchemists in the Starry Night potion shop had skyrocketed, having already reached more than 37. With future prospects so bright, even more advanced alchemists were flocking to join, rapidly expanding the Starry Night potion shop's manpower. What was regretful was that they still didn't have a single master alchemist. Nie Yan confirmed his decision. After returning, he would definitely cultivate a master alchemist. This was crucial for the Starry Night potion shop's growth. Nie Yan looked around once more to see if there was anything else of value. But apart from half-finished potions, he found nothing else. He jumped off from the top of the cabinet, landing gently on the ground, and stealthily returned to the tent entrance. He lightly pushed open the flaps and peeked outside. Seeing that the 2 large groups of Blood Shadow warriors had left, he breathed out a sigh of relief. As he made his way to the center of the encampment, the round building with a gold roof eventually came into vision. Outside the building was a wide open square where Blood Shadow warriors held practice drills from time to time. Nie Yan would have to enter this building to obtain the armored ice catapult blueprints, but security here was tight. This would be an enormous challenge. After sneaking past several Blood Shadow warriors and approaching the square, Nie Yan spotted another one bigger than the rest. Built like a bear and clad in dark crimson armor, he stood guard outside the entrance of the building. It's him. Nie Yan's mind trembled. This fellow was the leader of the Blood Shadow Legion, Blood Shadow warrior for Blaze, a level 90 lord. Sneaking past him and entering the building was going to be incredibly difficult. But before that, Nie Yan would have to get past the more than 100 ordinary Blood Shadow warriors patrolling the square first. Thankfully, Nie Yan had already planned ahead. Nie Yan circled around to the back of the building. It was built out of stone and painted a gold that glittered brilliantly under the sunlight. He inspected the walls with his hands and confirmed they were too solid to break through. The only way inside was the front entrance. However, that was so heavily guarded that even approaching would prove difficult. Nie Yan opened up Divine Recruitment and summoned Paladin Crook. Glancing at Crook's stats, he had more than 12,000 health, which was quite substantial. Paladin Crook could also buff himself with blessings, greatly increasing his own strength. Nie Yan activated the crawler ring and slowly started climbing up the wall of the building, evading the sight of the nearby patrols. He arrived on top of the roof and made his way toward the ledge above the front entrance. He stayed there motionless. No one noticed his arrival. Nie Yan looked down below and saw the leader of the Blood Shadow Legion, Blaze, standing about 8 meters away from him at the foot of some stairs. He could clearly see the back of Blaze's head. Nie Yan instructed Paladin Crook to circle back around the building and slowly approach the Blood Shadow warriors standing on guard at the entrance. Indomitable will. Paladin Crook hasted himself with several skills and charged toward the square. He would faithfully carry out Nie Yan's orders, regardless of what they were. The Blood Shadow warriors patrolling the vicinity were caught off guard by the sudden emergence of Paladin Crook. Paladin Crook kept running, not stopping to attack anyone. Before long, a large number of Blood Shadow warriors ran after him. Blaze also aggroed onto Paladin Crook and rushed forward with charge. It would only take a brief moment for him to catch up and kill Crook. How could Blaze allow Crook to behave so arrogantly in his presence? Seeing Blaze successfully distracted, Nie Yan cracked a faint smile. His silhouette blurred as he jumped off the ledge and dashed into the building. The interior of the building was far from spacious. There was a lounge that covered an area of 8 by 8 meters. Further back were rows upon rows of doors leading to various rooms. By the time Nie Yan came to this map in the previous timeline, every nook and cranny had already been explored. So, he had no clue what sort of treasures were hidden here. All he knew was the location of the items he was looking for. There were several obelisks in the lounge, along with multiple tables and chairs. Nie Yan made a beeline toward a dark gold treasure chest tucked away in a corner of the lounge. He had to open this chest and retrieve the key inside to unlock the cabinet where the armored ice catapult blueprints were kept. When he came here in the previous timeline, he was only hired help. Of the more than 200 players brought on for the expedition, only a few dozen remained by the time they cleared the map. As a level 110 plus great thief, he barely managed to survive until the end. Back then, he lacked the qualifications to open this chest. In this timeline, Nie Yan had accomplished many great things people would never dare to imagine. Nie Yan bent down and started opening the chest. As the seconds ticked away, Nie Yan checked his progress. Opening treasure chest. Progress, 5%, 8%. In the middle of opening the chest, Nie Yan received a notification that Paladin Crook had been killed. Nie Yan never had any hopes of Crook surviving in the first place. Crook's only job was to distract Blaze long enough for him to sneak into the building. In that aspect, Crook had accomplished his task wonderfully. When the progress was at 89%, a giant silhouette appeared at the entrance of the building. It was Blaze. He had come inside. This immediately put Nie Yan on edge. He feared Blaze would notice him, rush over, and stop him from opening the chest. Nie Yan's nerves were stretched taut. He discovered Blaze was gradually moving towards him, his footsteps growing louder and louder. The several pillars in the lounge blocked Nie Yan from view. Nie Yan stayed low and continued unlocking the chest. Just as Blaze was about to arrive, the chest popped open with a click. Nie Yan quickly fished around the chest and retrieved the key. After getting the key in his hands, Nie Yan activated Shadow Waltz and fled away, disappearing into the corridor. With its contents gone, the dark gold chest started slowly fading away. A furious roar escaped from Blaze's throat as his sight finally fell on the disappearing chest. Which thief stole my key? I'll smash them into pieces. He cursed while heading to the rooms at the back. Nie Yan bolted toward Blaze's private room with all his might and kicked open the half-closed door. His eyes quickly locked onto the golden cabinet. He didn't have much time. Blaze would be arriving in just a moment. Nie Yan immediately ran over and started using the recently obtained key to open the cabinet. With the matching key, unlocking something was fairly simple. In only a few seconds, the cabinet doors opened with a click. Inside was what he had come here for. The armored ice catapult blueprints were divided into 20 scrolls, with each one being necessary. Nie Yan tossed the blueprints into his bag, then examined the cabinet and discovered a red box sitting in the corner. Nie Yan opened the box and saw a fist-sized black marble. It was black and flashed with a dark luster. A powerful miasma radiated outward from it. Nie Yan examined the black marble. Evil gemstone, special quest item. Description: this evil gemstone contains extremely powerful evil energy. Only the power of light can melt it away. Note: the holder of this item cannot use teleport scrolls. This item is guaranteed to drop upon death. If he wanted to snatch away this item, it was necessary to get away from Blaze. Being barred from using teleport scrolls made this task a lot more difficult. Nie Yan put away the evil gemstone in his bag. At this moment, a silhouette flashed through the door. Blaze had arrived. After seeing Nie Yan, he let out a sinister laugh. Damn thief, this is the domain of the Blood Shadow Legion. All that awaits trespassers is death. Hand over the items you stole. Blaze charged toward Nie Yan and slashed down with his great sword. Thunder slash. Blaze, who was completely covered in muscle, was just like an enraged grizzly bear. His blade slashed toward Nie Yan with frightening sword energy. Since Nie Yan couldn't use teleport scrolls, he could only test his luck. If worse came to worst, he would have no choice but to abandon the evil gemstone. However, he really wasn't willing to give back something he had already taken. Nie Yan avoided the thunder slash with gale step and dashed under Blaze's arm. Nie Yan, who was still in pygmy form, appeared extremely small compared to the gigantic Blaze. His movements were nimble. The difference in size was too great. Blaze was having a hard time catching him. Blaze swung around and searched for traces of Nie Yan. As his eyes blossomed out with a crimson light, he almost immediately locked onto the fleeing Nie Yan. He went into pursuit with charge. As a level 90 lord, Blaze was much faster than Nie Yan. It only took him a brief moment to catch up and chop down on Nie Yan's neck with his great sword. Sensing the sharpness of the sword energy behind him, Nie Yan's heart tightened. This bastard was too fast. Nie Yan had shrunk down to a third of his original size, so his speed was also reduced proportionally. Under these circumstances, Blaze easily kept up with him. Nie Yan understood his disadvantage. Right now the only thing he could rely on was his small size, which made him much nimbler and harder to catch. Just as Blaze's sword was about to slash down on him, he rolled away. Bang! The ground behind him was immediately rent asunder by the great sword of Blaze, leaving behind a 2-meter-long sword scar. Nie Yan sucked in a breath of cold air. What frightening power! Nie Yan fled with all his might. He shot out a web line from his left hand and swung away, landing 8 meters away from Blaze. Taking advantage of his miniaturized size, he sprinted through narrow spaces that greatly limited Blaze's movements. Nie Yan crushed an aggro dispel scroll in an attempt to reduce Blaze's aggro. Normally, the higher the aggro, the more determined a monster would be to pursue a target. When the aggro was relatively low, the monster was more likely to lose interest or stop altogether, leaving the player with ample room to get away. Blaze paused for a brief moment before recovering almost immediately. His aggro wouldn't be so easily removed. After all, Nie Yan had stolen something precious from him. The evil gemstone was still in Nie Yan's possession. Blaze wouldn't give up until it was retrieved. Just as Balls resumed his pursuit, a giant web emerged out of thin air and fell over him, binding him in place. The intermediate web scroll could only trap Blaze for 3 seconds at most. Though the effects were limited, every second counted. Nie Yan's figure darted through the corridor. He knew it was only a matter of time before Blaze caught up to him again. He activated Shadow Waltz and rapidly disappeared into the shadows. Blaze slashed away the giant web binding him with his great sword and continued his pursuit, only to discover Nie Yan was nowhere to be found. He let out a furious roar and started making his way to the building's entrance. Before long, Blaze called over a large number of Blood Shadow warriors. They quickly gathered together and blockaded the entrance so that not even a mouse could pass through. Meanwhile, a few of them entered the building and started searching for traces of Nie Yan. After seeing the entrance sealed off, Nie Yan let out a bitter laugh. It appeared he was a turtle trapped in a jar. Should I just give up on the evil gemstone? Nie Yan was conflicted. Blaze probably wasn't dumb enough to hide the evil gemstone in the same location twice. It was likely he would never get this chance again, which in turn meant he would forever lose the opportunity to obtain the holy acclamation and become a luminous dancer. Every master class player could learn skills from other classes to strengthen themselves. Of course, the skills available for them to learn were only the most basic. However, there were special cases where a player could learn more powerful non-base class skills by obtaining a prestige class title. There were several such shadow dancers in the previous timeline: Luminous Dancer, Smiling Thief, and Shadow Stalker Sun. Of course, those in possession of these titles were few and far between. This was a symbol of the peak. Obtaining the evil gemstone wouldn't make class advancing any easier. But in order to become a luminous dancer, it was absolutely necessary. Without it, everything else was idle chatter. With the opportunity of becoming a luminous dancer on the line, Nie Yan wouldn't easily give up this evil gemstone. Droves of Blood Shadow warriors entered the building and started scouring around. Nie Yan ducked into a small storage room and hid in a secluded corner. He needed to weather out this storm first before thinking about anything else. Nie Yan estimated the Blood Shadow warriors would continue their search for at least the next 1 or 2 hours. He would look for an opportunity to escape when they finally gave up their search. Until then it would be suicidal to go out. As Nie Yan nervously waited, he heard the sound of approaching footsteps. The door flew open and several Blood Shadow warriors entered the storage room and started searching around. His body in pygmy form was incredibly small. Relying on the cover of some shabby desks and chairs, he successfully evaded being caught. After failing to find anything, the several Blood Shadow warriors left the storage room. About half an hour later, pygmy transformation was close to wearing off. However, since the number of Blood Shadow warriors in the vicinity had decreased a lot, he'd be fine even without being in pygmy form. Nie Yan patiently waited for another hour before daring to peek out the door. Nie Yan carefully snuck over to the front of the building. The entrance was still guarded by more than 20 Blood Shadow warriors. Blaze was surprisingly nowhere in sight. An opportunity. As long as Blaze wasn't present, Nie Yan could make his escape. These ordinary Blood Shadow warriors had no hope of stopping him. Nie Yan cautiously approached the Blood Shadow warriors, halting his footsteps when he was around 20 meters away. He hid behind a corner, took out an advanced twisting vine scroll, and then started chanting away. The pulses of magic energy alerted the Blood Shadow warriors, and they immediately charged toward his location. Just as the first Blood Shadow warrior closed in on Nie Yan, giant vines condensed out of magic energy erupted from the ground and wrapped around them like pythons. The Blood Shadow warriors couldn't break free of the vines, no matter how much they struggled. Nie Yan activated Gale Step and bolted for the outside. He dashed through the gaps between the Blood Shadow warriors, taking this opportunity to make a break for it. The advanced twisting vines persisted for 3 seconds before slowly disappearing. Only then did this group of Blood Shadow warriors regain their freedom. They wanted to stop Nie Yan, only to discover he had long since rushed out the door. Nie Yan crushed a haste scroll and fled out of the encampment at full speed. Even a single second could be the difference between life and death. The square outside the golden roofed building was also filled with Blood Shadow warriors. They immediately noticed his presence and moved to surround him. Nie Yan's silhouette blurred as he employed the footwork of a shadow dancer to evade one Blood Shadow warrior after another. However, some attacks were impossible to dodge, and he would have no choice but to endure. He quickly drank a health potion and patched himself up with a combat bandage. Nie Yan quickly fled to where the crowd was least dense and escaped their encirclement. At this moment, Blaze appeared in the distance. He quickly charged over like an enraged grizzly bear. Nie Yan couldn't help but feel alarmed. He immediately activated Animorph and transformed into a lynx. He nimbly climbed on top of one of the tents, then started leaping from tent to tent, rapidly widening the distance between him and Blaze. At this moment, outside the golden roofed building, the 7 armored ice catapults fired a hail of frost-covered shells at Nie Yan's location. The shells shot by the armored ice catapults had a freezing effect. As long as the target was within 20 meters of the shell's impact radius, they would be transformed into an ice cube by the potent frost energy. Nie Yan hurriedly activated Holy Descent from the metal of the 10 Holy Paladins, granting him immunity to magic for 3 seconds and a 20% speed boost. As the powerful frost energy swept over him, it dissipated upon making contact with the barrier around him. Nie Yan relied on the nimbleness of the lynx to swiftly evade the falling shells. However, the nearby tents were smashed into pieces. It was a scene of destruction. After the bombardment was over, the encampment looked like a complete mess with broken tent parts strewn everywhere. Nie Yan's fleeing figure quickly disappeared from sight. Nie Yan continued fleeing for another 1,000 meters before glancing back to see no Blood Shadow warriors pursuing him. He had also left the attack range of the armored ice catapults. Only then did he breathe a sigh of relief. Finding a secluded and peaceful spot, Nie Yan summoned his Faulkner warhorse. He climbed on and galloped off toward Kalor, passing through numerous high-level maps. During the journey back to Kalor, Nie Yan received a notification. King of the World has obtained the Chapter of Honor. You will be notified of the player's location every hour. Coordinates, 293.285.958. Besides the glimpse of darkness, Nie Yan was also in possession of the Chapter of Peace, Chapter of Compassion, Chapter of Knowledge, and the Chapter of Tolerance. If he could obtain the Chapter of Loyalty and Chapter of Honor, he would have the complete 5th volume of the Book of Order. This was an item on par with the glimpse of darkness. Another player had obtained a chapter from the Book of Order, the Chapter of Honor. Seeing the name King of the World, Nie Yan's eyes widened in shock. It was actually him. Based on the coordinates in the notification, King of the World was in the vicinity, only 3,000 meters away at most. Nie Yan didn't dare to overlook this. The other side knew he had 4 chapters on him, and that he was close by. There was no telling whether King of the World wouldn't be tempted to rush over and snatch them away. In the previous timeline, King of the World wasn't the slightest bit inferior to Sun and Shadow Killer. If he hadn't suddenly disappeared, it would be truly hard to say who was the top thief in Kalor. Nie Yan's name was a big deterrent. He was the guild leader of Ass-Kickers United, the overlord of Kalor. But for players of King of the World's caliber, something like that wasn't enough to scare them away. If he was in King of the World's position, he wouldn't care if the other side was the guild leader of a number 1 guild. He still wouldn't hesitate to take action. As a top thief, it was necessary to learn to ignore these trivial things. South of Nie Yan's location 3,000 meters away, King of the World was also taken by surprise after reading the location. He had just obtained the Chapter of Honor. He never expected 4 of the chapters from the 5th volume of the Book of Order were in the hands of a single person. His eyes flashed with a peculiar glint as he broke out into a smile. Mad Rogue Nirvana Flame. What an interesting fellow. He was itching to have a go at Nie Yan, to see if this legendary figure who ruled over Kalor was really worthy of his reputation. Reputation didn't matter in the least to King of the World. But when faced with an expert, he couldn't help but boil over with excitement. Due to the chapters from the Book of Order, they were bound to clash sooner or later. King of the World held Nie Yan in high regard. Only a few short months ago, Ass-Kickers United was nothing more than a small obscure guild. But now, after ousting Victorious Return, they were the de facto ruler of Kalor. When he first started playing Conviction, he had improved by leaps and bounds as a thief after coming across several of Nie Yan's videos. Ever since, he considered Nie Yan half his master. That's why he had refused to act against Ass-Kickers United during their bounty war with bloodlust blades. He would never return kindness with enmity. But the circumstances were different this time around. He wanted to issue out a challenge to Nie Yan. This was him testing himself out against a skilled opponent, not carrying out a vendetta. There existed an intrinsic difference between these two things. Nie Yan was undoubtedly a mythical figure in Kalor. King of the World's eyes were ablaze with excitement. As a mercenary who trod the line between life and death, his greatest joy was finding a worthy opponent. After traveling to Glory City to hunt down players from Bloodlust Blades, he had honed his skills to a whole new level. He had touched upon the true essence of a thief and learned the class could be played in many unimaginable ways. As someone who had spent most of his life roaming from battlefield to battlefield, having never touched a video game until recently, Conviction was a completely new experience to him. Nevertheless, as time passed, his frightening comprehension ability for the game became apparent. He had killed a total of 2,872 Bloodlust Blades players during his time in Glory City, putting him way ahead of the pack on the mission board of the League of Assassins. The person in second place had only recently surpassed 1,000 kills. He was promoted to Enroll thanks to his accomplishments and wasn't that far off from becoming a marquee. King of the World's fame had also risen accordingly. Many players knew of him. Asskickers United had once tried to recruit King of the World but were rejected by him. The reason being that he wanted to bring his close brothers along with him. However, their levels and the quality of their equipment were too low. Guo of course didn't agree since that wouldn't be fair. No one had ever joined through a special backdoor. Every member had to go through stringent screening. Asskickers United had their rules, and King of the World had his principles. Like this, the matter of him joining the guild was indefinitely put on hold. King of the World dashed across the plains at top speed toward Nie Yan's location. This was a clash between thieves where either side could come out on top. He was burning with anticipation for the upcoming battle. He had no quarrel with Nie Yan. But how often did someone get the opportunity to challenge a legendary figure like the Mad Rogue? Nie Yan was a bit more knowledgeable on King of the World than most others. He was still curious about what happened between King of the World and Heavenbreaker back then. Nie Yan dismounted from his Faulkner warhorse. This grassland was full of level 70 minotaurs. They were 3 meters tall, brimming with muscles, and wielded giant broad axes. King of the World should be arriving right about now. Let's grind a bit of experience first. Nie Yan snuck behind one of the minotaurs and struck it in the back of the head with smothering strike. He followed up with backstab and lacerate, unleashing blow after blow until the minotaur collapsed dead on the ground. These monsters were a cakewalk compared to the Blood Shadow warriors. Just as Nie Yan bent down and picked up the 3 silver dropped from the minotaur's corpse, he felt a slight chill at the back of his neck. The feeling though fleeting didn't escape his notice. It appeared King of the World had already arrived. Nie Yan tossed the 3 silver into his bag while trying to detect the other party's location. He suddenly sensed them and focused on a flat patch of grass ahead of him. Eye of Truth. Nie Yan's eyes flashed with a sharp light. He carefully scanned over the area. To his surprise, he failed to discover anything. His enhanced Eye of Truth was fairly high rank. It should easily unveil any thief at this stage of the game. So, why did it fail? King of the World felt cold sweat running down his back. He never expected to already be noticed by Nie Yan after only approaching within 13 meters. What high awareness. An eye skill. King of the World's heart trembled after seeing the demonic red light blossoming out of Nie Yan's pupils. He hurriedly activated Hide, granting him immunity to detection for 3 seconds. King of the World felt Nie Yan's sharp gaze sweep over him. When the effects of Hide wore off, he would be laid bare by Eye of Truth. It was do or die. King of the World dashed in a half moon around Nie Yan before closing in from behind. Sensing the sharpness of a dagger approaching the back of his head, Nie Yan quickly sidestepped the smothering strike. With a flick of his wrist, he retaliated with a reverse grip backstab. As King of the World's attack missed, his figure gradually materialized. He couldn't help but take notice of Nie Yan's incredible reaction speed. King of the World's footsteps blurred as he evaded the attack. This was the freedom skill of a great thief, Phantom Step. He quickly retaliated with a puncture to Nie Yan's flank. After this initial exchange, all traces of arrogance vanished from King of the World's mind. Nie Yan's combat style was quite overbearing. He couldn't help but feel stifled. The Mad Rogue really did live up to his reputation. Nie Yan had an air of absolute confidence about him, as if he could keep his cool no matter what kind of danger he ran into. Like this, he could display even more power. Nie Yan evaded with Gale Step, then re-emerged from stealth 15 meters away. He turned around and glanced back at King of the World. The Phantom Step and puncture just now gave him a strange sense of déjà vu. This was why he chose to disengage instead of resuming the offensive. As Nie Yan met eyes with King of the World, something in his mind suddenly clicked. Bayonet. The similarity of their fighting styles couldn't help but raise Nie Yan's suspicions. He recalled that both Bayonet and King of the World had a close band of brothers. It was also rumored that King of the World's disappearance in the previous timeline was due to the cold-blooded murder of his brothers at the hands of Heavenbreaker, who was later assassinated by a mysterious assailant. Lastly, based on the dialogue Bayonet had with Wisp during the kidnapping attempt on Xie Yao, Nie Yan clearly remembered that his circumstances were roughly the same as King of the World's. He couldn't help but wonder if Bayonet and King of the World were one and the same. Care to make a little wager? Nie Yan made his decision. He was determined to recruit King of the World to his side, regardless of whether or not he was Bayonet. What kind of bet? King of the World asked warily. What startled him was that the Nie Yan he had met the day prior was actually Nirvana Flame. Of this he was absolutely certain. After their previous exchange in real life, Nie Yan's movement and subtle habits were still vivid in his mind. This was something he had picked up after more than a decade of fighting in war-stricken territories. Nirvana Flame's identity in real life had always been a mystery to players. He had never revealed this information to the public, so very few people knew. In only a brief exchange, King of the World determined Nirvana Flame was Nie Yan. We'll PvP right here. Everything within 100 meters will be our arena. Bayonet was a mercenary, and every mercenary had a price. Nie Yan was confident the Nie family financial group could afford to hire him. What happens if I win or lose? King of the World asked. He wanted to find out just what Nie Yan was scheming. If I win, you'll have to promise me your loyalty. Furthermore, Asskickers United's doors will be open to you, and I'll also give you the 4 chapters in my possession. As for your brothers, I can let them join the branch guilds first. When their levels and equipment are good enough, they can join Asskickers United. If I lose, not only will the 4 chapters go to you, but I'll throw in the evil gemstone that allows you to class advance into a luminous dancer, Nie Yan explained with a smile. Just from the expression on his face, anyone could tell he was plotting something. As long as King of the World agreed to this bet, he would obtain 4 chapters from the 5th volume of the Book of Order. Who could refuse such an enticing offer? What's in it for you? King of the World asked. Regardless of the outcome, Nie Yan would still have to hand over his 4 chapters. What's in it for me? You, of course. As long as I win, you'll become a part of Asskickers United. So what if I gift you these 4 chapters? Items are only material at the end of the day. Nie Yan said in a straightforward manner. He could obtain countless amazing items anytime he wanted. Why would he care about 4 measly chapters? Besides this, he had successfully laid out his trap. King of the World hadn't noticed the pitfall in his words. Based on the fact that King of the World had been willing to kill Heavenbreaker to avenge his brothers in the previous timeline, Nie Yan was confident he wasn't someone who broke his promises. Alright, I accept the bet. Don't forget your words. I'm not someone who holds back. You better not regret it when I take those 4 chapters and the evil gemstone from you. Of course I'll fulfill my end of the bargain if I lose, King of the World said. Nie Yan had won him over. He also finally understood why Nie Yan was admired by so many. Even if he ended up beating Nie Yan today, he decided that he would still join Ass-Kickers United. What King of the World really wanted to know was why Nie Yan trusted him so much. If he went back on his word and fled with the 4 chapters, wouldn't Nie Yan be shit out of luck? Nevertheless, King of the World was still moved by this display of good faith. He naturally wouldn't throw it back in Nie Yan's face. I'm making my move, King of the World declared, pouncing towards Nie Yan with his dagger raised. It was a duel against King of the World. Victory was the only option. Nie Yan had numerous powerful skills at hand, along with unequaled attack power and defense. As long as he didn't get stunned, he was confident no thief could match him blow for blow. However, things might get tricky if he were stunned. Every high-level thief could chain stun a target for at least 6 seconds. Given the quality of King of the World's equipment, he could probably 100-0 Nie Yan during this time frame. Nie Yan activated his dark bright barrier, causing a membrane of black light to envelop him. King of the World pounced toward Nie Yan. The two clashed, exchanging multiple blows. They dodged and weaved in an effort to probe each other out. Neither side revealed any of their trump cards. Concussive blow. King of the World's dagger stabbed out toward Nie Yan's forehead. Clang. Nie Yan parried the attack by raising his dagger. Spinning strike. With a pivot of his foot, King of the World's figure blurred, then re-emerged with dagger plunging towards Nie Yan's back. Nie Yan might not be a match for Bayonet in reality, but this was inside conviction. No one could escape the restraints of stats. Just as the spinning strike was about to land, Nie Yan dodged with Shadow Waltz and disappeared into stealth. Owl sight. King of the World immediately locked onto Nie Yan's retreating figure with his significantly enhanced senses. Skewering assault. King of the World instantly arrived behind Nie Yan and pierced him through his back. Blood splattered the ground as Nie Yan lost more than 1,200 health. What frightening damage. It truly deserved to be called a great thief skill. Nie Yan activated Berserk transformation from the Slaughter Fiend medallion, gaining a burst of attack power and movement speed, then slashed out with Phantom Assassination. Zenard's sword drew a cold arc toward King of the World's throat. This sort of in-your-face clash between thieves relied heavily on skill. Even a single moment could decide victory and defeat. King of the World avoided Nie Yan's attack with Gale Step, then rapidly retreated to give himself some breathing room. 3 seconds, 2 seconds, 1 second, the invincibility from Gale Step finally wore off. Nie Yan quickly locked onto King of the World's position and targeted him with Intimidate. His fleeing figure froze in place. King of the World's heart trembled. What kind of skill was this? His whole body was paralyzed. He was entirely exposed after being struck by Intimidate. Gale Ambush. Nie Yan's figure sped forward as he almost instantly arrived behind King of the World. King of the World hurriedly protected himself with a barrier skill to offset some of the damage. He also activated the Great Thief skill, Shadow Form, which made him immune to crowd control effects. Minus 1,208. Bang! Nie Yan ruthlessly struck King of the World in the back of the head. However, the stun effect of Smothering Strike was negated by Shadow Form. So what if the enemy couldn't be stunned? Taking advantage of the attack boost from Gale Ambush, Nie Yan followed up with Backstab. Minus 1,392. Minus 279. Minus 334. King of the World's barrier shattered into pieces. A string of bleed and burn damage values floated up from above his head. At this moment, King of the World finally regained control of his body. He activated level 3 swift retreat and quickly fled to safety. His back was drenched with cold sweat. Nie Yan's attacks were too frightening. No wonder players regarded the Mad Rogue as a godly thief. His attacks weren't something ordinary players could handle. Even the tankiest of warriors would be cut down. Believing he could rely on his speed to escape, King of the World was shocked to find Nie Yan rapidly gaining on him. He quickly downed an intermediate health potion. Nie Yan and King of the World's battle had been going for about a minute. With both having used up all their skills, they'd have to rely on their regular attacks for now. Just as Nie Yan was about to close in, King of the World swung around and stabbed him in the chest. Only to realize what he struck was merely an illusion. Nie Yan had employed illusion steps. King of the World felt Zenard's sword held across his throat. King of the World gulped as cold sweat dripped down his forehead. It's my win. Nie Yan faintly smiled. King of the World only had a little over 1,000 health left. One more attack would finish him off. What skill was that? King of the World asked in surprise. He had clearly felt his dagger pierce Nie Yan's chest just a moment ago. It's not a skill. It's a shadow dancer technique. If you're interested, I can teach you. Nie Yan brightly smiled. He was in a great mood right now. Since according to their agreement, King of the World, no, to be more precise, Bayonet would become his subordinate. King of the World chuckled. He was thoroughly convinced of his defeat at Nie Yan's hands. He knew Nie Yan still had a few more tricks up his sleeve, such as the techniques he employed to kill Hey Joe Black Amazing during the battle at Kilnfire Woods. Alright, I'll join Ass-Kickers United, King of the World said. He would accept his loss magnanimously and fulfill his end of the bargain. Although he felt it was a little unfair for his brothers to be put in the branch guilds, the shared treasury would help them grow. When their equipment and levels were up to par, they could join the main guild then. Not just Ass-Kickers United, also report into my family's company. Here's the location, Nie Yan said before sending his address to King of the World. Your family's company. King of the World stared blankly. Did you forget? If you lose, you'll swear your loyalty to me. That's what we agreed on. Nie Yan's lips curved into a devious grin. Only then did King of the World recall Nie Yan's words. Since he didn't think Nie Yan had figured out his identity as Bayonet, he thought they were only talking about the game when they were making the bet, not real life as well. Nie Yan had set up a trap in his words, and King of the World had unwittingly walked right into it. I figured our agreement didn't reach outside the game, King of the World tried to explain. He never thought a small bet would end up with him being bound. However, he had indeed agreed to the bet. He had even told Nie Yan not to regret it if he won. Of course I wasn't just talking about the game. I told you before, if you ever find yourself without a place to go, come and find me. You're a mercenary. The Nie family company will definitely give you a satisfactory offer. You're not planning to back on your word, are you? Nie Yan looked at King of the World with a disappointed expression. Well, if you're not willing to honor the bet, so be it. King of the World was backed into a corner. This situation definitely wasn't as easy to resolve as it seemed. It suddenly hit him. Nie Yan had scammed him. Just as King of the World wanted to say something, Nie Yan cut him off. After I kill myself, the 4 chapters will be yours. As for the evil gemstone and piece of equipment I drop, help me deliver them to the Ass-Kickers United Guild office in Kalor. As soon as Nie Yan finished speaking, he committed suicide and transformed into a ray of light. Left behind on the ground were the 4 chapters, the evil gemstone, and a piece of equipment. Nie Yan had left too quickly, not giving King of the World the chance to speak at all. King of the World just stood in place for a while with a baffled expression on his face. He bent down and picked up the items on the ground in a daze. He intended to return the evil gemstone and piece of equipment to Nie Yan. Although he believed Nie Yan was only talking about the game, it was indeed true that he had agreed to the bet. This was something nobody could deny. He couldn't take back his words. King of the World had an internal struggle. Abiding by the bet meant he would have to swear loyalty to Nie Yan. Reneging from the bet would be going against everything he believed in. The mercenary code required he put his honor above all else, and he was a mercenary through and through. A trivial bet inside a game had resulted in him being bought in real life. He didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Truthfully, swearing his loyalty to someone wasn't that big of a deal to King of the World. He was a mercenary. As long as his employer paid enough money, he would carry out his job faithfully. If Nie Yan could offer enough money to help his brothers recover, he was more than willing to give him his loyalty. The years of roaming war-stricken territories had taught him that pride meant nothing. It couldn't buy food, and it could even cost someone their life at times. After thinking for a bit, King of the World felt Nie Yan's character wasn't too bad. He had angered his previous employer by not carrying out the kidnapping of Xie Yao, putting his life and those of his brothers in danger. Now Nie Yan could shelter them. It was better than bringing them into hiding in Tibet like he originally planned. King of the World wore a bitter smile. Maybe this wasn't a bad thing. He could finally put an end to his life as a mercenary and instead enjoy a calmer lifestyle. King of the World breathed a long sigh before letting out a chuckle. Damn it, Nirvana Flame, you really got me good. Nie Yan had already revived and was pacing around in the Kalor Guild office. He trusted his eye for people. With King of the World's character, he would likely fulfill his end of the bet. As for whether or not he was willing to come to the Nie family company, it was hard to say. Nie Yan was hedging his bets on King of the World being willing to come work for him in real life. Bayonet was a world-class mercenary. He was an expert that survived through hails of bullets. His skills were on a whole other level. Nie Yan estimated if Bayonet went all out, he would be lucky to even last 3 moves. What he learned was the art of fighting. What Bayonet learned was the art of killing. Even if you had the best equipment in the game, so what? Given enough time, any item could be obtained, by anyone. But an expert like Bayonet was an incredible boon for Nie Yan and the Nie family. Perhaps he could even save a life at a crucial moment. Investing a few pieces of equipment for an expert at that level. It was definitely worth the trade. Nie Yan was waiting inside the Kalor Branch Guild headquarters. After a while, Guo Wai entered the office. Someone wanted me to return these to you. Guo Wai handed over the evil gemstone and a few other items to Nie Yan. Where is he? Nie Yan asked. He already left, but he told me to pass on a message. He'll be visiting your family's company during the day. Who is he? Guo Wai asked curiously. A friend. Nie Yan chuckled. He was happy knowing the gamble had paid off. It seemed he would be paying a visit to his family's company during the day as well. He took out the armored ice catapult blueprints. With 20 pages in total, crafting an armored ice catapult would require 13 advanced engineers, 5 advanced tinkerers, an alchemist, and an enchanter working together for 2 days straight. Ass-Kickers United didn't have the required number of advanced engineers at this time. They could only think of some other way, first by borrowing the advanced engineers from Sapphire Shrine, Holy Empire, and the other allied guilds. During the siege of the Crypt Stronghold, given Bloodlust Blade's strength at the time, it was impossible for them to manufacture armored catapults by themselves. Likely Angel Corps, Alliance of Mages, and Divine Protectors had loaned them the advanced engineers. Those 3 catapults had nearly brought Ass-Kickers United to their knees. After Ass-Kickers United recovered, revenge would definitely be had. The enemy would get a taste of their own medicine, facing the full might of the armored ice catapults. Where did you get that? Guo Wai asked in shock after looking over the armored ice catapult blueprints. Guo Wai had experienced the might of the armored catapults firsthand. Afterwards, he'd instantly ordered some of his subordinates to search high and low for an armored catapult blueprint. Who would have thought Nie Yan would be so quick to find them? The emergence of the armored ice catapults had filled in one of Ass-Kickers United's biggest weaknesses. Even if Kalor was currently at peace, they couldn't lower their guard. Siege weapons like catapults were a necessity, or else they would be forced on the back foot if they were attacked again. I got it while doing a quest, Nie Yan replied. Hurry up and find people to start the manufacturing process. The sooner, the better. I'll get on it right away. Guo Wai said in excitement. Suddenly recalling something, Nie Yan said, have the manufacturing be in one of the War God tribe's strongholds. The armored ice catapults should help them secure victory in the war. Understood. Guo Wai nodded. Oh, right. Has Sun completed Master Jewelcrafter Paget's quest? Yeah, he finished it. I'll call him over right now. After a while, Sun arrived in the office lounge. Big brother, what do you need me for? I have 5 radiant gems I want to use to upgrade my special items. Bring me to meet Master Jewelcrafter Paget, Nie Yan said. Anyone that completed Paget's quest would gain access to his services. They could even request his help to upgrade items for their friends. Many of those who had completed Paget's quest in the previous timeline would sell access to his services on the streets, bringing the items that needed to be upgraded to him before collecting an intermediary fee. His workshop was often packed to the brim with visitors. However, the recommended level for this quest was 70 to 80. The fact that Sun had completed an already challenging quest while below the recommended level was indicative of his skill. Sure, Sun nodded. Sun and Nie Yan chatted while heading to the center of Kalor. On the busiest street in Kalor Central District stood a shop with a unique appearance. Inside were around 30 junior jewel crafters. They were tasked with helping players upgrade their various items with gems. Few people could meet with Master Jewelcrafter Paget. He rarely showed his face in public. As Sun and Nie Yan entered the shop, a middle-aged jewelcrafter walked up to greet them. Oh, sirs, how may I help you today? Mr. Denny, we'd like to meet Jewelcrafter Paget. Please follow me, sirs. Denny turned around and headed deeper inside, with Nie Yan and Sun in tow. The two entered the back of the shop, then walked up a narrow staircase. They arrived on the second floor and were greeted by cabinets filled with glittering gems of every color under the sun. Their dazzling radiance lighted the whole room. These gems were all valuable resources, but players weren't allowed to touch them, lest they be thrown in jail by the guards for several days. Of course, the things stolen would have to be returned as well. After passing through the narrow corridor, Nie Yan and Sun entered a large room. Necklaces, rings, and other accessories were scattered about the floor. In the center of the room stood a shabby work table. Nie Yan quickly spotted Paget, the jewelcrafter he was somewhat acquainted with in the previous timeline. Wearing a gray shirt and with disheveled and messy hair, he was currently focused on polishing a gem. Nie Yan had come here before in the previous timeline to upgrade his equipment. Among all the NPC jewel crafters, Paget had the highest upgrade success rate. Paget's appearance was the same as he remembered. Master Paget, Sir Sun has brought a friend here to request your help, Denny said in a cautious tone. Paget raised his head. His gaze swept over the three people before settling on Nie Yan. His eyebrows jumped up in surprise. Nie Yan's titles couldn't be ignored. Whether it was Devil Slayer or Grand Scholar, they granted him a high position not just in Kalor but the whole Viridian Empire. Master Paget, can you help me upgrade these pieces of equipment? Nie Yan brought out 5 radiant gems, along with the silk spinner ring, crawler ring, leaper ring, pearl of disguise, and necklace of deception. As for the pygmy ring and anamorph ring, he would have to wait to upgrade them some other time. Sun felt dizzy seeing Nie Yan take out so many special items. Each one was extremely rare and valuable. Most players would go through great pains to find even one. Who could be so extravagant like Nie Yan? Sun couldn't help but wonder how Nie Yan got his hands on so many. It would be my pleasure, Paget replied. He accepted the items from Nie Yan and started polishing the radiant gems. Nie Yan suddenly recalled Pandora's box in his bag. This was a legendary item for jewel crafters. He took out Pandora's box and showed it to Paget. Would this be of use to you? Paget raised his head. After seeing Pandora's box in Nie Yan's hands, his eyes flashed with a peculiar light. Nie Yan could see the uncontainable excitement in his gaze. Heavens! Are my eyes playing a trick on me? That's Pandora's box. Paget cried out in surprise. Of course it's useful. This mythical fate item is something every jewel crafter dreams about. With it, I only need a minute to finish upgrading these 5 special items. Nie Yan never thought Pandora's box would produce such a reaction from Paget. Its value in his heart rose by several tiers. It appeared he still hadn't used this item to its fullest potential. Paget forcefully calmed his stirring emotions. Great Thief Nirvana Flame, Grand Scholar and Devil Slayer. May I beseech you with a selfish request? I want to borrow Pandora's box to create a necklace for my deceased wife. It's a very dear wish of mine. Of course. I hope it will be of use to you. Nie Yan nodded. He never expected Pandora's box to also unlock a hidden quest. In any case, it was only going to be used to create an item. He wouldn't be losing anything. Sun stared in amazement at the item in Nie Yan's hands. He never thought this strange-looking black box was actually something that didn't lose out to a legendary great item. Thank you. You truly are a kind person. Paget said gratefully. I'll need your assistance. Please put Pandora's box on the work table. Paget started upgrading Nie Yan's special items. He picked up the silk spinner ring and a radiant gem and placed them inside Pandora's box. He had Nie Yan activate Pandora's box, whereupon it flooded the room with a dazzling radiance. Nie Yan could feel Paget's movements inside Pandora's box. After a while, the light gradually dimmed down. The silk spinner ring looked completely different from before, as though it had been coated in a waxy liquid. It sparkled with a brilliant luster. The small spider on top of the ring that was previously unremarkable appeared vivid and lifelike. Every fine hair and detail was clear to the eye. The silk spinner ring had gone through an amazing transformation. Nie Yan examined the stats of the upgraded silk spinner ring. Silk spinner ring, silver special. Item description: shoot out a sticky web line with a range of 10 meters. Supports a maximum load of 300 pounds. Cooldown 10 seconds. Weight 1 pound. Restrictions: none. Its range doubled from 5 meters to 10 meters. Its maximum load increased from 200 pounds to 300 pounds, and its cooldown was cut in half from 20 seconds to 10 seconds. Since not long after the start of the game, this ring had always been by his side, helping him avoid countless dangers and saving his life who knew how many times. The lower the starting point of a special item, the higher the upgrade potential. For example, the silk spinner ring went from bronze to silver grade and could be upgraded even further to gold and dark gold grade. Nie Yan couldn't help but wonder what the properties would be like at higher grades. After all, the greater the range and maximum load the better. But the silver grade silk spinner ring would do for now. Following the same procedure, Nie Yan upgraded the 4 other special items. Crawler ring, silver special. Item description: grants the ability to stick to walls, trees, and other similar surfaces for up to 15 minutes. Cooldown 30 minutes. Weight 1 pound. Restrictions: none. The crawler ring's duration had increased by 5 minutes. Its cooldown was also cut in half from an hour to 30 minutes. The leaper ring, pearl of disguise, and necklace of deception couldn't rank up any further since they were already dark gold grade. However, they still saw noticeable improvements. The leaper ring's range was increased from 10 meters to 30 meters, its cooldown was reduced from 10 minutes to 5 minutes, and it could now be used in combat. As for the pearl of disguise and necklace of deception, their durations were increased from 30 minutes and 3 hours to 1 hour and 5 hours respectively. However, their cooldowns remained the same at 1 day. These 3 special items were fully maxed out now. Even though they couldn't be upgraded any, they'd still play a vital role in his future growth. Nie Yan accepted his 5 special items back. Paget would now borrow Pandora's box to create a necklace for his deceased wife. Paget took out a red, a blue gem, a green gem, and a dull-looking silver chain. He placed these 4 items into Pandora's box and started the crafting process. After a flash of light, a rainbow-colored necklace emerged from Pandora's box. Nie Yan examined the newly created necklace. It was called Necklace of Paget's Deceased Wife, a powerful legendary item. It increased the rank of the jewel crafting skill by 1. Paget put on this necklace, increasing his jewel crafter rank from master to grandmaster. Nie Yan never expected Paget to use his Pandora's box to create something so amazing. If he had known earlier, he would have allowed Paget to make the necklace first. Thankfully, the upgrade attempts on the 5 special items were all successful. Else he would have wasted a radiant gem for every failure. It was rumored that by combining an Azure Fantasy Sapphire, Scarlet Blaze Ruby, Life Emerald, and Magic Silver Chain inside Pandora's box, an incredible necklace capable of fulfilling one's desire can be crafted. For the sake of helping me become a Grandmaster Jewel Crafter, my wife, Elaine, braved through countless perils to obtain these 4 items. It's unfortunate that she's already departed this world. I pray her soul found peace in heaven. Nie Yan's heart trembled. Paget had just offhandedly provided him with a crafting recipe. As long as he could find the aforementioned items, he could create a powerful legendary grade necklace. Something that could increase the rank of any crafting profession by 1 was practically unheard of. After putting on this necklace, a master could become a grandmaster, and a grandmaster a sage. It must be known that the higher one climbed in their craft, the harder it became to improve. For example, a master would have to spend a grueling amount of effort for 2 years straight to ascend to the rank of a grandmaster. Moreover, after becoming a grandmaster, only crafting items above a certain difficulty would give proficiency. Nie Yan memorized this recipe in his heart. Even though collecting 3 gems and a chain didn't seem like much, he knew these 4 items were probably extremely rare. Thank you. You've helped me fulfill a long-cherished wish of mine. I can live on without regrets. Paget turned to Nie Yan with a grateful look in his eyes. Nie Yan replied in a manner one would expect from standard quest dialogue. What puzzled him was that he had received no reward, though Paget had informed him that he could come here for gem upgrades anytime free of charge. Logically speaking, this was quite a lucrative opportunity. He could upgrade equipment for other players and collect both a service fee and the gold that would normally be paid to Paget. However, given his status as the guild leader of Ass-Kickers United, this was too far beneath him. He had better things to do with his time. While Nie Yan was wondering why he didn't receive a reward, he noticed the benevolent property was added to his character window. Prior to this, Nie Yan had received just and brave. Now he also had benevolent as well. He had no idea what these words meant. Perhaps he could find some clue after collecting more of them. In the previous timeline, Nie Yan had never heard of a person receiving something like this, nor had he seen any discussion of it on the forums. As for how these properties would be useful to him, he would have to slowly continue researching. After bidding farewell to Paget, Nie Yan and Sun left the shop. Sun still had some quests to do, so he left first. Nie Yan looked at the broken Nadago's staff of curses in his bag. After killing Nadago, he had received a quest notification telling him to find Great General Breakspear to receive a nice surprise. He previously had no idea where Great General Breakspear was. So, he had ordered his subordinates in Ass-Kickers United do some digging. They found he was located in the distant Hilton stronghold. Going from Kalor to the Hilton stronghold wasn't too much trouble. He would first have to spend 1 gold and 60 silver to teleport to Kristen Town in Hilderlock, then ride on horseback for about an hour. The Hilton stronghold was surrounded by badlands overrun with vile creatures that had escaped from the caves leading to the underworld. It was the frontline against the evil faction. Who knew what sort of reward he would receive for turning in the broken Nadago's staff of curses? However, there was no harm in making the trip. After all, it wasn't every day that a figure like the legendary necromancer Nadago was slain. Nie Yan handed over the Everwinter potion recipe and Junior Vitality potion to Bird and dealt with a few guild-related matters before setting off with the little time remaining in the day. Kalor was relatively peaceful right now. Even if an emergency happened, he could quickly return. Nie Yan teleported to Kristen Town, then got on his Faulkner warhorse and galloped north. The minutes and seconds ticked away. As the server closing drew close, Nie Yan found a safe spot and unsummoned his Faulkner warhorse before logging off. Nie Yan exited the game capsule to discover Xie Yao sleeping peacefully in his bed. It appeared she had snuck into his room sometime during the evening. Nie Yan walked over to Xie Yao. She had covered herself with a thin blanket. Her eyes were closed, and traces of fear could still be seen on her face. She appeared quite pitiful. The prior incident had probably frightened her far more than he initially thought. She was almost kidnapped and then watched a man killed before her eyes in cold blood. How could she not be traumatized? Nie Yan's eyes rested on Xie Yao, her delicate face without a single blemish, her hair that was messy every so slightly, those perky eyelashes and tender sweet lips. Xie Yao was wearing a lace nightgown. Her collar was a bit low, exposing her slender milky white shoulders. She looked like a goddess. Nie Yan's imagination couldn't help but run wild. The scene of Xie Yao sleeping so peacefully was one Nie Yan could have never imagined in the previous timeline. The joy it brought him was calming, like a whiff of fragrance soothing his heart. Seeing Xie Yao's eyebrow lightly tremble, Nie Yan faintly smiled. It seemed she had already woken up but was too embarrassed to open her eyes. Nie Yan bent down and drew close to Xie Yao's cheeks with a mischievous smile on his face. Opening her eyes and seeing Nie Yan's face so close to hers, Xie Yao's cheeks burned bright red. You're out, Xie Yao asked, gently blinking her limpid eyes. Why are you sleeping here, in my bed? I got scared. I didn't want to stay in a room all by myself, so I came here, Xie Yao explained. She felt a sense of security when she was by Nie Yan's side. Although the sight of him killing Wisp yesterday was a huge shock to her, her opinion of him didn't worsen. Though when she recalled Nie Yan's appearance at that time, a peculiar feeling surfaced in her heart, one she couldn't explain. Seeing Xie Yao's shy and vulnerable appearance, Nie Yan was overcome with desire and made an attack on her lips. Caught off guard, Xie Yao yelped in surprise. However, that only further ignited the desire buried in Nie Yan's heart. Nie Yan slipped his hand into Xie Yao's nightgown, groping around until he reached a pair of soft, perky mounds. Frivolously, he started kneading them without restraint. Xie Yao felt numb all over, the tingling leaving her powerless to resist. Nie Yan knew all of Xie Yao's weak spots. She wriggled and squirmed, her soft moans resounding through the room. Xie Yao glared at Nie Yan, feigning anger to hide her embarrassment. Nie Yan chuckled, then whispered in her ear, all right, I'll stop here for today, though I'd really like to eat you up. Let's go brush our teeth and wash up. Xie Yao quickly got up from the bed. Nie Yan's words left her feeling even more frantic, though a trace of happiness sprouted in her heart. Nie Yan found Xie Yao's disheveled appearance quite alluring. I'll go to the washroom first. Xie Yao left in a hurry, not daring to meet Nie Yan's eyes. After coming out of the washroom, Xie Yao's cheeks were still scarlet red. The skin under her lace nightgown glowed a faint pink, appearing all the more glossy and translucent like jade. Nie Yan couldn't help but want to take a bite. Nie Yan abided by his agreement to Xie Jun. He also wanted to prove himself worthy first by subduing the Dragonsaur and Glory financial groups. Though he would sometimes take advantage of the moment, he would always restrain himself in the end. The two of them were too young anyway. Xie Yao was barely 18. Slight pangs of guilt rippled through his heart. Xie Yao also understood this. She felt grateful to Nie Yan for it. After the two of them finished washing up, Nie Yan turned to Xie Yao. I need to make a trip to my father's company. I have some business to take care of. A sense of fear and anxiety suddenly washed over Xie Yao. After the kidnapping attempt, she subconsciously grew dependent on Nie Yan. Without him by her side, she was afraid something like that might happen again. Don't worry. You'll be safe here. Things might get dangerous though if you're seen out in public, so I can't let you come with me. If something happens, call me immediately, Nie Yan comforted. All right, hurry back, Xie Yao said after a hint of hesitation. She knew Nie Yan had urgent matters to attend to. After bidding Xie Yao farewell, Nie Yan got in his car and sped off to his family's company. The Nie family company was flourishing under Father Nie's leadership. Having set up 3 subsidiaries and rebranded to the name World Block, business operations were booming, and they were trending to become a large financial group. More recently, thanks to Nie Yan's introduction, Father Nie and Tuoba Time had cooperated together in taking a large bite out of Tuoba Hongya's operations, with World Block reaping the lion's share of the benefits. In addition to this, World Block had also acquired a 3% stake in the Century Financial Group. Though seemingly insignificant at first glance, it was actually fairly considerable, given Cao Shu, the head of the Century Financial Group, only controlled a 52% stake in the company. The sudden rise of World Block was drawing eyes, especially for their astonishing growth in the virtual reality space, which left many green with envy. The War God tribe controlled 5 strongholds, of which 3 were operated by World Block while the rights to the other 2 were sold to 2 close business partners. Those real-world business districts were raking in a huge sum of money for World Block every day. If the War God tribe could maintain this explosive growth, as the number of strongholds under their control increased and conviction became more and more popular, their prospects would be unlimited. The War God tribe was directly connected to Asskickers United. As long as Asskickers United didn't collapse, the War God tribe's position in Nisode was secured. Furthermore, since Asskickers United belonged to Nie Yan, the War God tribe would never have to worry about their alliance falling apart. As Asskickers United captured more and more strongholds, Nie Yan was also planning to give the development rights of some of them to World Block. Given 5 years' time, the World Block's foundation would be extremely stable. The World Block's reception hall was quite spacious and decorated lavishly. Father Nie and a shareholder happened to be passing through. They were followed by more than 20 bodyguards. At this moment, a young man dressed in casual clothes walked in through the main entrance. He looked around 28 years old and had a scary-looking scar on his forehead. His gait was stable, and he had a fierce aura about him. The person who had come in was Bayonet. He walked up to the reception. The receptionist was a young woman in her 20s. Her face blanched when she saw Bayonet. She unconsciously took a step back. However, she quickly recovered and greeted him with a polite smile. "Sir, what can I help you with today?" His scary appearance made her feel extremely uneasy. Bayonet had braved through countless battles. His body was stained with the blood of who knew how many lives. It was to the extent he couldn't suppress the killing intent coming off him even if he wanted to. "I'm looking for someone. Is there a person called Nie Yan here?" Bayonet said in a gruff voice. He was loud enough to be overheard by Father Nie. Father Nie wrinkled his brows. As he glanced at Bayonet, he could instantly tell this was a dangerous individual. He was once a soldier, a profession similar in nature to a mercenary, so he at least had this bit of insight. This youth was definitely no weaker than him. He could even smell the thick scent of blood coming off him from more than 6 meters away. Why would such a person be looking for Nie Yan? Father Nie couldn't help but feel a hint of unease. If the other party had malicious intentions, his son might be in danger. He pondered for a moment before whispering to the several bodyguards beside him, "Don't let him go anywhere. Subdue him." Father Nie wanted to take this person into custody first, then ask Nie Yan about the situation after. 6 muscular bodyguards walked over to Bayonet. They were all seasoned military veterans with ample combat experience. While Bayonet was inquiring with the receptionist, he detected a small group of people approaching him. He turned around and spotted 6 bodyguards walking over with obvious hostility in their eyes. He knitted his brows while his eyes narrowed. Did Nie Yan send them to test him out? Regardless, the solution was rather simple. All Bayonet had to do was put them in their place. When the receptionist saw things going south, she immediately backed away in fear. She had no idea what was happening. The 6 bodyguards surrounded Bayonet, leaving no opening for escape. "Who are you? What did you come here for?" one of the bodyguards asked. His skin was tan dark, and he stood around 190 centimeters tall. "I'm looking for a person called Nie Yan," Bayonet replied. "Got any identification on you?" the bodyguard asked in a rude tone. He was clearly looking to pick a fight. "None." Bayonet smirked. He had already scanned the surroundings. Nie Yan wasn't in the vicinity. These 6 bodyguards were probably sent by someone else. The bodyguard reached out to grab Bayonet's shoulder. "How about you accompany us to the police station?" At this moment, Bayonet reacted with lightning speed. He dodged the hand struck the bodyguard in the armpit. Before the bodyguard could react, he felt a numb feeling as his arm went limp. Just as the bodyguard wanted to retaliate, Bayonet chopped him in the neck. With a thud sound, the large muscular bodyguard collapsed unconscious on the floor. Seeing their comrade taken down, the 5 other bodyguards immediately pounced into action. Their movements were skilled and decisive. Their military combat experience was clearly put out on display. Like a nimble rabbit, Bayonet kneed one of the bodyguards in the stomach. The pain from the hit was enough to make the bodyguard break out in tears as he curled up on the floor like a cooked shrimp. A simple knee definitely couldn't inflict him with so much pain. Bayonet's movements were too fierce, and the force behind each of his attacks were too powerful. Palm, elbow, knee, these parts of the body when used by Bayonet resembled sharp weapons. None of Bayonet's actions carried any superfluous movements. He only needed 1 or 2 moves to incapacitate a bodyguard. The places he struck them were the weakest spots on the human body. His attacks were simple but effective. It didn't take long for all 6 bodyguards to hit the floor, breathing and groaning in pain. Bayonet stood there with a sneer on his face. If he hadn't taken the identity of these people into consideration, going easy on them, he could have finished things much sooner. Taking down 6 people in 16 seconds, this was by far his slowest record. Bayonet had long since lost interest in these kind of ordinary fights. What he trained in was murder. 1 hit, 1 kill was his true mantra. Father Nie's eyes widened in shock after witnessing this scene. He was well aware of the strength of the 6 bodyguards. If they were to enter a fighting tournament, he estimated they would at least place in the front rankings. Yet they had dropped like flies in front of this person. Father Nie still had more than 10 bodyguards behind him. However, he understood that no matter how many he sent, the outcome would still be the same. These bodyguards were no match for Bayonet. Father Nie had only met one person this strong before, and that was his company leader in the army. That man had formerly belonged to a special forces unit called Blood Stingers. Even if Father Nie went up himself, he probably wouldn't last more than 3 moves against Bayonet. Bayonet glanced in their direction, staring at Father Nie and the 15 people around him. His gaze was filled with disdain, conveying it'd be beneath him to take action against them. Father Nie rang up Nie Yan's phone and informed him of what just happened. "Son, tell me what's going on." "Oh, that's a friend of mine. I asked him to become my bodyguard. I'll be there in a moment," Nie Yan replied. Father Nie was taken aback. Someone this skilled would definitely rank as an elite among elites in the army. If they were hired to be a bodyguard for the head of a financial group, their yearly salary would definitely cross 100 million yen. How did his son convince such a person to become his personal bodyguard? He was truly stunned. Father Nie had a mind to give Nie Yan a good scolding for his nonchalant attitude over the phone. An expert of Bayonet's caliber was practically a character on the level of a national treasure. Someone like this couldn't be sought after, only discovered by happenstance. If Nie Yan's negligence led to Bayonet leaving, it would be a huge loss for them. Father Nie looked at Bayonet in a new light. The skills Bayonet displayed just a moment ago were clearly honed on the battlefield. With someone like that as a bodyguard, he could rest assured that his son would be safe. For peace of mind like that, he was willing to pay any price. Those in the military always held strength in high regard. With strength one could obtain the respect of others. After confirming that Bayonet hadn't come intending to do harm, a born soldier like Father Nie couldn't help but be impressed by his skill. Son, hire him as your bodyguard. It doesn't matter how much he asks for. I'll transfer over 300 million yen to your account right now. If it still isn't enough, ask me for more. For the sake of recruiting Bayonet, Father Nie was willing to break the bank. World Block raked in a ton of profit every day from their various businesses. But an expert like Bayonet couldn't be found even if you had the money. An opportunity like this couldn't be missed. Bayonet was absolutely worth the price. Nie Yan chuckled. He had always intended to give Bayonet the best treatment. Just when he was wondering how he was going to get the money, Father Nie directly transferred over the funds. By the time the conversation was over, Nie Yan arrived at World Block's headquarters. He entered through the main entrance and walked up to Bayonet. Several girls from the reception desk had already taken care of the 6 fallen bodyguards, helping them up and taking them away. We meet again. Nie Yan smiled at Bayonet. Bayonet held up his palm with an indifferent expression. Hold up. Before I become your bodyguard, I have a couple of requests. 1. Prepare a villa for me in the Cloudwater district. 2. I want a yearly salary of 100 million yen. Let's see if you're willing to agree to these terms first. Sure, no problem. I can prepare it in 2 days. If you're still not satisfied, feel free to ask for more, Nie Yan answered with a straightforward smile. With his father footing the bill, he had no need to worry about these matters. Bayonet never expected Nie Yan to agree to his conditions so quickly. Although pay as a mercenary was pretty good, the associated risks were also high. More importantly, he had those brothers who were injured in combat to think about. It was fortunate they had evacuated in time during the Xie Yao kidnapping incident. Else who knew what sort of danger would have befallen them. He had some concerns in his heart. He had no qualms with throwing his own life away. However, he wouldn't be able to live with himself if his brothers ended up dying because of him. Acting as a bodyguard for Nie Yan was probably the safest choice. All right, it's settled then. Bayonet nodded. Here's to a fruitful relationship. Nie Yan smiled. Father Nie walked over to Nie Yan. Bayonet returned to his usual stone-faced expression. Son, how about having your friend wait in the lounge? Father Nie said, glancing at Bayonet. He's not big on meeting new people, Nie Yan replied in a slightly helpless tone. Father Nie nodded. It was fairly normal for experts like Bayonet to have such a temperament. He didn't touch on the subject any further. Come to the conference room in a bit. We're having an important meeting, and I want you to be there. He turned around and headed to the conference room with a different shareholder following behind him. After Father Nie departed, Nie Yan brought out a digital contract. The two signed their names. This was proof of Bayonet's servitude. A 100 million yen bodyguard contract. Bayonet was perhaps one of the few people in the world skilled enough to justify this kind of price. Nie Yan looked over the contract. Both of them had signed their names, stamped their fingerprints, and provided their DNA. Everything was recorded digitally. However, Bayonet had simply signed off with his alias instead of his real name. I forgot to ask, what's your real name? Nie Yan didn't feel too comfortable calling Bayonet by his alias in everyday life. My surname is Wang, no first name. Just call me by my alias, Bayonet replied. He wasn't willing to explain any further regarding his name. Nie Yan thought for a moment, but stopped pursuing the topic any further. Nie Yan had Uncle Lin help Bayonet find a villa in Cloudwater, preferably one close to his own. After Nie Yan finished taking care of everything, he turned to Bayonet. Let's head to the conference room for a listen. Bayonet didn't object and obediently followed behind Nie Yan. The two walked toward the conference room. After passing through a long corridor, Nie Yan and Bayonet entered World Block's conference room. It was already packed with more than 100 people. They were currently having a heated discussion about something. Nie Yan scanned the room. The number of big shots gathered here had increased exponentially. He spotted a few familiar faces such as the leader of Icewind, Frozen Pros, the leader of Azure Dragon, Annihilation, and so on. Ah Chen was the person in charge of the meeting. After listening on the sidelines for a bit, Nie Yan roughly understood what they were arguing about. The War God tribe was in a rough spot right now. The 5 guilds under the Tuoba family had launched a fierce assault and nearly captured several of their strongholds. If the strongholds fell, all the money and resources they had invested up until now would go to waste. At this point, the conflict between World Block and Tuoba Hongye had already come to a head. Tuoba Hongye wasn't sparing any effort to annihilate the War God tribe. Still recuperating from their previous conflict, Ass-Kickers United was in no position to participate in another war, lest they risk total collapse. The War God tribe had only recently risen to power. Facing the combined might of the Tuoba family's 5 guilds was still a bit too much for them. Some infighting had also broken out within the War God tribe. A group of people were vehemently demanding Ass-Kickers United take action. Nie Yan quietly listened to the people arguing in the conference room. A short, bald man in his 30s with a somewhat heavy-set build rose up from his seat. We have no hope of winning against the Tuoba family's 5 guilds with our current forces. If Ass-Kickers United isn't willing to take action, we might as well just call it quits. We're outnumbered 6-1. We have a better chance at winning the lottery than this war. His gaze was brimming with disdain. He felt Ah Chen had no clue about what sort of situation they were in, and was just blindly issuing orders. This Baldy was called Rubble, the leader of a gaming organization with close to 3,000 members. He had brought 5 people with him to this meeting today. After the Baldy finished speaking, the several people around him joined in by jeering and heckling. The people in the conference room descended into murmured whispering as the overall mood of the meeting turned dreary. Frozen Pro stood up and stared at the Baldy. Even though we've been forced to turtle in our strongholds, we should have no issues holding out for the time being. How can you expect Ass-Kickers United to take action when they've just come out of a grueling war themselves? Why should others go out of their way to help us? Having this kind of debate is meaningless. We should focus the discussion on how we go about preserving our strongholds. How long do you think we can keep this stalemate up for? I'd say we'd be lucky to last another 5 or 6 days. If the Tuoba family gets their hands on a few armored catapults, we're finished. I know the chances are slim, seeing as they've only appeared during the Crypt's stronghold siege, but we can't rule out the possibility. Even without them, their siege crossbows can't be underestimated either. In 5 days when we can't hold out any longer, what then? Do you think we can bear the losses? The outlook for the War God tribe was grim. It was going to be incredibly difficult to not lose a single stronghold. Each one was being sieged by one of the 5 guilds under the Tuoba family, leaving the War God tribe with no choice but to spread themselves thin if they wanted to defend them all. On top of this, the enemy already heavily outnumbered them. Nie Yan walked up to the front of the conference room, then turned his attention to the Baldy. What a pathetic display, whining about giving up simply because no one is bailing you out, when you could be thinking of a way to resolve the situation yourself instead. It's not like the underdog never comes out on top. Isn't Ass-Kickers United a prime example of this? No matter how bad the situation gets, you must never falter. If the guild was built on cowards like you, the Tuoba family wouldn't even need to destroy the War God tribe. You lot would do it yourselves with all the infighting. Brat, who do you think you are to lecture me? The Baldly loudly cursed. His face was red with anger. Boss, he's the son of the chairman, a person beside him reminded. The Baldy immediately tempered his anger. After all, World Block was his financial backing. He couldn't push things too far with the Nie family. However, under the gaze of so many people, he also wasn't willing to lose face. So what if he's the chairman's son? What difference does that make? He's still a stinking brat, thinking he can run his mouth just because he plays the game a little, when he knows nothing about the situation between the War God tribe and the Tuoba family. What qualifications does he have to lecture me? Why don't you just run on along and let the adults talk? Nie Yan sneered. Qualifications. I'm the guild leader of Ass-Kickers United, Nirvana Flame. Is that good enough for you? All at once the conference room turned deathly silent. One could even hear a pin drop. Everyone was staring at Nie Yan with an incredulous expression. The identity of Nirvana Flame had always been a mystery. His position in Kalor was unsurpassed, and in the entire Viridian Empire, he was also a legendary figure. With his own strength, he had established Ass-Kickers United, sweeping through every obstacle in his path and forcing the likes of Sapphire Shrine, Holy Empire, and Radiant Sacred Flame to submit. In the present day, his presence could be felt all throughout Kalor. His glorious achievements gained the admiration of the entire player base. Many people spent countless hours trying to figure out the identity of Nirvana Flame, and what sort of background he had. Who could have known that such a legendary figure was standing right in front of them in the flesh? Those on the side of the Century Financial Group and Angel Corps had recently obtained some information on Nie Yan. His identity was already on the verge of being exposed, and would probably be fully uncovered within the next few weeks. However, since he had been accepted into the top military academy, the Century Financial Group wouldn't rashly lay hands on him. Besides, he also had an expert like Bayonet by his side. Even if he announced his identity to the public, so what? He had nothing to fear. The Baldy had a stupefied expression on his face. If Nirvana Flame wasn't qualified, who was? In front of Nirvana Flame, his status as the leader of the Black Dragon Gaming Organization wasn't worth slag on the ground. Holy shit. Ass-Kickers United and the War God tribe are actually one and the same. World Block is really impressive. After a long silence, a large commotion broke out in the conference room. Everyone started discussing excitedly. Even though they were always aware the War God tribe and Ass-Kickers United were allied together, they also worried about what would happen if the relationship fell apart. The War God tribe currently didn't have the power to contend against the Tuoba family. If Ass-Kickers United was adamant on refusing to take action, there was nothing that could be done. This was why they didn't really believe in the future of the War God tribe. Such doubts instantly dissolved with the revelation that Nirvana Flame was Nie Yan, leaving behind only feelings of shock and awe. Mad Rogue Nirvana Flame was a name that rang like thunder throughout the entire Viridian Empire. He was a god in Kalor. After the siege of the Crypt Stronghold, Ass-Kickers United had cleared away all competition in Kalor. Although they were currently only a level 5 guild, a far cry from level 7 guilds like Alliance of Mages and Divine Protectors, with Kalor enormous population and growth potential, surpassing them was only a matter of time. Ass-Kickers United had backed the War God tribe from the start. So, everyone believed World Block had negotiated a deal, perhaps even for real-world money, to get their help. No one thought Ass-Kickers United was actually a part of World Block. They previously believed World Block was only an upstart that started investing in the virtual reality industry. With a lot of money but no experience, it was destined to fail. The people here today only came along for the ride when they joined the War God tribe. In any case, there was still pay to be had. Since World Block had the money, they would stick it out. When the day came World Block could no longer support them, they'd simply disperse. As a result, they didn't care too much about the growth of the War God tribe. Many people were only there for the benefits. In times of war, they would only put in the bare minimal effort or make themselves scarce. Nie Yan's announcement caused this haughty group to internally re-evaluate World Block. Not only did it own the guild that controlled Kalor, but it even wanted to develop the War God tribe to absorb Nisode. What ambition! If they actually toppled the Tuoba family in Nisode, the two largest cities in the Viridian Empire would be in their hands. With only the last step left in such a grand endeavor, who could still consider World Block merely a naive upstart? If they truly won the battle for Nisode, World Block would completely dominate the Viridian Empire with control over the two largest cities, more than 30 strongholds, and a full 22% of the empire's population. Such power was no joke. Their eyes were filled with reverence as they gazed at Nie Yan. Although it wasn't clear whether his achievements were only possible thanks to the backing of World Block, the name of Nirvana Flame was enough to warrant their admiration. Nie Yan looked around the conference room before settling his gaze on the Baldy. With eyes that radiated a freezing cold, he said, World Block spent money inviting you lot here to help resolve problems and help grow the War God tribe. If Ass-Kickers United has to take action every time there's the slightest hitch, what's the point of keeping you guys around? You receive a salary from World Block every day yet do nothing but laze around. You have the luxury of being able to hide behind stronghold walls and yet whine about not being able to hold out. All the while none of you are willing to put in any effort. Am I not wrong in my assessment that World Block has hired a bunch of spoiled brats? Not willing to work, always complaining, I want you all to scram. None of you are fit for the job. World Block still has Ass-Kickers United. Seriously, grumbling about dealing with a bunch of small fry like the Tuoba family. I don't even want to think of what might happen if you were to face real opponents like Alliance of Mages, Divine Protectors, or Angel Corps. You're all better off going home. World Block has no use for trash like you. Nie Yan's speech greatly humiliated the Baldy, but this last line caused him to fume with anger. However, despite being called a spoiled brat, he couldn't refute Nirvana Flame and was left to swallow his rage. Not just the Baldy, but other people were getting worked up as well. After all, those complaining about not being able to hold out any longer were not limited to his group. Aren't you going a little too far? Right. The Tuoba family outnumbers us 6-1. Of course we can't hold out. Everyone in the conference room got riled up and started refuting Nie Yan's words. In the early days when Ass-Kickers United was just founded, Victorious Return was tens of times larger than us. Weren't they crushed just the same? Stop making excuses. Any random member from Ass-Kickers United has more guts than you cowardly lot combined. Nie Yan swept his gaze over the people trying to refute him. All of them were silenced by Nie Yan's words. None of them could come up with anything to say back. Yet their hearts were filled with objections. Nie Yan's provocative words immediately incited the anger of everyone present, including those with relatively mild tempers such as Frozen Pros and Annihilation. Even saints had limits to their patience. Once their anger was released, they also started cursing. What's so amazing about Nirvana Flame? You're nothing but an arrogant prick. At this point, they resorted to petty personal attacks. In regards to matters related to the War God tribe, they could only avoid the subject. In their hearts, they had to admit they were no match for Ass-Kickers United. This was an ironclad fact. As a result, their arguments appeared weak. Fucking hell. He thinks he's so great just because he's good at a game. It looked like the meeting was about to go out of control. Ah Chen never thought Nie Yan would speak such provocative words. He anxiously signaled Nie Yan to stop. However, Nie Yan pretended not to notice. At his wit's end, Ah Chen turned to Father Nie, who faintly smiled and indicated for him not to interfere. Father Nie wore a gratified expression on his face. Nie Yan had finally grown up, with his own way of handling business. Although Father Nie didn't agree with using such extreme measures, he had to admit this was a good way of resolving the problem. He was also starting to lose his patience with these people in the room. I'll leave behind these words today. Those who want to claim they aren't trash, speak with your actions, not words. Ass-Kickers United won't provide help to the War God tribe. If you guys win, I'll take back my words and personally apologize to all of you. If you guys really can't hold out in the end, my Ass-Kickers United has no choice but to step in. Not a single coward exists in my guild. Whether it's Victorious Return, Bloodlust Blades, or the Tuoba family, even if they outnumber us by more than 50 to 1, when they meet us, they'll still piss their pants while running away. We especially aren't so cowardly as to give up before the real battle even begins. If those kind of people aren't trash, what are they? Nie Yan said in disdain. Many of the players in the conference room only came because World Block had spent hefty sums to invite them. They were highly skilled players. These types of people naturally had their own pride, but Nie Yan completely disregarded them. He didn't even try to hide his utter contempt. Their previous respect for Nirvana Flame had morphed into anger, but they still had to face the facts. Frozen Pro stood up and addressed Nie Yan. Although we aren't as strong as Ass-Kickers United and don't sweep through every obstacle like you, I can solemnly declare we definitely are not trash. Oh, really now? Your words are certainly pretty, but how are you going to prove it? Nie Yan chuckled coldly. Let me make some things clear to you. I built up Ass-Kickers United from the ground up by myself. Although I'm the son of World Block's chairman, Ass-Kickers United has never once relied on World Block. Ass-Kickers United won't change any of their plans just because of what's happening on the side of the War God tribe. The War God tribe was brought up by you guys. If it falls, its existence has no value. World Block is perfectly fine just having Ass-Kickers United. When the time comes, all the trash that piled up will be cleared out. All the higher-ups from the War God tribe gathered in the conference room were like enraged beasts. Even though they understood Nie Yan was purposefully riling them up, they couldn't suppress the anger in their hearts. After all, how could one stay calm after being called trash? Their only option was to wash themselves clean of this disgrace by defeating the Tuoba family, otherwise, this label would continue to follow them for the rest of their lives. At that point, they would no longer have the face to show themselves in conviction or even the larger virtual reality gaming industry. They couldn't back down now. One day, we're going to make you apologize to everyone in this conference room. Annihilation, who had been quiet this whole time, finally spoke up. He decided to throw caution to the wind. If everyone gave it their all, he refused to believe they couldn't defeat the Tuoba family. Although the Tuoba family outnumbered them 6 to 1, numbers didn't decide everything. Ass-Kickers United was a prime example. The War God tribe's current circumstances were a lot better than that of Ass-Kickers United in the past. If others could do it, why couldn't they? Else they really would be nothing but trash. I'll be waiting. Nie Yan looked at the fervent crowd. Sometimes, rage could be a type of power. Their previously pathetic mentalities were burnt away. They had been forced into a corner, and now Annihilation's words eliminated all paths of retreat. With no choice but to fight in the added motivation of anger, these people would be many times stronger than before. In reality, these people weren't any bit inferior to those on the side of the Tuoba family. What they lacked was simply the will to fight. Nie Yan had said what needed to be said. He wouldn't need to be concerned about the conflict between the War God tribe and the Tuoba family for the time being. If the War God tribe really couldn't hold on any longer, he would step in to clean up the mess. The words he had just spoken were indeed a bit extreme. If these people really could take down the Tuoba family without any help, he was willing to apologize. Nie Yan and Bayonet left the conference room. Bayonet commented wistfully, "You sly fox. You didn't promise them a dime and yet these people are going to throw down their lives for your cause. If they lose, you can just clean up while the Tuoba family's forces are exhausted. If they win, even better. You lose nothing and just have to apologize while still gaining Nisode. If I'd known you were so wily, I wouldn't have fallen for your trick." Nie Yan chuckled, not minding Bayonet's words. Drastic times called for drastic measures. Nie Yan arranged for Bayonet to live in a neighboring villa. That way, if trouble ever broke out, he could instantly rush over with a simple phone call. With an expert like Bayonet present, the safety of Nie Yan's family was basically assured. As the two chatted, Nie Yan learned Bayonet had 6 brothers with whom he traveled from job to job, battlefield to battlefield. Though all of them were injured to some extent, 2 were inflicted with particularly nasty viruses which required copious amounts of medication to relieve their pain. The medical treatment required for them to make a complete recovery would cost at least 500 million yen. Moreover, a specialized military doctor had to perform the procedure. Bayonet would spend almost all the money he earned as a mercenary buying the medication necessary to help them live. By now, all hope for a full recovery had about vanished. Bayonet could only continue to persevere while praying for a miracle. Nie Yan wondered if he should help Bayonet cure his brothers. Given Bayonet's personality, he certainly wouldn't forget the favor. Bayonet was a person who placed great emphasis on trust and camaraderie. This was something Nie Yan held in the highest regard. After finishing his business at the company, Nie Yan returned home. When he walked into his room, Xie Yao appeared to be busy with something. "I had my father order me a game capsule. What do you think?" Xie Yao pointed to the brand new game capsule in the room. Nie Yan noticed a second game capsule in his room. It was the same model as his own, except the colors were different. One was silver white, and the other was light blue. These 2 game capsules were placed adjacent to each other against the wall. Game capsules placed in close proximity of each other could be linked. If something happened to a person in one of the game capsules, they could directly communicate with the person in the other game capsule. Nice. It'll be much more convenient with 2 game capsules. Nie Yan chuckled. Like this, the 2 of them could know what the other was doing inside the game at any time. Xie Yao pursed her lips into a smile. Now we can talk with each other whenever we want. With the 2 game capsules placed together, even if they were in zones inside the game that sealed all communication, they could still talk to each other. "How are your quests going?" Nie Yan asked in a guilty tone. He had been so preoccupied with his own matters lately that he never bothered to ask about her situation. "The third part of the Karsi's Blessing questline is too difficult. I need to wait until I'm at a higher level to give it a try." Do you remember the list you shared with our contracted members, the one with the locations of sub-legendary and legendary grade equipment? Well, I've triggered the quest for the Saintess Christina set. I'm already doing it right now. I have to take a trip to another city tomorrow, Xie Yao said. One thing that bothered her was how did Nie Yan get his hands on such a list. It had the locations of more than 300 quest triggers, none of which could be found online. If the top players of Ass-Kickers United could obtain the sub-legendary and legendary grade equipment from these locations, they would become terrifying existences, leaving others guilds trembling in fear. Such equipment would help them reach the apex. Nie Yan had spent quite a few brain cells sifting through the memories of his past life for the sake of recalling the locations of these pieces of equipment. Though many memories resurfaced bit by bit, some still remained fuzzy. So, he could only give general directions, having the players from Ass-Kickers United find the exact locations for themselves. In the previous timeline, what players loved to chat about the most was undoubtedly equipment, who had the better equipment, where it was found, whose equipment was sub-legendary grade, how much it was worth, its history, origin, and so on. Nie Yan took on a lot of hired work back then. He frequently ran dungeons with different teams. So, he got to hear a great many stories. He would also occasionally look at the equipment players posted on the forum. The vast majority of which were sub-legendary and even legendary grade, and were already bound so the owners would never have to worry about them dropping. The stats of every piece were drool-worthy. Nie Yan could only gaze enviously at the equipment of these people back then. However, things were different in this life. He finally had the ability to collect them for himself. Nie Yan had no illusions about his people being the first to find every single piece of equipment on that list. But even if it were only a tenth of them, it would allow the top players from Ass-Kickers United to skyrocket in power. The Saintess Christina set was one of the godly equipment sets of the previous timeline. The last two bosses at the end required thousands of high-level players to defeat it. It was a notoriously difficult set to obtain. Back then, a famous female holy magister called Night Autumn Jade only managed to collect 3 pieces. The later stages of the questline were too hard for her to progress. Even then, she was still regarded as a peak existence. After all, 3 pieces of legendary grade equipment was nothing to laugh about. One could imagine how powerful she would be if she had the full set. She had shared the details of the later stages on the forums. Not being able to complete this godly set became her lifelong regret. Nie Yan never thought Xie Yao would pick this quest. He could probably gather the players of Ass-Kickers United to help her with the later stages of the quest. However, she was pretty much on her own with the initial stages since there wasn't much they could do to help. Good luck. I hope you'll obtain the full Saintess Christina set, Nie Yan cheered Xie Yao on. He felt completing this set would be an incredibly difficult task for her. Nie Yan, you have to work hard too. I know you have a lot of things on your shoulders, with everyone in Ass-Kickers United relying on you. You don't have to worry about me inside the game. I can take care of myself. I just wish I could share the burden with you, even if there's not a lot I can do, Xie Yao said apologetically. Xie Yao knew Nie Yan had to look for a large amount of equipment and items every day to increase his own strength as well as the guild's. All the while he still had to scramble everywhere to gather the funds to support the guild. None of these things were easy. Although Ass-Kickers United had gathered a large number of elites, they had yet to fully mature. Guilds like Alliance of Mages, Divine Protectors, and Angel Corps had risen to power without facing any hardship. They were established powers that had existed for 5 years or longer, some even for over 10. As they went from one virtual reality game to the next, they accumulated many loyal and dedicated fans along the way. Once Conviction was released, they joined as a collective. It didn't take long for them to establish themselves, rapidly expanding their influence and recruiting players en masse. Ass-Kickers United had only established themselves weeks after Conviction's release. Their foundation was shaky, and they faced battle after battle. If it weren't for Nie Yan keeping everything together, they would have long since collapsed. Only when Kalor was unified did Ass-Kickers United truly embark on a steady path, and only then did the elites of the guild obtain a stable growth environment. It wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that Nie Yan had single-handedly kept Ass-Kickers United afloat. Of course, Guowai and the other administrative members had also put in quite a great deal of work. But whether it was the battle at Kiln Firewoods or the Crypt Stronghold siege, Ass-Kickers United wouldn't exist today if it weren't for Nie Yan's efforts. One could imagine how much he contributed to the guild. It's not that bad. When I log in I just grind a few mobs, collect some equipment, occasionally get in a few fights, and every week or so I make a trip to the underworld. Nie Yan chuckled. Although it was true he didn't have enough time to do all the things he wanted, it wasn't as hectic and stressful as Xie Yao made it out to be. Xie Yao cast a doubtful gaze. Everyone in Ass-Kickers United witnessed daily all that Nie Yan did for the guild. Even if he himself claimed he wasn't busy, no one would believe him no matter what. Seeing Xie Yao's expression, Nie Yan knew there was nothing he could do to explain. He glanced at the clock and said, "It's about time to get back into the game." Xie Yao nodded. The two stepped inside their respective game capsules. When Nie Yan entered the game, he received a notification. Yao Yao is playing Conviction. Nie Yan was automatically notified of Xie Yao entering the game. Nie Yan faintly smiled. A warm feeling sprouted up in his heart from knowing Xie Yao was right beside him. Nie Yan summoned his Faulkner warhorse, then set off for the Hilton stronghold, galloping across the wide open grasslands. About 20 minutes later, Nie Yan received word from Guowai that King of the World had applied to join Ass-Kickers United. From this day forward, Ass-Kickers United would have another powerful expert among their ranks. Nie Yan gave King of the World a call. "When you have the time, go run dungeons with the others. I'll introduce you to a team," Nie Yan said. King of the World had only recently joined, so he was unfamiliar with the players of Ass-Kickers United. He would have to slowly get to know everyone. "I don't have any interest in running dungeons with others," King of the World replied. Nie Yan recalled that King of the World was a loner in the previous timeline too. Although those brothers of his were skilled, they were far from being able to keep up with him. "I see, so be it. How about we do quests together instead?" Nie Yan said. The best way to deal with people like this was to have them quickly develop a sense of belonging to the guild. "My brothers have all moved into the villa in Jadewater." "Thank you," King of the World said after a moment of silence. King of the World sounded a bit stiff. He had never once thanked anybody. Nie Yan was his first. "No need to thank me. Isn't that what we agreed on in the contract? As per our agreement, whether as Bayonet or King of the World, I will be your shadow from this day forward. If you need me to do anything, don't hesitate to give out your command. This is my duty as a mercenary," King of the World said. His words were frank. As long as Nie Yan had the money, he would carry out the work. Shadow. A shadow, Nie Yan muttered. What he required the most was precisely a shadow. There were many things he couldn't do due to a lack of time. A shadow could do those things on his behalf, along with the dirty work he couldn't do himself. Nie Yan had still been holding on to the notion that he and Bayonet were going to interact with each other as friends. However, Bayonet didn't make friends with anyone. In his field, one more friend meant one more liability. He treated his relationship with Nie Yan as purely business, nothing more. Nie Yan paid him money, and he would carry out the work. Friendship, getting along with others, such companionship was meaningless to him. His several brothers were comrades in arms who had traveled with him from battlefield to battlefield. As for anyone else, he treated them coldly and indifferently, including Nie Yan. Bayonet's words reminded Nie Yan that their relationship was purely professional. Nie Yan understood Bayonet's principle. Since it was like this, there was nothing else to say. He would treat Bayonet like an ordinary mercenary for the time being. It's like you said. From this day forward, you are my shadow. I'll provide you with the locations of some legendary grade equipment. I want you to start collecting them and give me a progress report every day before logging off. As for the 5th volume of the Book of Order, if someone obtains the last chapter, do not try to snatch it. Avoid engaging at all costs. Nie Yan said. He had already changed history by triggering the release of the Buried History expansion early after completing the Glimpse of Darkness. Bayonet had 5 chapters from the 5th volume of the Book of Order in his possession. If he obtained the last chapter, he would trigger the release of a whole nother expansion, and history would be irreversibly changed even more. Nie Yan wanted to utilize the experience from his past life to grow as powerful as possible. So when the day came that history was completely changed, he would have the strength to face the unknown. Bayonet was somewhat taken aback. Didn't collecting all the chapters of a volume give a legendary grade item? Why did Nie Yan want him to hold out on collecting the last chapter? Even though Bayonet had his doubts, he had his code as a mercenary. He would never question the employer's reasoning. He would carry out whatever he was instructed to do. Understood. Bayonet nodded. I'll let you go about your business then. Nie Yan hung up the call. It would take Bayonet at least 5 days to finish the task Nie Yan had assigned him. When the quality of his gear improved, Nie Yan would have him collect even rarer items. Bayonet immediately set off to work. After riding on his Faulkner warhorse for about 50 minutes, a grand stronghold appeared on the horizon. It resembled a giant dragon coiled around the ravines of the wasteland. The stronghold's walls, constructed out of huge stone blocks, stood over 20 meters tall. It was rumored the leader of the Viridian Empire, Jebia the Great, had gathered hundreds of thousands of people back in the day for the sake of building this stronghold. Like ants making a nest, they transported the highest quality materials from all over the land and slowly built it up block by block. This was a formidable super stronghold with unrivaled defenses. It was also home to more than 100,000 people, a population on par with most cities. These thick walls defended against the evil beings that flooded out of the underworld every year, forming the Viridian Empire's strongest defensive line. Nie Yan spurred his Faulkner warhorse to go even faster, galloping at full speed towards the Hilton stronghold, where he could receive his reward for slaying the legendary necromancer Nadago. Meanwhile, trouble was brewing over in Kalor. 2 players from Angel Corps emerged from the Kalor transfer area. One was an elven thief fully clad in sub-legendary grade equipment. He wore a forest green vest made out of vines and had 2 ivory daggers which flickered with a green luster holstered on his waist. The other player was an orc warrior with pale yellowish skin. He was tall, muscular, and built like an ox. He carried 2 giant 2-handed great swords on his back. The blades were broad, looking like heavy slabs of metal. Berserkers had a unique trait that allowed them to dual-wield 2-handed swords. Mad God, our mission is to lure Nirvana Flame out. Remember to save your trump cards. If we can defeat him, we'll be famous. The elven thief's eyes were burning with a strong fighting spirit. He couldn't help but get fired up every time he came across a powerful opponent. Don't worry, depraved. With the both of us working together, how could we possibly lose? Mad God laughed out heartily. If Nie Yan were here, he would immediately recognize these 2. Mad God, a level 63 orc warrior, ranked 2nd among all the orc warriors in the Satrine Empire. Depraved, a level 62 elven thief, ranked 3rd among all the thieves in the Satrine Empire. In the previous timeline, these 2 were some of the most famous players in the Satrine Empire. Their fame didn't lose out to the likes of Sun and Blade Light. These 2 players immediately attracted everyone's attention. Angel Corps had recently lost a war to Asskickers United. For them to appear in Kalor at a time like this was quite unusual. The information quickly made its way to Guo. After the news spread, Asskickers United's guild chat went into an uproar. Fucking hell. Those bastards from Angel Corps still dare to show their face here. Let's see if they have the guts to step out of the city. We'll slaughter them back to level 10. Brothers, keep an eye on them. As soon as they leave the city, let's surround them. Angel Corps had garnered a lot of resentment for their involvement in the Crypt Stronghold siege. As soon as the players from Asskickers United heard that people from Angel Corps had come again, they were naturally none too happy. Executive Guild Leader, what do you think they came to Kalor for? Paladin of the Elegy asked. I don't know yet. Dispatch a few people to keep an eye on them. If they do anything suspicious, report back to me immediately. Guo replied as unease creeped into his heart. These 2 people from Angel Corps definitely didn't come to Kalor with good intentions. However, they wouldn't be able to kick up any big waves with just the 2 of them. Nevertheless, he needed to report this to Nie Yan. Mad God and Depraved were strolling through the bustling streets of Kalor. Mad God glanced at the crowd of pedestrians moving around him. Kalor looks pretty lively. I wonder how many of these people actually belong to Asskickers United. I bet news of our arrival has already reached their ears. Truthfully speaking, Asskickers United really isn't simple. It's hard to imagine such a small guild that started late would rise up from the cracks between so many large guilds and unify all of Kalor, even pushing out victorious return. This Nirvana Flame is definitely quite the character, Depraved said with a hint of admiration. Even if they defeated Nie Yan, their achievements would never reach his level. Don't tell me you're afraid. Of course not. I admit he's skilled, but I've never been afraid of anyone. Everyone has their own allegiances, so it can't be helped. If Angel Corps wasn't enemies with Asskickers United, I would have liked to become his friend. As the 2 chatted, they arrived at the central square of Kalor. They went to the city governor's office and rented out a 100 by 100 meter area for 20 gold an hour. Afterwards, they set up a simple fence and created a makeshift arena. All the players in the surroundings were looking at them curiously, wondering what these 2 people from Angel Corps were up to. Among the crowd were many players from Asskickers United. The actions of Mad God and Depraved left them completely bewildered. What the hell are these 2 fellows scheming? Who knows? The players from Asskickers United were grumbling. If these 2 people didn't leave the city, there was nothing they could do to them. Even if they were the number 1 guild in Kalor, they still had to follow the rules. Everyone was paying close attention to Mad God and Depraved. After a while, the construction of the makeshift arena was finished. All right, we're ready to go. Post the announcement, Mad God said. Thinking about what was to come, the 2 couldn't help but get fired up. Still en route to the Hilton stronghold, Nie Yan suddenly received word from Guo Wai. An orc warrior and an elven thief. What did they come to Kalor for? Nie Yan wrinkled his brows. Just as he was about to give out the orders to continue watching over them, Guo Wai told him to quickly go check the forums. Nie Yan opened up the forums. A post on the Kalor boards was plastered right at the top of the front page. Mad Rogue, do you dare to fight? We've set up an arena in the central square. Ass Kickers United, if you have the guts, come and bring it on. Mad God, Depraved. Mad God and Depraved were quite famous. A simple search on the Satrine Empire forums would bring up many videos of their exploits. These two had come to Kalor specifically to challenge Nie Yan. This immediately became a hot topic for all visitors of the forums and subsequently the other players who got wind of it. The players from Ass Kickers United were infuriated. A provocative message was posted on the forums, and the target was their guild leader. Fuck, who the hell do they think they are, wanting to challenge the boss? Executive guild leader, let us teach them a lesson. Guo Wai glanced at the guild chat, then asked Nie Yan, what are your thoughts? I have something important to do at the Hilton stronghold. What about Smoke Stub, Blade Light, and them? What are they doing right now? Nie Yan said. If he had to answer the call of every Angel Core player that came looking for a fight, he'd run himself ragged. As the guild leader of Ass Kickers United, he didn't have much to gain from beating Mad God and Depraved. It was better to let others bask in the glory, and show everyone that Nirvana Flame wasn't the only strong player in Ass Kickers United. Smoke Stub and Blade Light are running Baneful Swamp right now. I estimate they won't be out for another 2 or 3 hours. Those two from Angel Core are pretty skilled. I don't think Smoke Stub and Blade Light can necessarily beat them, Guo Wai said. Mad God and Depraved stood at the top of the pyramid in the Satrine Empire, so they were in no way inferior to Blade Light and Smoke Stub. It could easily go either way. They're already running Baneful Swamp. Not bad, Nie Yan remarked with a hint of surprise. Baneful Swamp was the hardest level 60 dungeon. But it had great drops to match the difficulty, especially if you were looking for equipment with high poison resistance. When Blade Light and Smoke Stub get out, make them go up. As for who'll come out on top, we'll know when the time comes. They shouldn't be any weaker than those two. Nie Yan refused to believe Blade Light, Smoke Stub, and the others were any weaker than those two players from Angel Core. Most recently, the top players from Ass Kickers United were diligently leveling and improving the quality of their gear. The location list of sub-legendary and legendary grade equipment Nie Yan had provided them was an excellent motivator. None of them dared to dally, for fear of missing out. After class advancing, players could start building towards their endgame set. The higher the level, the more difficult it was to level up. Outstanding equipment, however, could reduce the amount of work needed. Ass Kickers United could only truly grow strong when their members improved both their level and the quality of their gear. Of course, Blade Light and Smoke Stub had better things to do than enter a pissing contest with Mad God and Depraved. However, since the other party had come knocking on their door, Ass Kickers United's reputation would be besmirched if they didn't answer the challenge. Mad God and Depraved would definitely be sent back with their faces beaten black and blue. Those two fools won't be kicking up a fuss for much longer. Nie Yan continued riding on towards the Hilton stronghold. Kalor Central Square. Mad God and Depraved setting up a makeshift arena had stirred up huge waves. Ass Kickers United was the representative guild of Kalor, and had a good majority of the populace's support. When outsiders from the Satrine Empire came here looking to pick a fight, it wasn't just an affront to Ass Kickers United but to the whole of Kalor. Every player in the city, not just those belonging to Ass Kickers United, was rushing over to defend Kalor honor. Such blatant disrespect would not be tolerated. Players started gathering in droves after the announcement was posted up on the forums. A large crowd reaching to far beyond the square formed around the makeshift arena. A few high-level players who were confident in their skills approached the makeshift arena. If you want to challenge the Mad Rogue, you'll have to beat us first. Our guild leader doesn't have the luxury to play around with any random fool that wants to pick a fight. A player from Ass Kickers United said in a disdainful tone. Right, you'll have to beat us first. The others echoed. Mad God glanced at the crowd, then turned to Depraved. What do you say? Shall we kill some time by taking on these guys? Of course, or else the Mad Rogue might not come out. Depraved nodded, an indifferent expression on his face. Me or you first? Mad God asked. It looked like he was itching for a fight. He loved nothing more in the world than beating weaklings. It was even better if they all came at him at once. I'll let you go first. Depraved had no interest in these players. No matter how many of them came, the result would be the same. PvPing them was a waste of time. Alright then, I could use a warm-up. Mad God walked up to the middle of the arena stage and started setting up the rules. There was no penalty for dying. Every participant would have to pay a 20 gold entry fee, and anyone that beat him would win 200 gold. After seeing the prize for winning, many players were eager to give it a try. This was a 1000% return on investment. The crowd started discussing excitedly. This Mad God is pretty famous in the Satrine Empire. I advise those under level 55 not to go up. You'll just be throwing your gold away, a person in the crowd warned. There were at least 10 in the crowd above level 55. More experts would probably be arriving soon. Mad God unsheathed his two great swords and pointed at the crowd with a cocky smirk on his face. So, which one of you wants to come up and get their ass kicked first? Some players were immediately enraged, wishing for nothing more than to rush up the stage and give him a good beating. Others remained calm and continued to observe. A great warrior called Lofty Sky Sword leapt up on the stage. Still riding the high of having recently class advanced, he felt like he could beat anybody. Fuck, he's way too arrogant. Boss Sky Sword, kill him. Sky Sword couldn't help but become smug after hearing the cheers from the crowd. Orc warriors could either class advance into Orc Great Berserkers or Orc Great Fighters. Mad God had chosen the latter. His class trait bonus gave him a boost to strength and increased the size of his physique. He was clearly larger than Sky Sword. The trait bonus of a human great warrior was more well-rounded, providing increases to balance, focus, and other stats, along with a tendon break mastery which increased the effects of the skill. It was roughly on par with that of an Orc Great Berserker. Just as Sky Sword wanted to say something, Mad God cut him off. Let's just get this over with, so I can get to the next guy. Why you? Sky Sword let out a roar and charged at Mad God. Humph. Mad God raised his two great swords and greeted the assault head-on. Players could tell on the first exchange which side held the advantage. Mad God rained down a torrent of slashes, immediately forcing Sky Sword on the back foot. Sky Sword tried his best to counter with a skill, but was interrupted every time. In a matter of seconds, Mad God sent him flying back and crashing into the ground. Mad God's domineering display shook the hearts of many in the crowd as they broke out in a cold sweat. He hadn't used any important skills, only simple slashes and kicks, yet thoroughly crushed Sky Sword. Next, Mad God said after looking over the crowd. After reviving, Sky Sword's face was dark as he left the stage in dejection. Many more class advanced players stepped up to the challenge. However, all of them were defeated without any synapse and sent walking off the stage in shame. The difference in strength was simply too great. In all of Kalor, very few players could go toe-to-toe with Mad God. No matter how many players went up, they would only serve as fodder. After defeating several dozen players in a row, Mad God grew even more arrogant. Are the players of Kalor really this weak? Come on, there has to be someone stronger out there, or else it really is a waste of my time. This only served to further infuriate the crowd. An uproar erupted on the forums. At this moment, every player in Kalor was looking to Ass-Kickers United. If they didn't rise up to the challenge, their reputation would definitely be tarnished. They waited and waited and waited, but there was still no movement from Ass-Kickers United. Why hasn't Ass-Kickers United shown up yet? Could it really be they're too afraid to accept the challenge? I'm not sure, but I heard Nirvana Flame and the other top players are busy running dungeons or questing. We'll probably have to wait until they're done. Rumors were springing up everywhere in Kalor. The players from Ass-Kickers United not showing up wasn't an issue for the time being. But as minutes turned into hours, their absence would become hard to defend. After all, Mad God and Depraved weren't prattling buffoons that could be ignored. Following several dozen consecutive victories, they had shown everyone their skill. Mad God had been the one fighting on the stage this whole time. After defeating 26 people in a row, Depraved still hadn't taken action. No one knew how strong he was, but he probably wasn't any weaker than his partner. The two definitely proved they had the strength to challenge Nirvana Flame. Among the defeated were even some of the most famous Kalor-based players. Mad God garnered quite a bit of limelight. Nie Yan was constantly monitoring the situation over in Kalor. From the videos, he could roughly gauge the strength of Mad God and Depraved. He just wasn't sure what tricks they had up their sleeves. Since they had come all the way over from the Satrine Empire to challenge him, they definitely had something special prepared. After all, they represented Angel Corps. Their defeat would also be a loss of face for their guild. In any case, everything would be eventually revealed in an hour or two, when Smoke Stub, Blade Light, and the others returned to Kalor. Then, those two wouldn't be acting so high and mighty anymore. Nie Yan arrived outside the Hilton stronghold. Looking up, he was in awe of the more than 20-meter-high walls. They appeared impenetrable, able to repel any assault. A long row of giant magic cannons were placed at the top of the walls. They were much bigger than the ones back at the crypt stronghold. Those ones were only rank 1, with a range of 1,000 meters, and were relatively weak in power. However, the cannons here were rank 16, with a range of 10,000 meters, and had frightening destructive power. An enormous gap separated the two. Nie Yan recalled his Faulkner warhorse. He then entered the Hilton stronghold from the main gates and headed straight for the center. The Hilton stronghold looked much like a city. Buildings and shops everywhere, connected by somewhat narrow streets paved with white stone, and bustling with activity. The people walking to and fro were mostly NPCs, since at this stage of the game few players would visit here. Nie Yan recalled the time the Hilton stronghold was besieged by a particularly powerful invasion force from the underworld. The fighting was fierce and lasted a full 5 days, wiping out almost all of the NPCs here. By the time players started arriving, the place was in ruins with collapsed walls and buildings everywhere in sight. This marked the turning point where players would replace NPCs as the main protectors of the surface world. The NPCs walking around the street wore odd-looking garbs made out of weird scales and other exotic materials. With hordes of monsters flooding out of the underworld every year, the residents used their body parts to craft armor. These beings came in all shapes and sizes, so there was no lack of variety. After making some inquiries, Nie Yan learned from the NPCs that Great General Breakspear never stayed in the Hilton stronghold for long. He would frequently go off on expeditions in the passages leading to the underworld, often not returning for days at a time. Excuse me, could you tell me how I can find Great General Breakspear? Nie Yan asked an NPC for a vendor. Sir Devil Slayer, the general returns to the stronghold once every 6 days. He sells his spoils from battle to us merchants in exchange for supplies. He should be back again in around a day, so I ask that you please wait patiently, the NPC replied in a deferential tone. He was evidently shaken by the grandness of Nie Yan's titles, which few others in the whole of the Hilton stronghold could match. With no other choice but to wait, Nie Yan decided to take a stroll around the place in the meantime. As Nie Yan tried to recall information about the Hilton stronghold from his past life, he suddenly remembered there was a secret shop around here that sold all sorts of exotic goods, even rare crafting materials for legendary grade items. They also had a large repository of tailor blueprints which popped out some good things every now and then. The secret shop only sold a limited quantity of materials and blueprints every day. In the previous timeline, many large guilds dispatched people to stake out this place on the regular in the hopes of snatching up some rare finds. If nothing was sold for a prolonged period of time, the items would begin to gradually accumulate. No one had visited the secret shop yet in the present, so it was bound to have many great things for sale. Apart from the secret shop, the Hilton stronghold also had a slave market which sold slaves pulled from various regions. A mercenary had to be paid regularly, with late payments incurring penalty fees, and would leave once the contracted period was over. A slave on the other hand once bought became the sole property of the owner. The system only allowed those who class advanced to purchase slaves. It was normally limited to 1 slave per player. However, when certain criteria were met such as possessing special skills, it was possible to own multiple slaves. Being a guild leader was another such criteria. How many extra slaves they could purchase depended on guild level. For example, the guild leader of a level 5 guild could own up to 3 slaves. Every slave differed in talent and ability. Some were completely useless. Others were master crafters, or gods of death on the battlefield. Nie Yan could take advantage of the fact he was the first player to visit the Hilton stronghold to reap some benefits from these 2 places. After finding the slave market, he could have all the class advanced players in Ass-Kickers United come over to purchase a slave or 2. As for the specific location of these 2 places, Nie Yan hadn't the slightest clue. He had no luck in asking the NPCs either. Nie Yan suddenly recalled he had an old acquaintance of his in the Hilton stronghold, Physician Blevins. Not long after entering the game, Nie Yan had traveled to Lake Random and accepted the quest from Physician Blevins to collect fine silk. Back then, he was still a low-level player. He wondered if he could find out the location of the secret shop and slave market from Physician Blevins. Nie Yan started asking around for Physician Blevins. Physician Blevins resides in the garrison office. It's on the south side of the stronghold, a short elderly man informed Nie Yan. Nie Yan leisurely looked around while he strolled south. It was at least a 15-minute walk. Arriving at a wide open square with no buildings around, Nie Yan looked north at a volcano on the distant horizon. The smoke rising up from the crater formed dark clouds that blotted out the sky. Nie Yan overheard the worried whispers of a few nearby NPCs. These past 2 days Mount Anfrit has started becoming active again. It's probably going to erupt soon, maybe already in the next 5 or 6 days. The last eruption was over 20 years ago, a wrinkled old man said in a hoarse tone. Relax, old man. Mount Anfrit is way too far from here to affect us. When it erupts, it'll just be like watching a fireworks show, a young warrior heartily laughed. We've had 2 earthquakes in a row in the past few days, the old man continued on pessimistically. Nie Yan simply smiled. The young and elderly would always have differing perspectives on life. This was only a brief interlude. The main street was always full of chatting NPCs. Nie Yan learned a lot from listening in on their conversations. What took him by surprise the most was the fact that the Hilton stronghold had 5 great generals and 30 generals. This was quite rare in the Viridian Empire. Even Kalor only had 1 great general and 2 generals. One could imagine the strength of the force garrisoned in the Hilton stronghold. Sir Devil Slayer, would you like to take a look at our goods? We have top quality sulfur produced from Mount Anfrit and an NPC merchant happened to approach Nie Yan. No thank you, I don't need anything. Nie Yan shook his head. Not daring to impede Nie Yan, the NPC merchant backed off. Mount Anfrit, Mount Anfrit. Nie Yan couldn't help but feel like he was forgetting something important. But he simply couldn't recall what for the life of him. Am I just overthinking things? Nie Yan wryly chuckled to himself. Mount Anfrit had nothing to do with him at all. Just how long would the Hilton stronghold continue flourishing? When would players finally start arriving here? These were questions Nie Yan didn't have the answer to. Nie Yan felt desolate and lonely as he walked along the streets. In both this life and the past, he had witnessed this ancient stronghold prosper and decline, its glory and suffering. Sir, would you like to buy some dark crimson gold from Mount Anfrit? A short 12-year-old boy in shabby clothes approached Nie Yan. His jet-black pupils shone with intelligence. He held a nugget of dark crimson gold in his hand. No thank you, after being approached by so many peddlers trying to sell him things, Nie Yan habitually declined. The expectant look on the boy's face transformed into disappointment. He was just about to turn away. Wait, did you just say dark crimson gold? Nie Yan suddenly called out to the boy. He gazed at the nugget in the boy's hand. Based on the deep gold luster, he confirmed it was in fact dark crimson gold, with a quality rating of 3 at least. He had almost passed up on something good. Yes, sir. I picked up this nugget of dark crimson gold while I was exploring the holes near the base of Mount Anfrit. An old man told me it would sell for 2 gold, the boy earnestly explained. He felt 2 gold was an enormous sum. Can you let me take a look? Nie Yan asked. He couldn't help but laugh to himself. A nugget of dark crimson gold 3, using today's market price, would sell for at least 1,000 gold. It was an exceptional material for crafting shields and the like, and was rarely seen in the marketplace. Yet this little boy only wanted 2 gold for it. He inspected the boy's name, Collins. Sure. Collins handed over the nugget to Nie Yan. Nie Yan confirmed that the nugget's quality rating was 3. Sir, would you like to buy it? Collins asked Nie Yan with a hopeful look. Of course. Nie Yan nodded. After closer observation, he noticed Collins was as thin as a match and looked malnourished. His hands were black with dirt and covered in scald marks. Yes. Thank you, sir. You don't know how much I appreciate this. Collins said excitedly. Nie Yan's heart softened. This nugget of dark crimson gold isn't worth only 2 gold. Then how much is it worth? Collins asked in bewilderment. 1,000 gold. I'd like to ask, what would you do with that kind of money? Collins sank in thought for a moment. I'll use it to help the other kids. Nie Yan placed 1,000 gold into the trade window and hit confirm. He didn't know why he did something stupid like buying the dark crimson gold for 1,000 gold. Maybe in his cold and unmoving heart was still a hint of childish innocence. Thank you, sir. Thank you so much. May God bless you. Collins got on his knees and prostrated toward Nie Yan. This was the most sincere and solemn form of showing thanks. Only this could convey the feelings of gratitude in his heart. Nie Yan was stunned for a brief moment. Just as he wanted to say something, Collins got up and ran off toward a nearby alleyway, disappearing after turning a corner. A peculiar feeling arose in Nie Yan's heart, one that could only be felt from showing genuine empathy toward the plight of an NPC. Nie Yan was just about to move on when he noticed the sincere property was added to his character window. It appeared he was rewarded by the system for telling Collins the true value of that nugget of dark crimson gold. Nie Yan had previously received brave, just, and benevolent. Now he had received sincere. Just what sort of quest did the system have in store for him? He really wanted to unravel this mystery. The residents of the Hilton stronghold talked about topics related to Mount Anfrit every day. Even this nugget of dark crimson gold came from that volcano. After thinking back to what just happened, Nie Yan started becoming suspicious. Only a moment ago he had clearly seen Collins was only a level 20 NPC. How could such a weak boy traverse so many dangerous maps to reach Mount Anfrit? This appeared to be a mystery he would never get to the bottom of. Even though Collins appeared to only be a child, his eyes reflected a strong determination to survive. Mount Anfrit, Nie Yan muttered to himself. What in the world did he forget? Nie Yan's thoughts were a mess right now. He simply couldn't shake off the feeling he was forgetting something important. However, nothing came to mind. Nie Yan tried hard to recall all he knew about the Hilton stronghold. He suddenly remembered that back when players first started arriving, after the invasion of monsters from the underworld and the drastic decline of the NPC population, they received a system notification asking them to participate in the defense of the stronghold. A fiery inferno spews out from deep below the earth, heralding the beginning of a disaster. Hordes of monsters pour out from the underworld and overrun the surface. The Hilton stronghold, a once grand bastion of the Viridian Empire, stands in desolate ruin. Brave adventurers, drive off the invaders and reclaim this holy land of heroes. May the fallen souls find peace. May their wills never be forgotten. A fiery inferno, the beginning of a disaster. Right, a disaster. A light bulb lit up in Nie Yan's head as forgotten memories resurfaced once more. The fiery inferno was referring to the eruption of Mount Anfrit, which sent monsters fleeing their homes in the underworld as lava flooded everywhere. After arriving on the surface, they immediately swarmed the Hilton stronghold. This assault was much fiercer than the ones in the past. The ensuing battle lasted for 5 days and resulted in catastrophic losses. If it weren't for reinforcements from the rest of the Viridian Empire arriving in time, the stronghold would have completely fallen. Mount Anfrit's eruption was the omen of a coming disaster. If the Hilton stronghold was warned in advance, many lives could be saved. Nie Yan was a grand scholar. In the history of the Viridian and Satrine empires, those with this title were regarded as people with great knowledge, wisdom, and foresight. Having received the blessing of God, they possessed special powers outside the realm of an ordinary person's imagination. They were exalted existences. Even above them were great prophets. If a grand scholar helped the Viridian or Satrine empires successfully avert disaster several times, they would ascend and become a great prophet. A great prophet was even more eminent than a grand scholar. Their status in the temples of the Viridian and Satrine empires was second only to legendary existences like Karsi. Nie Yan would be untouchable in both the Viridian and Satrine empires if he became a great prophet. He already owned the title of grand scholar. As long as he made 3 successful prophecies, he could become a great prophet. For his first prophecy, Nie Yan could predict the disaster that would befall the Hilton stronghold. Nie Yan wasn't actually predicting anything. He already knew many of the major events that would come to pass. All he had to do was warn the leader of the Hilton stronghold before then. This prediction was guaranteed to be accurate. Nie Yan glanced through his skill window and found the great prophecy skill. Ducking into a secluded alleyway, he prepared to divine the future. He wanted to use great prophecy to confirm his guess. A ball of light slowly formed in the palms of his hands, becoming ever brighter. A pillar of light descended from the sky, linking heaven and earth. While bathed in the radiance, Nie Yan received a system notification. A fiery inferno dyes the sky crimson. Disaster will arrive in 5 days. The pillar of light could even be seen all the way over in Kalor. Everyone started excitedly chatting about this strange phenomenon. After receiving the divination, Nie Yan left his spot and disappeared into the alleyway. Such a vague divination would normally be impossible for him to decipher. But given the information he already knew, it confirmed his suspicions. The Hilton stronghold would be besieged by monsters from the underworld in 5 days. Nie Yan had to inform the administrator of the Hilton stronghold about this looming threat. The administrator of the Hilton stronghold was a great general who rarely showed himself. Getting in touch with him required a special method. Nie Yan suddenly had an idea. He could try asking Great General Breakspear. As a grand scholar, his word held a lot of weight. As long as the administrator of the Hilton stronghold believed him, this would count as a successful prophecy. Thinking to this point, Nie Yan was filled with confidence. Before long, Nie Yan arrived in the south side of the Hilton stronghold. Here, there were rows of large tents enclosed by high walls. Just outside the barracks across the main street sat a large white building. This was the hospital. Nie Yan entered the white building. He passed by room after room, each filled with a large number of wounded and sick and the medical staff treating them, until he spotted a familiar face. It was physician Blevins, the old man he met back at Lake Rondo. Blevins was bandaging a wounded patient. After seeing Nie Yan, his eyes widened in surprise. Sir, welcome to our humble little hospital. During their first meeting, Nie Yan was nothing more than an ordinary low-level player without any status. Who would have expected things to be so different the next time they met? A great thief, grand scholar, and devil slayer, Nie Yan's status was now far above his own. Physician Blevins didn't dare to show the slightest hint of disrespect. Hello, I'm really happy we can meet again, Nie Yan greeted with a smile. The circumstances of their meeting this time was very different from the past, so his language was less formal. How can I help you? Blevins asked. Just a few things. Do you know where in the Hilton stronghold I can find hides and tailor blueprints? I need to buy some, preferably of high quality and rare, Nie Yan said. Physician Blevins didn't have a very high position, but he was still a native to the Hilton stronghold. It was likely he knew the location of the secret shop. Blevins thought for a moment, then said, the Hilton stronghold has over 50 shops that deal exclusively in hides and other similar materials. I can narrow down 3 which sell the highest quality goods. As for rare monster hides and high-rank blueprints, might you be looking for the Ignatius Fur shop? The Ignatius Fur shop. Yes, Ignatius is an eccentric old man. However, his status here is quite high. Many great generals like to sell their spoils from battle to him. His shop is in a secluded location normal people won't easily find. You also need a referral from a native resident of the Hilton stronghold to purchase goods from his shop. Yes, that's the shop I'm looking for. Nie Yan nodded. Even though he had never been to the Hilton stronghold before, he had heard rumors that the owner of the secret shop was a short old man with an eccentric personality. The hospital is very busy, so I can't leave right now. What I can do is draw you a map to the place. As for the referral, I can help with that too, since I'm a native resident here, Blevins said. He was more than willing to help, partially because Nie Yan had helped him out in the past, and partially because of the Devil Slayer and Grand Scholar titles. Blevins took out a pen and some paper from a drawer, then started drawing a map for Nie Yan. He also wrote a letter of referral. Nie Yan glanced at the map drawn by Blevins. The Ignatius Fur shop was actually located in a corner on the southeast side of the Hilton stronghold. That place was extremely secluded. Normal players rarely passed around there, and even if they found the place, they couldn't buy anything without a referral. Nie Yan at last knew the location of the Ignatius Fur shop. Thank you, Physician Blevins. No problem. It's the duty of every resident of the Hilton stronghold to help adventurers. Do you need anything else? Blevins asked. I'd also like to know where the slave market is. Those filthy slave traders, Blevins' expression flashed with loathing and disgust. He quickly composed himself and looked at Nie Yan apologetically. Sorry, I got a little riled up. Nie Yan nodded. I can understand. Oftentimes we don't have the power to prevent these ugly aspects of society from rearing their heads. You're a kind soul, Physician Blevins. I admit, you're correct. The slave market is in the west side of the Hilton stronghold. You'll see a black tower there. The slave market is right beside it. Blevins deeply sighed. Thank you for all your help, Nie Yan said. He had finally obtained the location of these 2 places. He had even received a referral letter for the Ignatius Fur shop. No need. May the light be with you. After bidding Blevins farewell, Nie Yan sprinted off toward the Ignatius Fur shop. He wanted to get everything out of the way before meeting with Great General Breakspear. Then after he received his reward for slaying the legendary necromancer Nadago, he could immediately return to Kalor. About 10 minutes later, Nie Yan arrived in a rather remote corner of the Hilton stronghold. There were a few decrepit buildings scattered around, teetering on the verge of collapse. The streets and paths were extremely narrow, and the smell of sewage was pungent in the air. This area was clearly a slum. As a gust of wind blew past, a foul odor capable of making people gag wafted up Nie Yan's nose. This was the smell of rotting corpses. Nie Yan looked around and spotted several NPC residents in shabby clothing skinning piles of monster corpses outside their homes. They were covered in blood and grime. Following Physician Blevins' map, Nie Yan passed through many narrow paths and alleyways before arriving outside an old run-down shack, with a shoddy signboard that read Ignatius Fur shop. It's here. Nie Yan cracked an excited smile. Nie Yan checked his bag. He had more than 20,000 gold on hand, enough to purchase what he wanted for this trip. Nie Yan strode into the shop. The interior was small and cramped, with monster hides strewn about everywhere, piled up high on the tables and racks and hung up on the walls. Dead ahead, at the center of the room, was a small open space with a wooden counter. The shopkeeper, a short old man in ashen leather armor, had a withered and haggard face resembling a gnarled oak. He glanced over at the new customer, his beady eyes flickering to life with a sharp light. This old man was Ignatius. Strangers are not allowed here. Please leave, Ignatius greeted with an unfriendly glare. Probably due to the influence of Nie Yan's titles, Ignatius only slightly raised his voice. Nie Yan had heard of people being cursed out of the shop in the previous timeline. Sir, I was introduced to this shop by physician Blevins. Here's his referral letter, Nie Yan explained. Ignatius' expression eased up after glancing at the letter. I'd like to purchase some hides and tailor blueprints, Nie Yan added. Grand Scholar, was it you who used great prophecy just now? Ignatius asked, ignoring Nie Yan's words. Correct, Nie Yan nodded. The pillar of light from his activation of great prophecy had attracted the attention of every NPC in the Hilton stronghold. Then may I ask you what you divined? Ignatius asked. As one of the most mysterious skills out there, great prophecy possessed unimaginable power. An approaching disaster, Nie Yan replied. He suddenly recalled Ignatius was friends with many of the great generals. Maybe he was also acquainted with the administrator of the Hilton stronghold. Oh, Grand Scholar, would you be so kind as to explain further? Ignatius' tone became noticeably more polite. His eyes were filled with worry and doubt. The Hilton stronghold is in danger of being destroyed. But that's beside the point, how about we move on? I don't think it's appropriate for us to linger on this subject, Nie Yan said, sensing the change in Ignatius' mood. Most NPCs possessed merely basic intelligence, making them only capable of giving and receiving quests along with some simple dialogue. High-level NPCs like Ignatius were a bit smarter. They could think for themselves to some extent, balancing pros and cons. However, they were still a far cry from a real human being. Ignatius was a bit stunned. He never expected Nie Yan to so abruptly end the discussion. Again, I'd like to purchase some monster hides and tailor blueprints, Nie Yan said. He looked around at the hides in the room. All right, Ignatius said in a listless manner. He still appeared to be troubled by Nie Yan's previous words. Nie Yan didn't seem to care as he browsed the shop menu, leisurely scrolling through the list of hides and other crafting materials up for sale. Each item had a quality rating of 7 or higher. Hides were divided into different grades, low, middle, high, super, and legendary. High-grade hides and below were fairly abundant, super-grade hides were much rarer, and legendary-grade hides were basically impossible to find. Legendary hides could be used to craft equal-grade leather armor. Of course not just anyone could handle the higher-grade materials. Super-grade hides could only be worked by master tailors or above. There were quite a few advanced tailors right now, but still no master tailors. Nie Yan glanced at all the hides listed up for sale. All of them were high-grade or lower. He didn't see a single super or legendary-grade hide. Nie Yan flipped to the back to check out the tailor blueprints. They were also nothing special, the highest being for advanced tailors. There were quite a few actually, more than several dozen. However, though rare, it wasn't like they were never available. At least 5 or 6 would be put up for auction in Kalor every day. It appeared Ignatius was holding out on him. Nie Yan suddenly had a bright idea. This is everything. Yes, I came all the way here for nothing. He let out a disappointed sigh and turned around to leave. Ignatius was dumbstruck. Just as Nie Yan was about to walk out the door, he hurriedly called out, wait, sir. I forgot I still have many items stored away. I'm sure you'll want to take a look. Their quality will definitely suit your taste. Oh, really now? Nie Yan halted his steps. He apathetically glanced back at Ignatius, seemingly with zero intention of coming back. Ignatius rushed to the storeroom in the back and quickly returned holding a large pile of hides and blueprints in his arms, which he promptly dropped on the counter. The shop menu suddenly refreshed. More than 30 super-grade hides and even 2 legendary-grade hides were added. The cheapest of these were priced at 3,000 gold, while the most expensive ones went for upwards of 20,000 gold. 60 new tailor blueprints were listed up for sale too. Most of them were master rank, but there were a few grandmaster and even great sage rank ones as well. Their prices also ranged in the several thousands. These were things that normally couldn't be bought even if one had the money. Nie Yan did a rough estimate in his head. If he wanted to snatch up everything, it would cost him at least 30,000 gold. He was short on funds. However, this opportunity couldn't be passed up on. Even if he had to give up an arm and a leg, he had to buy everything. Sir Grand Scholar, if you're willing to tell me everything about the prophecy, from now on you'll receive a 50% discount on everything I sell in my shop. Ignatius declared. Given his esteemed position, he could afford to be unreasonable. Apart from the great generals, everyone else was beneath him. However, Nie Yan held the fate of the Hilton stronghold in his hands, leaving Ignatius with no choice but to bow his head. He had to know what sort of disaster was about to befall his home. I don't have the time to visit this place every day, Nie Yan said indifferently. Seeing Nie Yan still wasn't budging, Ignatius added, anyone that comes here in your place will also receive a 50% discount. Nie Yan understood this was Ignatius' final offer. Pushing any further would be crossing the line. In any case, everything just so happened to work out in his favor. He would no longer have to plead Great General Breakspear to pass on his message. All the goods suddenly became half price. He bought up everything for around 15,000 gold. He wasn't the slightest bit hesitant about snatching everything up. With these items, he could nurture at least 1 or maybe even 2 grandmaster tailors in a few months' time, as well as manufacture plenty of sub-legendary and legendary grade leather armor. Of course, doing all of this would take a long time. Ignatius, sir, are you acquainted with the administrator of the Hilton stronghold? Nie Yan asked. Indeed, I am. Ignatius nodded. Then can you promise me you'll take great care in passing on everything I'm about to tell you to him? Nie Yan solemnly asked. Of course, Ignatius replied with a resolute expression. You've noticed how Mount Anfred has recently started becoming active again, right? Well, it's about to erupt, which will force out countless monsters from their homes in the underworld above to the surface. This will spell disaster for the inhabitants of the Hilton stronghold. If these monsters aren't repelled, this place will likely fall into ruin, Nie Yan said. But Mount Anfred has erupted before, around 20 years ago. Back then, it only created a slight disturbance. You're exaggerating, surely, Ignatius said doubtfully. Are you questioning the results of my great prophecy? Nie Yan asked in a stern tone. No, of course not. Sir, please forgive my ignorance. Ignatius replied in fright. Great prophecy was an ability that divined the future by directly communicating with the will of God. The last thing he wanted to do was commit blasphemy. The disaster will arrive in 5 days. An endless sea of monsters will surge out of the underworld and submerge the Hilton stronghold in chaos. This is the divination from my great prophecy. Whether you believe me or not, you'll find out in 5 days either way. However, by then it might already be too late, Nie Yan said. He had said all that needed to be said. What happened next was out of his control. Ignatius' face paled at Nie Yan's ominous warning. Pass on my words to the administrator. I hope the Hilton stronghold can survive this disaster, Nie Yan said in a subdued voice. Having finished his business, he headed for the door. After walking out of the shop, Nie Yan started making his way towards the slave market. Seeing Nie Yan's receding back, Ignatius stood still in absolute silence for a long time. Finally, he broke out in a sprint towards the administrator's office in the heart of the Hilton stronghold. There were many types of slaves. Most of them had low or middle-level intelligence. However, a very rare few were immensely talented and could handle any sort of task thrown at them. Some slaves could also fight in place of players with no combat ability, such as those who dedicated themselves to crafting professions. Nie Yan wasn't looking for a combat slave. Slaves were different from summoned monsters. Their deaths were final, like regular NPC servants. Nie Yan planned on purchasing 3 slaves to help with tasks in his shops that he no longer could be bothered to micromanage. The slave market was filthy, with run-down tents set up everywhere and wooden cages lining both sides of the central path. The large cages contained NPCs, both old and young, with vacant and hopeless expressions in their eyes. Some of the stronger-looking ones were additionally bound with ropes. The burly guards brandished scary-looking whips. Even the most innocuous actions by the slaves would set them off in a flying rage, cursing and hollering as a distinct cracking sound and wails of pain filled the air. Nie Yan looked visibly disgusted by the scene before him. Thinking about it, this was the cruelty of a fantasy world. Conviction presented a very stark reality before the players' eyes, making them question if everything they were taught to believe was really right. This was the world of conviction. All players were bound to its laws. Nie Yan looked over the stats of the slaves. Most were average and mediocre, only capable of handling simple tasks. Some were well built with decent potential, allowing them to fight for their masters. He continued to look around, peering through the cages on both sides of the path. He was looking for talented slaves, preferably ones with a unique ability. Sir, are you looking to purchase a slave? Mine are the best in the entire market. A fat sweaty slave dealer approached Nie Yan. His beady eyes were squeezed into 2 slits by his fat. His bloated face jiggled and moved in a disgusting manner when he spoke. Nie Yan frowned while he instinctively recoiled back. He was about to decline, when he saw a familiar face in one of the cages. It was the young boy from before, Collins. Collins was with 2 other kids. One was a small girl with delicate features who looked to be around the same age. The other was an older boy who was maybe 15 years old. He had a tall and muscular build that made him suitable for combat. After noticing Nie Yan, Collins' eyes lit up in joy and surprise. Sir, it's you. How did you end up here? Nie Yan asked in bewilderment. He had given Collins 1,000 gold. Logically speaking, he shouldn't have ended up in a cage being sold off as a slave. That nasty man, Barrick, caught me. He stole the gold you gave me and locked us up in here, Collins replied, glaring at the fat slave dealer standing next to Nie Yan. Don't believe this brat's lies. He's a street urchin and a dirty little thief. Barrick's eyes flashed with a cruel light. Once Nie Yan left, Collins was done for. Nie Yan roughly understood the situation. However, all the slaves dealers here, including this Barrick, were at least level 80 elites. Sir, please get us out of here. We're willing to become your slaves and do anything for you, Collins pleaded. Nie Yan was his last sliver of hope. Nie Yan recalled that buying slaves under these types of scenarios would result in higher loyalty, usually up to 90 or higher. Normally after purchasing a slave, the loyalty would be around 70. If the loyalty dropped below a certain threshold, the slave might turn on their master. The possibility was low, but it did exist. Nie Yan inspected Collins' special skills. Danger sense, Collins has astonishing evasion ability, allowing him to avoid being injured by monsters. Speedy, Collins is good at running, with a speed of 528. Collector, Collins has an easier time finding ores and lost items. Nie Yan was surprised. Collins' 3 special skills were quite rare. He wasn't the type of NPC that was confined to the city. He could move around in the wilderness and even explore high-level maps. The only caveat was that he had 0 combat ability. Nie Yan moved on to check the special skills of Collins' friends. The small girl was called Delphina. She had danger sense, artist, and social butterfly. Social butterfly allowed her to communicate well with other NPCs. Artist allowed her to draw or copy complex designs such as blueprints. Nie Yan's mind trembled. Delphina could duplicate blueprints, with low-grade ones taking a few hours and high-grade ones taking up to a day or 2. If things like the armored ice catapult blueprints could be reproduced, it'd be a huge boon for Askickers United. The artist's skill alone was enough for Nie Yan to make up his mind. He had to buy them, no matter the cost. Nie Yan checked the special skills of the older boy. He was called Bernard. Even though he was young, he was big for his age. He was brimming with muscles, and his skin was a healthy bronze. At first glance, Nie Yan believed Bernard was a combat slave. After examining him, however, it turned out he was more suited for a gathering profession. His special skills were danger sense, speedy, and digger. Bernard knew how to dig. If he was given a good pickaxe, he could become an excellent miner. How much for these 3? Nie Yan asked the pudgy slave dealer. Barrick's eyes sparkled. Just as he was about to say something, Nie Yan cut him off. I hope you'll give me a fair price. I trust the administrator wouldn't be pleased to find out a person of my status was swindled in the Hilton stronghold. Barrick let out an awkward chuckle. Oh, I would never dare, Sir Grand Scholar. For these 3, 120 gold sounds fair, right? You liar. Another person came before, and you only asked for 60 gold. Collins yelled. Barrick's face turned as red as a tomato after being ratted out. Here, take it, 120 gold. They belong to me now. Nie Yan didn't wish to interact with this repulsive character any longer. Seeing Nie Yan hand over the gold without batting an eye, Barrick was vexed he didn't ask for more. However, the transaction was already complete. After opening the wooden cage, he glanced at the 3 and said, you brats have a new master now. Scram. Collins, Bernard, and Delphina glared at Barrick, wishing for nothing more than to rush up and beat him to a pulp. However, the trio understood they were no match for him. Come on, let's go, Nie Yan said. Nie Yan led the kids out of the slave market. He discovered their loyalty stats were over 90. Collins had the highest at 99, while Delphina and Bernard weren't much lower at 96 and 95 respectively. Like this, the possibility of revolt was basically nil. These 3 kids would definitely be useful additions to Askickers United. Delphina would be responsible for duplicating blueprints, and Collins and Bernard could scavenge and mine in the wilderness. Every once in a while, they could also run errands in the city for him. After leaving the slave market, Nie Yan sunk into deep thought. The number of crafters in Askickers United was increasing at a frightening rate. The Starry Night potion shop showed promising growth, producing many high-rank alchemists. The other crafting professions were also rapidly growing, with tons of new hires every day. All of them were busy accepting different quests and improving themselves. Truthfully, all professions were related in one way or another. At the later stages of the game, crafting something wouldn't just need one alchemist, one tinkerer, or one engineer. Oftentimes it would take tens of people from differing professions to complete something, like the goblin magic cannon and armored ice catapult. An idea popped into Nie Yan's head. Why didn't he just bring all these players together and form a profession-based guild, one composed only of alchemists, tinkerers, engineers, blacksmiths, tailors, refiners, enchanters, miners, and so on? It would probably be best to establish a giant workshop divided into different areas for each profession. Like this, dividing the work and collaborating would be more convenient for everyone involved. Of course, the cost of building such a workshop wouldn't be cheap, probably in the excess of tens of thousands of gold. However, it was definitely worth the investment. When so many crafting professions were brought together, the possibilities were endless. It would also undoubtedly raise the property values of all the nearby shops. Nie Yan decided to build the mega workshop near the Starry Night potion shop. He still had 3 large plots in the area which remained unused anyway, mostly because ordinary players couldn't afford to lease such large spaces. Previously he hadn't figured out what to do with these properties, so he simply plopped down some tier 1 shops to prevent the system from reclaiming the land. Now things were different. He would immediately set to task after returning to Kalor. Nie Yan could already imagine it, a guild for trade professions. A grand plan was slowly taking shape in his mind. Nie Yan planned to have many famous crafters collaborate together. Every city had mercenary-style organizations. Players in the Crafters Guild could register, receive, and complete tasks for free and keep the rewards obtained for themselves. The Crafters Guild could issue out various odd job requests and not collect an intermediary fee. The first step was to unify the crafters in Asskickers United and have them integrate into the larger community of crafters. Eventually word would get around about how great their benefits were, incentivizing crafters all around the Viridian Empire to start flocking to Asskickers United. Asskickers United was already known to treat crafters generously, so much so that ordinary crafters were tripping over each other trying to join. However, those with actual ability were few and far between. It was precisely these players that Nie Yan wanted to lure in using the juicy benefits of the Crafters Guild. Of course, for now this was only in theory. The nitty-gritty would be left to Guowai and his administrative team to iron out. Nie Yan rang up Guowai and explained his idea. Not a bad idea. I can definitely see it paying off, especially since we'll be the first. How many high-ranked crafters do we have in the guild right now? Nie Yan asked. He only had a rough understanding of the guild's situation. He couldn't be bothered to pay attention to the small details. That was left to Guowai. We have 39 advanced alchemists, 15 advanced tinkerers, 31 advanced engineers, 6 advanced enchanters. Tallying everyone up, we have around 200 or so advanced crafters, Guowai replied after pulling up the data. Every profession improved at different rates, with enchanters and runemasters being the slowest and alchemists coming in at a close second. Of the 36 advanced alchemists in the whole of Kalor, 21 belong to the Starry Night potion shop, with 18 more being recruited from other cities. About 200 advanced crafters, this number was merely a drop in the bucket compared to all the crafters in the Viridian Empire. Has there been anyone that reached the master rank yet? Nie Yan asked. Master rank was a major watershed. Later on, advanced crafters could be found everywhere. However, very few would succeed in becoming masters, less than 1 in 1,000. If you became an advanced crafter, you would be accepted into any guild and find decent work. If you became a master crafter, your fame would reach far and wide. Not yet, but 6 people in the Starry Night potion shop are showing good promise. It's looking like Quiet Nanan is going to be the first among them to succeed after learning the Everwinter potion recipe you picked up. I predict he'll rank up sometime in the next 10 or so days. As for the others, it'll probably take another month or longer if I were to give a conservative estimate, Guowai said. Becoming a master was an incredibly difficult hurdle. Nie Yan recalled it wasn't much different in the previous timeline. When Quiet Nanan becomes a master alchemist, announce it publicly and use the momentum to promote the Crafters Guild. Understood. Guowai nodded. Nie Yan stayed in the Hilton stronghold for the whole day. He rented out a room in the inn to let the 3 kids wash up and bought them new clothes. Afterwards, he noticed their loyalty for him had increased even further. On the second day, Nie Yan received word that Great General Breakspear had returned. He passed through the bustling streets and headed for the Great General's residence. Nie Yan spotted many groups of soldiers along the way. They were fully equipped, all clad in the same sets of army-regulated armor. The atmosphere in the Hilton stronghold was a lot heavier than before. It appeared Ignatius had passed on his words to the administrator. Like this, Nie Yan had one less thing to worry about. If in 5 days monsters swarmed out of the underworld like he predicted, it would count as a successful prophecy. As for whether the Hilton stronghold could avert this disaster, that was still up in the air. Great General Breakspear's residence was a 2-story white stone house. It looked quite elegant, surrounding by thick walls and a lush garden in the front filled with all sorts of plants. Nie Yan approached the gate. After declaring his identity, Nie Yan was escorted by a servant to the living room to meet Great General Breakspear. He was a burly man around a head taller than Nie Yan. He was bulging with muscles and resembled a giant. He was a level 220 legendary warrior. Just like War God Kello, he was a barbarian. Great General Breakspear wasn't wearing his armor, instead opting for a more comfortable large robe. It's an honor to meet you, Great General Breakspear, Nie Yan greeted respectfully. Breakspear was an unapproachable existence to ordinary players. If it weren't for his Devil Slayer and Grand Scholar titles, this meeting would be impossible. Likewise, Breakspear greeted back with a kind smile. Nie Yan's gaze couldn't help but drift to Breakspear's left arm. It looked withered like that of a dried-up corpse. Are you curious? Breakspear chuckled. Yes, Nie Yan nodded. It's a death curse I received from the legendary necromancer Nadago. Within time, it'll slowly consume me until I become nothing but a walking corpse, Breakspear explained. His tone was casual as though he were talking about the weather. Is there any way to lift the curse? Nie Yan asked. He had a feeling Breakspear's curse was somehow related to the broken pieces of Nadago's staff of curses in his possession. The only way is to use one of Nadago's belongings, such as his staff, as a medium to lift the curse. However, Nadago hasn't appeared in the world in over 1,000 years, Breakspear replied. Nie Yan's mind trembled. Didn't this mean Breakspear was also in existence that lived more than 1,000 years ago? I believe I can help you lift the curse, Nie Yan said, taking out Nadago's staff of curses from his bag. Breakspear's eyes widened in rare surprise. His gaze immediately fell on the broken staff in Nie Yan's hands. It's Nadago's staff of curses. How did you get this? Breakspear exclaimed in shock. Why is it broken in half? Nadago was sealed by someone. By a stroke of luck, I managed to slay him in his weakened state. This was a spoil from the battle, Nie Yan explained, purposefully omitting the specific details of the event. Even so, Breakspear was no stranger to Nagago's frightening might. Even in a sealed state, a simple curse could transform Nie Yan into a corpse. You slew Nagago. This makes you a hero of the Viridian Empire. I'll make sure to inform the Council of Elders about your achievements, Breakspear said. Waving his hand, Nie Yan lit up with a brilliant radiance. Nie Yan checked his level. He had jumped directly to level 72. The amount of experience he just received was nothing short of frightening. Besides the experience reward, Nie Yan's army rank jumped up 3 levels from 10-man commander to 10,000-man commander. Further above were only general and great general. The reward for slaying legendary necromancer Nagago was amazing. Nie Yan checked his stats. His health already reached over 6,200. His defense, attack power, and other stats had also risen greatly. The stat bonuses for 10,000-man commander were attack plus 20%, defense plus 25%, and health plus 30%. These stat bonuses would be even greater after becoming a general and great general. Nie Yan recalled a level 93 warrior's health rising to more than 12,000 after becoming a 10,000-man commander in the previous timeline. He became tanky beyond belief. Even if he stood still without fighting back, it'd take ages for an equal level thief to kill him. Thieves were a squishy class. It was extremely difficult for them to acquire a lot of health. For one to have as much health as Nie Yan was unimaginable. Level 72. Nie Yan was getting closer and closer to reaching level 100. At that time, he could accept the class advancement quest to become a shadow dancer. Nirvana Flame, are you willing to help me lift this curse by giving me the staff? Breakspear asked. Of course I'm willing, Nie Yan said. He handed over Nagago's staff of curses to Breakspear. Great General Breakspear let out a deep grunt, crushing the staff's skull in pieces and rubbing them on his left arm. The skull transformed into dark energy which permeated into his arm. Gradually, color returned to his skin. However, his muscles were still atrophied. It would take time for them to recover. Breakspear breathed out a sigh of relief, then let out a full-bellied laugh. I've finally gotten rid of this damned curse after so long. Thank you, Nirvana Flame. It's an honor I could help lift the curse that's bothered you for so long, Nie Yan laughed. Words cannot express my gratitude to you. This is the egg of a darkwing dragon. I initially planned to hatch and raise it myself. Now I've decided to give it to you. Breakspear took out a black egg roughly the size of a basketball. It was covered in runes and let out an onyx glow that cast a dark tint over the whole room. A dragon egg, and one of such high quality at that. The darkwing dragon was an even rarer species of dragon than the golden dragon. It was a higher dragon. Nie Yan's gaze fell on the black egg. He could feel the living being inside, the strong throb of its heartbeat pulsating through the shell and the powerful energy contained within. Sure enough, the items Breakspear brought out would never disappoint. Among flying mounts, bird types were the most common and usually flew at the bottom of the totem pole. Only a few could be considered pretty decent such as thunderbirds and phoenixes. Some flying mounts were also quite odd and didn't really fit into any category like manticores and wind serpents. However, dragons were undoubtedly the rarest. Among them, golden dragons were fairly ordinary. Even after consuming an evolution crystal, a golden dragon could at best reach the upper middle tier. On the other hand, darkwing dragons were at the very top of the pecking order. Some of the top dragons were the divine dragons, onyx dragons, and runic dragons. The darkwing dragon was included in that list as well. A peak existence like Great General Breakspear wanted to hatch and raise this egg to be his personal mount. One could only imagine how precious it was. This was the reward for killing legendary necromancer Nagago. Nie Yan naturally didn't feel the slightest bit of guilt accepting the egg. Nie Yan carefully took the darkwing dragon egg into his palms. I'm not sure when it'll hatch, but I have a feeling it won't be long. I hope it can accompany you on your path to glory, Breakspear said. Nie Yan could faintly see the outline of the baby darkwing dragon through the shell. The radiance blossoming from the egg shrouded the room in light and shadows, making the place resemble a scene straight out of a whimsical dream. You have my gratitude, Great General Breakspear, Nie Yan respectfully said. In the previous timeline, very few players owned flying mounts. All for the sake of getting one, countless friendships were destroyed and teams disbanded. In his past life, Nie Yan could only look on enviously whenever someone summoned a flying mount and rode off into the air. To him of that time, flying mounts were unattainable luxuries that could only be admired from afar, not up close. He never expected, past or present, that he would obtain a flying mount of this quality. Nie Yan was beyond elated. It was only after experiencing 2 lifetimes that he understood the true value of a flying mount. Nie Yan placed the darkwing dragon egg into his flying mount slot. He had no idea how long it would take for this egg to hatch. But when that time came, he would become the ruler of the skies. As Nie Yan put away the darkwing dragon egg in his bag, several notifications popped up. Nirvana Flame has obtained a flying mount. The flying mount system will be unlocked in 2 days. The system will be updated in 3 days. This will not affect normal gameplay. The difficulty of class advancement quests will be reduced by 11%. The drop rate of freedom skill books will be increased by 13%. Nie Yan never expected for such a mishap to occur. Thinking back, he did recall something like this happening in the previous timeline. Since it was only a few system announcements, he had long since forgotten their contents. He only remembered a player triggering the flying mount system, and it unlocking for everyone soon after. Nie Yan never thought he would be the one triggering the release of the flying mount system this time around. The Ass-Kickers United Guild chat started flooding with activity. The boss unlocked flying mounts. Holy crap, a system update. The boss is so amazing. He's the first to obtain a flying mount. I wonder what kind of flying mount he got. Who knows? The forum similarly blew up. Everyone was discussing about what sort of flying mount Nie Yan obtained in the contents of the system update. The emergence of flying mounts had players guessing and conjecturing repeatedly about what the future skies of the game would look like. I heard flying mounts are different from regular ones. Once a flying mount dies, that's it. The revelation flying mounts couldn't be revived shocked many players. No one wanted to go through all the hard work of obtaining a flying mount, only to lose it forever when it died. I heard there's going to be a servant system as well. Those also won't revive after dying. Since these were the rules of conviction, it couldn't be helped. Flying mounts and servants were simply too powerful. Even the most ordinary bird-type flying mounts had frightening combat strength. A single dive bomb from the sky could instantly kill most ordinary players. This was why the system limited flying mounts to a single life. Of course, there were exceptions, such as if the player had a resurrection crystal or another similarly rare item. The servant system would allow the leaders of rank 8 guilds and above to recruit powerful servants. For example, if Nie Yan completed the long-standing 10 Holy Paladins quest line, he could recruit Karsi as a servant. Karsi, a legendary NPC. He was an incredibly powerful existence. Even someone like Karsi could be recruited as a servant. One could only imagine just how stupidly unfair it would be if Karsi could be revived infinitely. Every city in the Viridian Empire would be crushed by his powerful magic. Servants having only one life made the game more challenging and interesting for the players. Nie Yan recalled that many things changed after the release of flying mounts, including progression and skills. History was being distorted once more, and he was powerless to stop it. With events taking another unforeseen turn, Nie Yan could only rely on his own strength to take control of destiny. News of Nie Yan obtaining a flying mount spread like wildfire. It didn't matter where, every player was talking about him. Mad God and Depraved's challenge to Nie Yan was quickly pushed to the depths of the forums, relegated and left to be forgotten as though it had never existed in the first place. What kind of flying mount did you get? Guo Wai asked. What flying mount? It's just a dragon egg. Who knows how long it'll take before it hatches, Nie Yan replied. Dragon egg. Looks like you're going to have another dragon by your side. Guo Wai laughed. He believed the Darkwing Dragon and Lil Gold were on the same level while in reality the difference between the two was like night and day. Nie Yan chuckled. Everything would be revealed when the Darkwing Dragon hatched. What are we gonna do about Mad God and Depraved? It seems like the discussion around them has died down quite a bit. Everyone's now talking about flying mounts. Let them keep waiting like idiots. We can deal with them later when the issue pops up again. Until then, have Smokestub and Blade Light prioritize whatever's more important. The imminent release of flying mounts turned into a hot topic of discussion. Naturally, as the culprit behind this event, Nie Yan's name was usually mentioned in the same breath. His fame quickly spread beyond the borders of the Viridian Empire, and by association so too did the reputation of Ass-Kickers United. Nie Yan's actions this time really shook the entire player base. As for the flying mount system, the official website had long since created an associated information page, with players having waited in anticipation for it to open. No one expected it would be unlocked in such a way. The Satrine Empire, Sanguine Stronghold, an imposing fortress with over 20-meter high walls covered in menacing black spikes. At the heart of this stronghold stood a towering building, the main headquarters of Angel Corps. Angel Corps at present controlled 3 cities and 51 strongholds. They were a colossus and the undisputed hegemon in the Satrine Empire. The top members of the guild anxiously gathered for an emergency meeting. The conference hall was filled with chattering voices. Standing at the front in stylish white robes was Soaring Angel. Since he was inside the stronghold, he wasn't wearing his combat equipment, instead opting for something a little more comfortable. He glanced around the room before asking, Stone Splitter and Reaper still haven't arrived yet. They're running a dungeon with Buck, Patterson, and Quicksand right now, boss. Soaring Angel nodded. Looking around, roughly 100 people were present in the conference hall. Alright, I suppose we have enough people here. Let's start the meeting. As you all know, the release of the flying mount system was announced earlier today. The future of the skies is uncertain, but we can be sure that air warfare will play an important role. Every flying mount is a powerful strategic resource. They're frighteningly fast and can easily cross over borders. In great numbers, you can even launch a surprise assault on a stronghold with great ease. I'm sure you've all heard Nirvana Flame is the first to obtain a flying mount. We cannot fall behind any further. Starting from today, I want everyone to put their full effort into searching for any and all quest clues related to flying mounts and report back. Leave no stone unturned. Soaring Angel declared. Although flying mounts wouldn't become widespread anytime soon, it was imperative Angel Corps began their preparations as soon as possible. The fact that Nirvana Flame was the first to obtain a flying mount posed an enormous threat to them. Soaring Angel's orders were quickly passed down the chain of command. Separated into different divisions, each with its own respective supervisor, the administrative layer of Angel Corps was quite efficient. Warn Alliance of Mages and Divine Protectors to be vigilant of Ass-Kickers United. Soaring Angel turned to a slim-looking shaman. What's the situation with Fallen Angel? Fallen Angel is currently in a heated war against several guilds, so their growth has stalled for the time being. There's only one strange thing. They've recently come upon a large amount of gold, and it's making their enemies panic, the shaman reported. A large amount of gold. Soaring Angel knitted his brows. He suddenly recalled Nie Yan auctioning off a large quantity of equipment from the underworld. Did Ass-Kickers United have some sort of relationship with Fallen Angel? I want you to get to the bottom of this. Understood. What about Mad God and Depraved? Soaring Angel asked. He knew Mad God and Depraved were no match for Nirvana Flame, but they should at least be able to force him out and get a good gauge of his strength. Angel Corps simply had too little intel on him. Before sending those two out to test the waters, they had made ample preparations. Nirvana Flame is busy with a quest. But with everyone talking about the flying mount system, discussion about the challenge has died down. Have them keep waiting. Ass-Kickers United's people will show up soon enough, Soaring Angel said. He refused to believe Ass-Kickers United could ignore their provocations forever. Soaring Angel concluded the meeting after listing out all the things Angel Corps needed to do in preparation for what was to come. He also had to start looking for a flying mount himself. He refused to lose out to Nirvana Flame. Alliance of Mages, Divine Protectors, and the other major guilds were also making their own preparations. Every player was starting to look for flying mounts. Who knew how many would be born in the near future? Nie Yan had triggered a huge change. At this moment, he was trying to think of a way to hatch his Darkwing Dragon. Only then would he truly have a flying mount. After bidding farewell to Breakspear, Nie Yan led his 3 slaves with him back to Kalor. When Nie Yan planned to go out from now on, he could just have the kids deal with certain matters in his place. Back in the downtown square of Kalor, Mad God and Depraved were still accepting challenges with few players lasting more than several exchanges against them. Even though Nie Yan still hadn't come out, no one blamed him. They knew he was too busy questing. Seems like we've been forgotten. Ass-Kickers United is showing no signs of appearing. Depraved chuckled bitterly. Finishing up another match, Mad God let out a deep sigh. Even for a battle maniac like him, he was past his breaking point. Fuck that bastard Nirvana Flame. What a cowardly son of a bitch. Why has he still not come out yet? I swear all, Mad God started cursing up a storm. They were using all sorts of taunts and insults to provoke a reaction. However, Ass-Kickers United showed no sign of taking action. The arena was constantly surrounded by a large crowd. They were confident Ass-Kickers United would turn up and create a grand spectacle. This was something they definitely didn't want to miss out on, so they patiently waited in anticipation. Mad God was getting somewhat annoyed by the constant chatter. Suddenly, the crowd broke out in excited cheer. Ass-Kickers United has come. That's Smokestub. I heard during the siege at the Crypt stronghold he charged deep into enemy lines and single-handedly slaughtered more than 30 players, 2 of which were great mages. That's Blade Light, the main tank of Ass-Kickers United. I heard his defense is over 1,800. The crowd quickly parted ways as 8 players came into view. Smoke Stub, Blade Light, Lustboy, Natural Fiend, Painted Muslin, Young 7, Monochrome, and Edgeless. This group wasn't the full lineup of Asskickers United's elites. Some other notable names like Sun, One Strike Vow, and the others were busy questing. The 8 arrived in front of the makeshift arena. How about upping the bet? 200 gold is a bit too paltry, don't you think? It's not worth our time to move for so little, Smoke Stub said in a derisive tone. You guys are finally here. I was getting really tired of waiting. Sure, why not? How high do you want to go? Mad God replied with just as much bravado, having recognized Smoke Stub. He lifted up his greatsword and rested it over his shoulders. Given the recent clashes between Angel Corps and Asskickers United, the elites all knew each other by now. The top players of Asskickers United and Angel Corps had finally met. This was only the first of what would become many clashes. I'll go up first, Smoke Stub declared. Without further ado, he leapt up onto the arena stage. The crowd cheered in excitement. I didn't think the first to go up would be Smoke Stub. Yeah, I know right. So exciting. Asskickers United had quite a few famous players. Needless to say, Nie Yan was the most well-known, with Smoke Stub, Blade Light, and Sun coming up next. The rest weren't as famous, but they were still existences to be revered by ordinary players. Whoever wins gets to take a piece of equipment from the loser, Smoke Stub said. He had to admit the equipment of Mad God and Depraved was of quite high quality. Angel Corps rarely participated in wars. Even in the siege of the Crypt stronghold, they didn't suffer any serious losses. This was in stark contrast to Asskickers United, where every member had at least fought in several wars. The quality of their equipment naturally couldn't compare to that of Angel Corps. For example, Smoke Stub had previously lost a piece of equipment to Bloodlust Mad Blade who killed him during the siege of the Crypt stronghold. However, Smoke Stub and the others had their own advantage. They were tempered through the flames of battle and frequently danced on the edge between life and death. When it came to PvP, they were much better than their counterparts at Angel Corps in both skill and game sense. The crowd gasped in shock after hearing Smoke Stub's outrageous proposal. Every piece of equipment on an expert's body was obtained through blood, sweat, and tears. They couldn't be easily replaced since they were impossible to find in the marketplace. Even the loss of a single one would heavily impact the player's strength. Mad God's heart trembled. Smoke Stub was just like a gambling addict, always testing the boundaries and flirting around with death. On the other side, Mad God enjoyed crushing others with his superior gear. This sort of risky bet wasn't something he would usually partake in. However, if Mad God refused right now, he would be seen as a weakling. All right, fine. We'll put our equipment on the line, Mad God replied. He walked to the center of the stage and locked eyes with Smoke Stub. Depraved glanced at Blade Light and the others below the stage. Smoke Stub's risky gamble didn't seem to faze them at all, as though it was nothing out of the ordinary. Nor did they show any intention of stopping him. A feeling of apprehension arose in Depraved's heart. He suddenly understood why Asskickers United could sweep away victorious return in Bloodlust Blades. It wasn't that these two were any weaker than Asskickers United, but simply that they lacked the resolve to stake everything on the line. Experts like Smoke Stub could bring out astonishing strength when they threw caution to the wind and went all out. Smoke Stub and Mad God's battle was about to begin. Blade Light, when's the boss coming? Lustboy asked. He's already on the road. He'll be here soon, Blade Light replied. When Nie Yan arrived, things would get even livelier. Nie Yan had a deep influence on this group of players. In every war Asskickers United fought in so far, no matter how desperate or hopeless things seemed to get, he always stood up to the test and never showed any sign of wavering. This inevitably rubbed off on the entire guild. Asskickers United was forged through the flames of war. Smoke Stub and the others had picked up a thing or two from Nie Yan, and that was the willingness to stake their life and risk everything. It would have been better to have Stone Splitter come. You're still a bit too wet behind the ears, Smoke Stub said derisively. Stone Splitter was an orc warrior who gained overnight fame throughout the Satrine Empire after slaughtering a group of 30 elites all by himself. He was later personally recruited into Angel Corps by Soaring Angel and quickly rose to the top of their ranks. As for Mad God, he was a bit lacking. Mad God might have the advantage over Smoke Stub in terms of gear quality, but that alone didn't determine victory. Skill, awareness, and resolve were just as important in PvP. Humph, let's fight and find out. Mad God charged towards Smoke Stub with his great sword raised. Clang, sparks flew as the two great swords clashed. Smoke Stub was pushed back several steps. Mad God rained down a torrent of blows, unleashing a multitude of skills in quick succession. The two were locked in a heated melee. Smoke Stub's defense was rock solid. He calmly met every blow head on and never wasted his skills unnecessarily. Before long, he found an opening. As Mad God went for a wide cleaving slash, he avoided it with an exquisite sidestep and retaliated with a stab toward the chest. Mad God wanted to continue his offensive, but hurriedly pulled back and parried with his great sword. As though he expected this, Smoke Stub followed up with a leg sweep. Mad God suddenly felt something hook onto his retreating foot. He quickly activated defense stance to regain his balance. Although Smoke Stub failed to trip Mad God, he did make him lose his momentum as well as waste his skills. Charge. Smoke Stub rushed forward and slashed down on Mad God with his great sword. The positions of the two sides were instantly reversed. This exchange only lasted a few seconds. Those in the crowd with even a little bit of eyesight let out cries of admiration. Mad God liked to suppress his opponents with overwhelming strength, building up his momentum with all sorts of flashy skills before going in for the kill. On the other hand, Smoke Stub was shrewd and ruthless, preferring to save his skills whenever possible. He would lure the opponent into a false sense of security before striking out with a flawlessly timed attack. Mad God could easily dominate a weaker opponent. However, since they were more or less evenly matched, he couldn't break past Smoke Stub's superior defense. Mad God was frustrated none of his attacks got through. After losing his momentum and being forced on the back foot, Smoke Stub's offensive left him feeling helpless. If worse came to worst, he would have to use those powerful skills he had been saving up. Seems like Smoke Stub has the upper hand. Quote. He always attacks at the perfect time. It's like watching art. Now this is a warrior. Knowing when to advance and when to retreat, balancing offense and defense, not like Mad God who only knows how to blindly swing his sword. The crowd quietly chatted among each other, when a loud roar suddenly shook the square. Mad God's muscles fiercely bulged out as he grew several times in size. His skin transformed from a greenish hue to the color of stone, his eyes turning bloodshot. This was the berserk transformation of an orc warrior. Seeing Mad God's transformation, Smoke Stub also let out a roar and activated barbarian strength. Boom. It was as if two titans were clashing. The fighting on the stage grew fiercer and fiercer. The spectators couldn't help but back away in fear. The brutal all-out brawl and tyrannical display of strength shook their hearts to the core. Now this was a true battle between warriors. Damn, that Mad God is no joke. A berserk orc warrior is terrifying. Smoke Stub's barbarian strength is strong too. It must at least be at rank 3. Mad God isn't bad, but it looks like Smoke Stub has already won, Blade Light declared to the shock of the crowd. Right now it didn't look like either side had the upper hand. How are you so sure? Lustboy curiously asked. He held Blade Light in high regard. After all, it was thanks to his guidance that he had gone from an ordinary expert to a top expert. Blade Light's level of insight wasn't something ordinary players could hope to achieve. You'll see. Blade Light smiled, not bothering to explain further. Lustboy looked a bit doubtful as he shifted his attention back to the fight. Suddenly, a huge change occurred on the stage. Just as Mad God looked like he was running out of steam, with Berserk transformation nearing the end of its duration, Smoke Stub threw out a kick and struck him squarely in the gut. Smoke Stub's kick was superbly timed. It arrived the exact moment Mad God finished an unrelenting tidal wave of slashes. He never expected Smoke Stub would attack him with this skill. Kick was normally only used to interrupt mages from casting spells. However, many players forgot it also had a stunning effect. Kick could halt a target's movements for a brief moment. The skill's effects were relatively weak, so players rarely used it, nor could most use it well anyway. However, in the hands of Smoke Stub, this skill was used to stunning results. Gazing from the sidelines, Depraved became anxious after seeing Smoke Stub use kick. He wanted to whisper a warning to Mad God, but it was already too late. Mad God let out a heavy groan and staggered unsteadily. Smoke Stub didn't let this opportunity slip by and followed up with a tendon break. Mad God was incapacitated. Flame Slash. Great Cleave. Smoke Stub chained one skill after another as brilliant arcs of light trailed the path of his slashes. The dazzling display shook the audience to their core. When Mad God was about to recover, Smoke Stub slammed down with Seismic Slam and stunned him once more. Seconds later, he was sent flying out as his body heavily crashed into the ground. The battle was over. Smoke Stub won just like Blade Light predicted. The crowd exclaimed in cheer. The scene of Smoke Stub plunging his foot into Mad God's gut was destined to become a classic that would be viewed by players over and over again. Every person had a different understanding of every skill, but Smoke Stub showed the crowd true skill. Even ordinary skills such as kick could be deadly in the right hands. It was precisely because they were viewed as ordinary and unremarkable that they could be so deadly. Smoke Stub sheathed his great sword. Glancing at his skill bar, he hadn't even used half his skills. After a while, Mad God revived with a dark, gloomy expression on his face. He had many skills he still hadn't used. However, Smoke Stub's kick came too far out of left field. That one little slip-up snowballed into his defeat. He didn't even get a chance to reveal his trump cards. Alright, a deal is a deal. Hand over your shoulder guards, Smoke Stub said. This was his spoil from the battle. He could tell Mad God's shoulder guards were a piece of sub-legendary grade equipment. After examining his gear, Smoke Stub concluded Mad God had no less than 3 pieces of sub-legendary grade equipment. This fellow was truly rich. Mad God reluctantly unequipped his shoulder guards. Wait, how about another round? I'll have another person go up. If you lose, you'll have to fork over another piece of equipment. If we lose, we'll return these shoulder guards to you, Smoke Stub suddenly proposed. You're sure? Mad God asked in a menacing tone. He was glaring daggers at Smoke Stub, wanting nothing more than to rip him to shreds. Of course, I'll let you keep these shoulder guards for now. I don't want people saying we bullied you by making you fight with a handicap, Smoke Stub answered. He scanned his eyes over the equipment on Mad God's body. Mad God felt conflicted. He really wasn't willing to hand over his shoulder guards. However, since their bet was made through the system, reneging was impossible. The only way he would get to keep his shoulder guards was to win them back. Though he would have to hand over another piece of equipment if he lost. He could accept his loss to Smoke Stub. But what if any other of these players from Ass-Kickers United were stronger than him? Mad God believed himself to be at least within the top 10 players of Angel Corps. Those who could beat him in the guild were limited to only Stone Splitter, Soaring Angel, and a handful of others. Angel Corps was the hegemon of the Satrine Empire. Compared to his guild, Ass-Kickers United was nothing. What a poor sap. He's really going to be in for a rude awakening. Blade Light chuckled, sending a whisper to Smoke Stub. Mad God, get down. If we lose, so be it. Don't give away another piece of equipment. Depraved warned, sensing the situation turning south. Screw that shit. I refuse to believe Ass-Kickers United has that many strong players. I swear I won't lose again. Mad God's judgment was already too clouded with anger. Fucking hell. You think I'm afraid to bet? Come on then, let's bet. Alright, if you say so. Smoke Stub faintly smiled. He turned to Blade Light and the 6 others below the stage. Which one of you wants to go up next? Smoke Stub's gaze fell on Blade Light. Sure, why not? Blade Light chuckled. He leapt onto the stage. If he won, they would obtain 2 pieces of sub-legendary grade equipment. Having him go up was the safest choice. We're counting on you. Smoke Stub felt reassured after seeing Blade Light come up. It looked like Mad God was going to suffer another tragedy. Even he didn't dare to go head-to-head with Blade Light. A great fighter with over 6,000 health and 1,800 defense was no joke. It was like chopping at a solid block of metal. No worries, I've got this, Blade Light said. It would be incredibly difficult for any melee class to beat him. Blade Light and Mad God started their match. Needless to say, Blade Light was a formidable player. His title as the main tank of Ass-Kickers United wasn't just for show. Ass-Kickers United only had 60,000 players. Though size-wise they couldn't compare to the likes of Angel Corps, Alliance of Mages, and Divine Protectors, they had more than enough top-class talents to make up for this. Starting from the moment of the game's release, guilds had to search for and recruit talents non-stop in an attempt to slowly build up the number of experts on their side. However, thanks to Nie Yan's knowledge of the future, Ass-Kickers United managed to gather together a large number of experts in a short amount of time and provided them with the best environment and conditions to develop. This was why Ass-Kickers United had so many powerful players, something which other guilds could never hope to achieve. Apart from Blade Light and Smoke Stub, Monochrome, Edgeless, Lustboy, Young Seven, and the others were not any weaker than Mad God. On top of that, they had weathered through far more trials and hardships. With Blade Light going up, Mad God has already lost, Monochrome confidently stated. Yep, the match is over before it even begins. He won't even count as an appetizer. Normally in these sorts of matches, if both sides were roughly on an even playing field, a berserker would have a tough time seizing the advantage. Fighters were simply too tanky. Just their shields alone had a huge impact, with the better ones generally having block rates of at least 30%. They could greatly reduce incoming damage or even negate it altogether. A heavy clang rang out in the air as Blade Light struck out with a shield bash, knocking Mad God several steps backwards. He immediately advanced forward and continued his assault. Mad God had no way of fighting back. Every time he'd attempt to use a skill, Blade Light would interrupt him. Blade Light's timing is even better than mine, Smokestub remarked. Everyone had something they were good at. In the case of timing, Blade Light had him beat. After all, as a fighter who tanked bosses regularly, foresight was important. Mad God was forced on the back foot from the start. It was a one-sided affair. Blade Light was steady as a boulder, neither rushing nor hesitating with his blows. He was dominating, not giving the opponent any chance to retaliate. Blade Light and Smokestub's display of skill had the crowd wide-eyed and amazed. Ass Kickers United really wasn't simple. Suddenly a commotion broke out as the crowd parted in two. Nirvana Flame is here. The guild leader of Ass Kickers United. After arriving at the square, Nie Yan was greeted by a sea of players. He couldn't even see what was happening on the stage. As he walked forward, the crowd naturally parted ways for him. The nearby players all gazed at him with reverence, making him the focal point of attention. This was the Nirvana Flame who showed off that dazzling strike in Kilnfire Woods. This was the Nirvana Flame who massacred Bloodlust Blades during the siege of the Crypt stronghold. Nirvana Flame was a legend who stood at the peak of glory, a figure shrouded in mystery. The mood of the square reached a boiling point with Nie Yan's appearance. Hey Nirvana Flame. Nirvana Flame, add me to Ass Kickers United. How was your quest, Nirvana Flame? Regardless of whether these players knew Nie Yan personally, they all greeted him enthusiastically. Nie Yan simply smiled and nodded as he walked over to Smokestub. He arrived just in time to see the end of the fight. Blade Light struck Mad God with another shield bash, sending him flying off the stage and crashing into the ground. The crowd erupted into cheer. Blade Light is so amazing. Wow, Mad God really got manhandled. Nie Yan and Blade Light met eyes and smiled at each other. On the sidelines, Depraved quickly rose to his feet. Nirvana Flame, their primary target, had finally arrived. Mad God revived shortly after. The two defeats in a row put him in a terrible mood. You've lost again. This time, I want your leg guards, Smokestub said. Mad God had taken another huge blow. I admit my defeat, but you had a fighter go up against me. It's obviously an unfair matchup. Mad God protested. He also believed Smokestub and Blade Light were the only strong ones in the group. The rest probably weren't much. Of the group, only Smokestub and Blade Light enjoyed the limelight. As for the others, no one really knew much about them. The crowd immediately broke out into jeers. What a guy. Can't even accept a loss. First guess Angel Core is full of sore losers. Right. He's already lost twice in a row. Challenging Nirvana Flame. Come back in 100 years. Smokestub narrowed his eyes, then cracked a smirk. Fine, you want another go. Excluding Nirvana Flame, you can pick anyone among the remaining 6 you want to fight next. This includes the 2 priests. Just like before, a piece of equipment is on the line. How about it?